Chapter 1427. Actually, Li Qingqian did not know the specific content of the task. The best explanation was that, at this time, everything was prepared for the sake of uncovering the pair of hands hidden behind the shadows. Zhang Feng wanted to find out the big hands. Last night at Yanlai restaurant, Ching Chumo and the others faintly sensed that something was wrong. The main problem was that Feng Zi made a big fuss in Chang'an yesterday, but those people still did not make a move. Not to mention others. Even the big clans behind the Bai, Mi, Tang and others did not intend to stand up. What did this mean? They did not understand. But after thinking about it on the way back, they found the key to the problem. It seemed that these people were deliberately hiding something. Or perhaps, they did not know this at all. This was the most confusing. Let's not talk about you and them. Those big clans must have relatives, right? But such a big thing had happened, why did those relatives and collateral relatives of these big clans not stand up? What did this mean? Not only did they not understand, but now that Li Shimin said this, Zhang Feng also did not understand. Rubbing his temples, he waved his hand and said, "In fact, there is nothing to say. The hounds are already cooked. It is already a blessing that these people did not add insult to injury. What a joke, the emperor has already given the order. Unless they are stupid, otherwise who would dare to stand up and do such a thing at this time?" Li Shimin thought for a while and said, "What you said makes some sense. But this matter we still can't let down our guard. If these people do something behind our backs then—" Zhang Feng interrupted Li Shimin and said, "This is the so-called human nature. Don't worry, within these 10 days they will be very honest. Don't ask, these people are waiting for things to calm down. After things calm down they will erupt after suppressing themselves. And we are waiting for this eruption. Before they erupt, I believe that our men and those gossipy women, as well as the informants of the local ruffians, have already been arranged. At that time I will also let the people of the Enlufang and the Tonghuifang move around. At that time it will be time to track down the mastermind behind the scenes. I have a feeling that this time we may have caught a big fish." Li Shimin was shocked and waved his hands subconsciously. Seeing this, Niu Jinda knew that he could not avoid it. He slowly stood up and leaned against the door, carefully listening to the movements outside the door. After seeing Niu Jinda shake his head, Li Shimin asked solemnly, "Fengzi, tell me honestly, do you have someone you suspect?" Zhang Feng nodded and said, "Yes. My intuition tells me that everything that's been going on these days has nothing to do with the 5 surnames and 7 clans, as well as the nobles of Shandong." Li Shimin was shocked. On the surface, White Deer College and Chang and University were basically the Crown Prince's trial grounds. All of this was supported by the imperial edict. Looking at history, such a thing had never happened before. However, White Deer College had been extremely ostentatious from the start. From the 4 great scholars' ascension to the mountain, to Sun Simiao's anger, to the porridge, pork, bone-strengthening powder and so on, it had always been an ostentatious path. From the start, their intuition told them that all these were the deliberate actions of the people from the 5 great families. But, now that Zhang Feng said this, they finally had a trace of consciousness. These 3 aristocratic families did not see eye to eye with each other. They restrained each other, forming a tripartite balance of power. Because of Yang Guang's deliberate actions, the Guanlong group's influence in the imperial court had been greatly damaged. What was left was basically useless. Although the 5 great families were better off, they were no longer as glorious as they were in the Sui dynasty. However, their deterrence was still there. The people from the Guanlong group had embarked on the path of merchants. They operated their own forces in the Northern Army and shifted their focus from the imperial court to the Northern Army and the path of merchants. Although these 5 families and 7 clans had their own camps at this time, and although on the surface they seemed to be united, Li Shimin discovered that from the nobles that were recruited every year, there weren't many people from these 5 families and 7 clans. The reason was that the Directorate and the Hongwen Hall were basically suppressed by Guanlong's people. And Li Shimin was also eager for them to have such a situation. Next would be the people from the Shandong aristocratic families. These people disdained to enter the imperial court as officials, so they rarely came to the imperial court. However, there were still some representatives. Kang Yingda was the most important one. What he disdained the most was to associate with these merchants. Therefore, he was the one who restrained the Guanlong group and the 5 great families and 7 great families. But this time's matter, Li Shimin's first instinct was that this was a conspiracy. It was a conspiracy that deliberately targeted the Shandong aristocratic families. Otherwise, why would they use him to get rid of Kang Yingda, the only high-ranking person in Shandong? At the beginning, Kang Yingda had always been indifferent to these things. However, why did he jump out at such a critical moment? Why did he jump out? In addition, the group of hoodlums in the Shao Mountain Market had been shouting that they were sent here by Kong Yingda. However, how could a discerning person not see that this Motherf asterisk Kerr was not Kong Yingda's doing? Wasn't this disgusting? This was simply disgusting. However, although he was the emperor, he could not ignore it. He could only drag Kong Yingda into the prison. All of this was too logical. It was like directly opening a pocket for Kong Yingda and waiting for him to enter. Li Shimin thought of this and his expression suddenly changed. He said, "Fengzi, you mean?" Kong Yingda was framed by someone. Someone wants to provoke the conflict between the Shandong aristocratic families and the 5 great families and 7 great families? Chapter 1428. Zhang Feng nodded and said, "You also thought of it? In fact, I've known for a long time that the academy was just being used by others. But they should never have killed Chen Wanli. This is not only aimed at the Shandong gentry and the 5 families and 7 families. Don't you realize that these people just want to put the blame on me? And what they want is Laoli what you just thought. Once we all have such thoughts, then we've really been fooled." Li Shimin's face changed again. This time, a fine layer of cold sweat involuntarily appeared on his forehead. Who on earth could have such a terrible plan? Was he even human? He wanted to stir up the chaos of the entire Tang dynasty. Li Shimin hurriedly asked, "When did you realize it?" Zhang Feng lit a cigarette and handed it to Li Shimin. Then he looked at Wei Zheng and the others and said, "In fact, after seeing Chen Wanli's body and hearing their words, I understood." "Yes. That is to say, the killing you caused in Chang and city was also a test?" Wei Zheng frowned and asked. Zhang Feng nodded. "In fact, it was not a test. After killing my brother, do you think you can get away with it so easily? That's impossible. In fact, it was also a test for me. To put it bluntly, it was also a means to lure Lao Li out." While speaking, Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin playfully and said, "Lao Li, I really didn't expect that the mysterious person would pay such a high price to test you. What is your identity on Earth?" Li Shimin looked shocked. "Is he suspecting me?" "Ahem, let's not talk about this first. Let's talk about your guess first." Li Shimin hurriedly changed the topic. Seeing this, Zhang Feng shook his head speechlessly and said, "This time, if you think about it carefully, you will be able to see many clues. This time, if I don't do anything or if you don't do anything, the probing yesterday will be endless. They will keep probing until they find a satisfactory answer." When Li Shimin heard this, although he had already expected this at this moment, when he thought about what Zhang Feng had just said, a chill ran down his spine. "Go on." Zhang Feng looked at the cigarette in his hand, and a strong killing intent flashed in his eyes. "Actually, to put it bluntly, this is a trap prepared for us early on. We've been too ostentatious all this time. Our unconventional teaching model has attracted the hatred of Shandong. Then our new business model, paper blank, and so on have caused direct economic conflicts with Guanlong, behind the road, the paper-making workshop, the forging workshop, and so on have attracted the attention of the 5 families and 7 clans. All these, it seems like we are doing what we want to do unconsciously, but you should have guessed that this is where those people left a target and also an opportunity for them to add fuel to the fire." At this point, Zhang Feng's expression gradually turned solemn as he said, "Now all of you should know, right? In fact, our direction is wrong. This time, based on my intuition, doesn't seem to be the doing of these big clans. If Shandong really wanted to target us, would they need to resort to such petty means? Also, the 5 families and 7 clans, do you think we are worthy of them paying such a high price to target us? They only need to move a finger, and everything we've created now will be finished." Li Shimin said with a hint of surprise, "You're saying that all this is not their doing? Then what's the matter with Chang and 8 Waters? Also, everything that happened in Nantian wasn't caused by them?" This was what Li Shimin couldn't figure out the most. From the siege of Chang'an's economy last time to Nantian, to the iron mine this time, could it be that these big clans were not the ones who did it? Then who could have done it? Fang Xianling was also very surprised and said, "Fengzi, this matter, are you?" Zhang Feng spread out his hands and said, "That's what you asked me to guess. Now I'm just talking about my opinion. Forget it, I won't say it. In short, I don't think it's the doing of these big clans. Instead, I think it's done by someone who knows the situation of the Tang Empire very well and knows about the war on the border. At the same time, someone who has a good relationship with these big clans did it. Or, it's done by those outsiders. I really can't think of any other possibility." Zhang Feng said so. Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't want to talk about it, Fang Xianling hurriedly said, "Fengzi, do you think that those big clans are not suspicious at all? Or, did they choose to believe the person you spoke of and just sit back and watch? This seems to be." But the person you said, I think, except for the emperor and the retired emperor, no one else can do it, right? Li Shimin couldn't help but nod. He also thought it was impossible. How big a plan was it? And most importantly, what did he want to do with such a big plan? As for the outsiders, Li Shimin was the first to be excluded. It was simply impossible. Those big clans even hated these outsiders more than he did. In their eyes, these outsiders were no different from the indigenous barbarians. Under such conditions, how could they believe the outsiders? Chapter 1429. However, Zhang Feng didn't think so. After all, everyone had their own weaknesses and weaknesses. For example, if Zhang Feng wanted to stir up trouble or if he was the one doing this, he would definitely do it 100 times better than what he was doing now. Moreover, he wouldn't leave any clues behind. This was Zhang Feng's confidence. It was also because of this that Zhang Feng realized that this matter didn't seem to be simple at all. Li Shimin rubbed his head and said with a headache, Fengzi, just say it directly. Whether this matter has anything to do with these big clans or whether these big clans are involved, this is a direction. If we can confirm it, we can narrow down the scope. In this way we will have a direction to target. We won't be like a headless fly, right? Zhang Feng spread his hands and said, You ask me, but who should I ask? Before Li Shimin was about to get angry, Zhang Feng hurriedly said, In fact, these people must know something about this matter. At least the upper level of these big clans must know. Otherwise, it would be strange if these big clans didn't react last night. Doesn't the Wang clan's iron or prove anything? Wei Jing frowned and said, Yes. This shows that the Wang clan is anxious to clear their name. Hearing Zhang Feng's words, everyone became more confused. Li Shimin asked, What do you mean? Zhang Feng said with a smile, In fact, it's very simple. I went to the Gao clan, Mi clan and Bai clan. These three clans said that the Wang clan's people and the Tang clan's people went to find them together. If the Wang clan really did do it, they wouldn't be in such a hurry to react and open the ironware shop. This is the most unreasonable thing. If the Wang clan was really involved in this matter, these people would have been killed before I went. How could they wait for me to go? After Zhang Feng said so. In an instant, Li Shimin thought everything through and understood everything. Why did these people insist that it was done by the Wang clan and the Tang clan together? Why did the Wang clan's people leave evidence that could be used against them? It was as if they wanted the whole world to know that they were the ones who did it. This was the strangest part of it all. Now that Zhang Feng had said so, Li Shimin instantly understood all the confusion. Fengzi, then what do you think? Say no more. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, If you want to find a breakthrough in this matter, I think that Wang clan is the best breakthrough. Instantly, the entire living room was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Wang clan. Was Zhang Feng trying to target the Wang clan? Seeing everyone's expression at this time, Zhang Feng was speechless and said, What's with your expressions? Fang Xianling glanced at Li Shimin and said, Fengzi, do you know that this is the most sensitive time for the Wang clan? If what you said is true, once we really target the Wang clan, the person behind the scenes will definitely add fuel to the fire. In this way it will be even more impossible for us to find out the truth. And we will directly face the crazy revenge of the 5 families and 7 clans. At this time, Li Shimin really didn't want to directly face the people of the 5 families and 7 clans so early. This was not the right time. And if he forced the people of the Wang clan into a corner, then the result would be, at the thought of this, Li Shimin couldn't help but shudder and said, Fengzi, you, listen to me first. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, In fact, targeting the Wang clan is only in the message. Who the hell told them to stop the iron mine for Lao Tzu? Who the hell told the Tang family to keep saying that it has something to do with the Wang clan? Who the hell told the Tang family to keep saying that it has something to do with the Wang clan? All these were ordered by the Wang clan? This is the reason for us to bombard the Wang clan. Once we do something to him regardless of anything else, I believe that the people of the Wang clan will definitely not sit still. They will definitely stand up and take the initiative to contact the mysterious person. What we need to do is to take revenge for Qian Wanli and seek justice for the students of the world. We just need to keep our eyes on the Wang clan's every move and wait for them to lead that person out. Li Shimin was stunned. That's it? Zhang Feng said doubtfully, How complicated do you think it is? You asked me to find a direction to investigate. But we can't just leave one person to die, right? What if the people of the Wang clan are forced into a corner and turn against us? What should we do? Li Shimin's words were not without reason. At this time, if the people of the Wang clan were angered, how could White Deer College withstand his wrath? Zhang Feng said with a smile, Just wait and see. His Majesty definitely won't let this go. Even if he does, our White Deer College has an imperial edict. Moreover, before this matter we will get the phosphate fertilizer out. As long as the Wang clan isn't a fool, they won't dare to do anything to our White Deer College. You have to know that at this time, whoever has more land and more phosphate fertilizer will obtain more benefits in the upcoming big reshuffle. So, why do you think the people of the Wang clan would open a blacksmith shop at this time? Because they have also sensed the crux of the problem. They are also using this method to send us a message. Li Shimin looked at Wei Zhang and the others in confusion. He saw that they were all dumbfounded. He then asked, Fengzi, what message are they sending? Chapter 1430. They really didn't know what these people were thinking. Moreover, they used such a method to send a message. Even if they really wanted to send a message, couldn't they just send someone to say it? Why did they have to be so secretive? Wei Jing thought for a while and seemed to have thought of something. However, seeing that Li Shimin didn't speak, he could only endure it. Wei Jing couldn't help but remind Li Shimin, second brother, I thought of something. Can you help me see if I'm right? Li Shimin was worried that he couldn't think of anything. At this time, seeing Wei Jing acting like this, his expression changed and he said, actually, I did think of something, but it's also because I'm not sure. Tell me about it first. Hearing this, Qing Yaojin and the others' mouths twitched. But there was no other way. Wei Jing's expression also froze when he saw this. He quickly restrained his expression and said, Second Master, think about it. Previously, they secretly closed the shop, which must have attracted Feng Zi's attention. At this time, if they want to open up, they need an opportunity. This opportunity is phosphate fertilizer. They also want to get it. But because of their pride, they had to think of a solution. At this time, someone found them and told them about the Tang family. So, the Wang family wanted to cooperate with them. Regardless of whether they win or lose, they won't lose anything. They also want to see where Zhang Feng's bottom line is, but they didn't expect to lose. At this time, what should they do? If it's you, old Qin, can you put down your pride? Qing Yaojin didn't expect Wei Zheng to talk about him, but at this time he pretended to be confused and acted as if he didn't hear anything. Then Wei Zheng continued, and this is also human nature. If they come, it will inevitably mean that they have lost. This will be very disadvantageous for everything in the future. Therefore they chose to use this method to tell Feng Zi that they have given in. For the people of the 5 families and 7 clans, this is something that hasn't happened for a long time. Second Master Feng Zi, what do you think? What Wei Zheng said was extremely reasonable. Li Shimin wanted to clap his hands and cheer, but when he looked at Zhang Feng and the others, he pondered for a moment and said, what old Wei said is indeed reasonable. It's different from what I thought. Feng Zi, what do you think of this? Zhang Feng nodded and said, actually this is the truth. They also know that our people are looking for an iron mine on Longsho Mountain. Although there's no news yet, they definitely know about the Nantian coal mine. In other words, they've basically lost this time. And this time their admission of defeat is also a wise move. Think about it, when our iron ore comes out, who will they sell it to? Do you think he'll be able to take it if we push the price to the limit? In less than a year no one will want their iron. So at this time, moreover, from the time they open the shop this time, this is also premeditated. That is, they want to reach a cooperation with us, but at this time they are still watching. Their intention is very straightforward. They want to equally divide the sales of Chang'an's ironware and the steel I make. You wait and see. If there's no accident, the price of their ironware this time will definitely be lower than ever before. Li Shimin said in an uproar, you've calculated all of this. This is a business matter. Lao Li, don't tell me you don't know this. Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin with some suspicion and said, this can be regarded as the lowest level of strategy. Can't you understand this? So you just wait and see. We don't need to do anything now. We just need to watch them fight. In addition, since the Wang clan has taken the initiative, we should also take the initiative. Yes. Li Shimin heard this and asked, take the initiative to what? Zhang Feng wanted to touch Li Shimin's forehead, but Li Shimin avoided it. This made Zhang Feng speechless again and said, I just want to see if you are confused. Such a simple thing, can't you think of it? This is our rumor attack. Once we do this, it will inevitably force the Wang clan to find the mysterious person. We just need to follow him. At this time, Li Shimin suddenly understood. They finally knew all of Zhang Feng's arrangements. Before no one had a clue. Now that Zhang Feng said it so clearly, if they still couldn't think of it, then there was really a problem. Zhang Feng was also annoyed. Being manipulated by this kind of thing, no one would be in a good mood. Moreover, he was so disgusted by it. Anyway, Zhang Feng had already explained the matter today. Whether Lao Li and the others investigated or not, Zhang Feng was going to find the mastermind behind the scenes. This thing was like a thorn stuck in his throat. In any case, it was uncomfortable. Zhang Feng put out the cigarette but in his hand, got up and stretched his body and said, "Okay, this matter is like this. If you want to catch these guys in one net, you can't be too hasty. Otherwise it will be easy to alert the enemy. This matter, don't talk nonsense after drinking. Don't talk about it, it's going to give me a headache. I'm going to sleep." Chapter 1431. It rained during the autumn planting season. Once the frost was over, the weather also gradually became less hot. On the contrary, the cool air in the mountains at night made people feel comfortable. Especially in the afternoon, when the drizzling rain started again. The entire academy basically maintained its original appearance. Other than the place where the houses were built, it was basically a puddle of mud and an endless stretch of withered yellow grass. At this time, the grass was trampled by people, and it was not as majestic as it was in summer. Instead, it shrank in the mud and shivered. Today in the villa, Zhang Feng was so sleepy that he kept yawning. Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao also developed the habit of taking a nap with Zhang Feng. Although it was already past noon, Zhang Feng still did not eat. Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao sat at the table and looked at the terrible dishes they made. Waiting for Zhang Feng to come back, the two girls fell asleep on the table. Hearing the sound of the door, they woke up with a start. Seeing Zhang Feng come in, the two girls came up to him. Zhang Feng could not open his eyes at this time, but he was also hungry. Looking at the black plate of fried vegetables on the table, he asked in surprise, "Is this the cooking of Mr. He's wife?" "We made it ourselves." Hearing this, Zhang Feng saw the two girls were shy, so he did not say anything. He picked up the bowl and ate in a daze. He did not care whether it was delicious or not. Anyway, he kept saying it was delicious against his conscience. The two girls were dumbfounded by his words. Seeing that Zhang Feng had left, the two women began to eat suspiciously. But the vegetables were burned. Not to mention the salty vegetables were simply indescribable. After eating 2 mouthfuls of other dishes, the two girls gave up in frustration. Either there was no salt or the bowl was full of salt that had not melted. Before Zhang Feng fell asleep, he saw Jingshu come in with a bowl of tea with a bitter face. Seeing her, Zhang Feng complained, "How can you eat such terrible dishes?" Zhang Feng was also thirsty at this time. After drinking the tea, he said with a smile, "After all, it's your kindness. But you can't do this. Your body can't stand it." Seeing this, Zhang Feng laughed and hugged Jingshu, saying, "If you want to cook in the future, I can teach you. But I still think it's a man's business. In the future I can cook for you. Mr. He's wife is good at cooking." Hearing this, Jingshu leaned in Zhang Feng's arms and whispered, "I know you're suffering. If there's anything, I'll help you." Zhang Feng gently pecked Jingshu's face, played with her fingers and said, "I'm not so weak. Don't cook in the future or I won't hear that kind of Zheng music in the future. By the way, what are you going to do about yesterday's matter?" Jingshu was still a little worried about Zhang Feng and asked. Zhang Feng thought for a while, lying on the bed with Jingshu in his arms, and said, "Actually, this matter is still a bit complicated. Someone wants to mess with me, but things are basically settled." "That's good. I won't disturb you. You have a good rest. I'll sleep for a while." Seeing this, Jingshu was ready to leave. However, how could Zhang Feng let Jingshu go? Just as Zhang Feng was taking a nap, Li Shimin was very anxious. He paced back and forth in the room. Wei Zheng and the others didn't even dare to breathe loudly. After a while, Li Shimin gritted his teeth and said, "Old Feng, I think we should put this matter aside. Fengzi is right. If we rush to make a move on Wang clan now, we'll only be in a passive position. By the way, old you, is there still no news from the people looking for the iron or on Mount Longsho?" "There's news," Yu Qigong hurriedly said. "We just received news that iron ore has indeed been found in the Swallow Ridge area of Mount Longsho. However, those ores are all underground. If we open up the mine, we won't be able to meet the demand in a short period of time. At least not within this year." Li Shimin instantly understood when he heard this, but he frowned unhappily and said, "Why are you only saying this now?" Seeing this, Yu Qigong didn't dare to say anything. In fact, it didn't matter whether he said it now or not. Even if they didn't find it, so what? Now that Wang clan's ironware was sold at a low price, the iron on the market was basically in a stable state for the time being. The iron ship, the forge on the mountain, and the ironware bureau at the foot of the mountain could all resume production. In this way, as long as the steel on the mountain could be smelted fast enough, it could basically guarantee that 10,000 elite soldiers could get weapons. Coupled with the ballista and the strong crossbow, they would basically win the war. Now things in Chang'an City were also stabilizing, but the main factor was the phosphate fertilizer. Once the phosphate fertilizer was officially used in agriculture, the overall situation would be completely stabilized. In other words, now only the phosphate fertilizer and the new weapons were left. As for the other things, it was not the time to make a move for the time being. Once the phosphate fertilizer and the new weapons appeared, almost all the problems would be solved. Thinking of this, Li Shimin couldn't sit still. He asked, "What time is it now?" "It's already past midnight." "How long has Fengzi been gone?" "Less than 2 hours." "What, less than 2 hours?" "Go wake him up. When he comes to the mountain, we have to see for ourselves how the phosphate fertilizer is made." Hearing this, everyone's expression changed instantly. They hurriedly comforted Li Shimin and said, "Second Master, you can't do this." Chapter 1432. Li Shimin was a little surprised. Why can't I go and take a look?" Wei Zheng's expression changed drastically when he saw this. He looked at little Gizi at the door. Seeing that there was nothing unusual, he said, "Second Master, that thing is poisonous. How can you go to such a place with your precious body?" Qing Yaojin and the others saw this and came forward to dissuade him. What a joke. Although Zhang Feng could resolve the toxicity of this thing, the torture it would cause was simply not something a human could endure. If the emperor went at this time, who would be responsible if something happened to that thing? Would it be because he didn't protect the emperor well enough? At this time they had to pay more attention to some things. If they left a bad impression, it would cause a big problem. However, Li Shimin didn't listen. He took out a mask and said, "I knew you would say that. Look at what this is." Wei Jing saw this and said, "Second Master, look at old Niu, then look at Li Qian and the others when they were first poisoned. This is an eventful time. If something goes wrong, we can't afford to take responsibility. Second Master, please take back your order." Several people hurriedly knelt in front of Li Shimin and shouted in unison. Although the possibility of poisoning had been dealt with, it was better to be safe than sorry. What if it was poisoned? Li Shimin put on the mask and said indifferently, "Since we're already here, if even I am afraid of this thing, how can we let the people eat it with peace of mind? Don't talk about it now. Since we're already here, don't you want to see how he made this thing? I believe that you've all heard your family's kid talk about this thing, right? Don't you want to see it? Don't you want to have this kind of colored glass for yourself?" As he spoke, Li Shimin pointed at the frosted glass on the window. This was the real good stuff, but Li Qingqian said that the glass in the test tube that Zhang Feng used for his experiments was of better quality. They even secretly brought it home. However, the one that Li Qingqian gave him was taken away by retired emperor. He didn't even have the time to play with it. On one hand, he really wanted to see the magical refining process. More importantly, he wanted to see the transparent thing that Zhang Feng called a glass bottle. It was said that the wine from the western region would taste even better in this kind of cup. Forget it. Let's not talk about this matter anymore. I've already made up my mind. There's no room for discussion. Li Shimin waved his sleeves and was about to walk out the door. Niu Jinda unwillingly blocked the door and said, "Second Master, look at me. I was so uncomfortable at home before. For 7 whole days you can't eat anything and can only drink vinegar. Have you ever thought of that feeling? That's the last thing I want to do. Please reconsider." Li Shimin was in a good mood. After finding out who was behind the scenes, he wanted to know how the phosphate fertilizer was made. Only when he saw it with his own eyes would he know what to do in the future. After all, seeing was believing. Even if he was poisoned, he could experience it for himself. It was worth it to know how to make such a magical thing that he had never seen before. This kind of opportunity was rare. However, how could Qing Yaojin and the others tolerate the emperor doing such a thing? If they were poisoned, it would be a serious crime to be beheaded. When they were in a deadlock, Li Shimin was also angry. He waved his sleeves and shouted, "Everyone listen to my order." In an instant, everyone's voice stopped abruptly. They looked at Li Shimin with worry and surprise. Li Shimin waved his sleeves and said, "Now, I order you to record in detail the whole process of Feng Zi and the others' extraction of the experimental phosphate fertilizer. After we go back, I want to see your reports tomorrow morning. There must be no mistakes." When they heard this, their heads instantly drooped. Seeing this, Li Shimin said with a smile, "Isn't it just a visit? Do you have to be so worried? Besides, Feng Zi is still here. How can he watch us get poisoned? He will definitely give us the best protection. Don't worry." At other times, these people would always pester him, especially Wei Zheng. But once he gave the order, these people would be obedient instantly. This was Li Shimin's method that never failed. At this time, seeing that Li Shimin had made up his mind, what else could they say? They could only follow Li Shimin out of the villa. As soon as they came out of the villa, they saw Li Qingqian and the others gesturing around the villa area. They even quarreled from time to time. Seeing this, Li Shimin waved his hand. Li Qingqian and the others hurriedly stopped quarreling and ran over. "What are you doing?" Li Qingqian wiped the sweat on his face and said excitedly, "Father, we are designing the model of the water wheel. Basically, the preliminary plan of the water wheel has been thought out. You guys change first. I want to see the process of the phosphate fertilizer extraction. You go and wake Fengzi up." Chapter 1433. What was going on? The emperor was going to watch them do the experiment? At this time, Qing Chumo and others were shocked. They looked at each other in confusion, but no one dared to call Zhang Feng. They had seen the danger of the experiment with their own eyes. At this time, if the emperor was excited and wanted to do it himself, if there was another explosion, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Li Qingqian glanced at Wei Zheng and others suspiciously. They nodded and smiled bitterly, confirming Li Shimin's decision. Seeing this, Li Qingqian was shocked and said, "Father, you can't do this. What if something happens to you? There are a lot of people watching you now. What if something happens to you? Father, please think twice." Li Shimin couldn't care so much. He waved his hand and said, "I've made up my mind. It can't be changed. Besides, aren't you here? Don't I even have the right to have a look? Or should I say, what kind of shady business are you up to?" Seeing that he couldn't persuade him, Li Qingqian had to give up. He had to go to Zhang Feng resentfully. This thing was actually not that difficult. With the protection of the mask at this time, there shouldn't be too much trouble. While Li Qingqian was thinking, he had already arrived at Zhang Feng's villa. Old Ma was still standing majestically at the door of Zhang Feng's villa, with his hand on the hilt, never leaving for a moment. The scar left on his face yesterday still looked so shocking at this time. But old Ma didn't cry. This little injury was just a piece of cake for him. Seeing Li Qingqian coming, Ma Xinliang nodded as a greeting. Looking at Li Shimin and others not far away, he hurriedly stopped Li Qingqian. "Young Master Li, at this time, I advise you to wait. The dean may still be sleeping." Li Qingqian didn't understand the meaning of Ma Xinliang's words. He nodded and turned to knock on the door. But after knocking for a long time, there was no response. Li Qingqian couldn't help but be a little impatient. He roared loudly. After a while, Zhang Feng opened the door with sleepy eyes and asked impatiently, "What's the matter?" When Li Qingqian saw this, he instantly seemed to understand something. He wanted to leave but he couldn't. Feeling awkward, he clenched his teeth and said, "My father said he wants to see you do your experiment." Zhang Feng was a little confused. He asked, "What experiment?" "It's the phosphate fertilizer experiment. I'm not free." Zhang Feng didn't even think about it and was about to close the door. Seeing this, Li Qingqian panicked. "Fengzi, isn't it just an experiment? We can just do it. My father said that he wants to see the production process of phosphate fertilizer so that he can calculate how much phosphate fertilizer we need now. When the time comes." Li Qingqian explained a lot. The truth of the matter was finally revealed. The gist of it was that Li Shimin wanted to see if this thing could be planted this autumn. Not to mention the entire country, but at the very least, the entire imperial plantation as well as the entire Guanyi Pass would be able to produce some results. He also wanted to give the whole world a definite answer. Right now, there were many rumors about whether this phosphate fertilizer was real or fake. Although many people believed in Zhang Feng, they didn't believe that this thing was real. After all, this thing had never appeared before. At this moment, Zhang Feng's sleepiness was slightly alleviated. Li Qingqian was right. Right now, things were a little complicated. There were many rumors in the market, so much so that no one knew who to believe. Moreover, this thing didn't belong to this era. It was normal to not believe it. And for everyone to accept this thing, how to put it, it was still a little difficult. The difficult part was whether this thing would be sold for money or free. If it was sold for money, who would buy it? If it wasn't sold for money, who would dare to use it? No one would dare to block their 1 year's worth of food. This put Zhang Feng in a difficult position. Seeing that Li Qingqian's words seemed to make some sense, Zhang Feng said, "If that's the case, you go and prepare first. Call a few of them together. Also invite Mr. Bosher and the others over. Also call all the students of the academy over. Let's have a public experiment class." Seeing this, Li Qingqian's expression froze. What is the meaning of this? If that's the case, wouldn't it be? Zhang Feng waved his hand and yawned. It's just letting them see an experiment. That little bit of measurement is actually nothing in an open space. Since they want to see it, then let them see it openly. There will only be more benefits in the future. Also, spread the word that this experiment will be held once on the mountain and once at the foot of the mountain. Anyone who wants to see it can come and see it. Hearing this, Li Qingqian was shocked. This thing was originally not troublesome to experiment with. Could it be that Zhang Feng was planning to spread this thing out? These were shining silver tails. If someone else tinkered with it, let's not talk about whether it was profitable or not. Just this point alone, it was unknown whether they could be like them and not be poisoned. What if they were poisoned, what could they do? Chapter 1434. Zhang Feng's idea was actually very simple. Although this thing looked simple, how would it be done? Would they be able to do it? Moreover, the phosphate rock was poisonous. Although it was not really fatal, it was similar to methane poisoning. If you slept in the methane pool every day, it would be strange if you did not get poisoned. The most important thing was the ratio problem and the experimental equipment. Zhang Feng dared to guarantee. Apart from Algernon and him, if the others wanted to make such a thin and transparent test tube, then, if he could really make it, then no matter how far away he was, Zhang Feng would run over and ask for a prestige account. This was a fellow countryman. Without the experimental equipment, who would want to do this experiment? Don't even think about it. The reason why Zhang Feng wanted to do this was to give everyone an accurate answer and also to give a surprise to those who wanted to stir up trouble. Don't you want to stir up trouble? Fine. Then I'll let you do it. After Li Qingqian left, Zhang Feng's eyes lit up. He shouted to Old Ma, "Old Ma." Director. Zhang Feng asked softly, "Do you have any land at home?" Ma Xinliang's face stiffened. He said bitterly, "No." Zhang Feng asked again, "Go quickly. Get Cripple Wang, the village chief, Old He and Juzi's father here. I have something to discuss with them." Ma Xinliang was a little confused. He wanted to ask something, but seeing that Zhang Feng was unwilling to say, he was embarrassed to ask. He did not know what Zhang Feng wanted to do, but now that Zhang Feng had called him, he had to go. After Old Ma left, Zhang Feng hurried into the villa. At this time, Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao were whispering to each other. Sometimes Zhang Yuyao would touch Jingshu's belly, and sometimes her face would turn red. If not for the fact that Jingshu was not pregnant, Zhang Feng would have seriously suspected that Jingshu was pregnant. "What are you two talking about?" Zhang Feng was a little embarrassed by the gazes of the two. Obviously, Zhang Yuyao's disdainful eyes told him that she already knew what had just happened. Zhang Feng could not help but sigh again. This world was really King good. If you dared to be so bold in the future, you would have a kitchen knife on your neck by now. The two women didn't speak. Zhang Feng didn't know what to say. He rubbed his nose and said, "Yao, tell little Cui Air to go down the mountain immediately. I have something important to tell her to do." He saw that Zhang Feng had something to do. It wasn't good for the two women to harp on such a trivial matter. Zhang Yuyao asked curiously, "What's the matter? Do you have any fields at home?" Zhang Yuyao didn't know what Zhang Feng was going to say. At this time she was stunned. She hesitated for a moment and counted with her fingers for a long time before saying, "My family should have 7 mu of land now. What's wrong?" Zhang Feng nodded and then said, "Quickly ask your father to find Niu Weili and tell him that I said to buy land with whatever money you have." Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao were stunned. But a moment later they thought of the key point of the problem and said, "Is this related to phosphate fertilizers?" "Yes." Zhang Feng nodded and said, "Then quickly go to the mansion and find Du Ziting. Ask him to take out all the money in the family and buy as much land as possible near Shao Mountain. Don't worry about money. We have plenty of money." This time the two women didn't understand. They thought that Zhang Feng had not woken up because of yesterday's stimulation, and their expressions changed drastically. "Prince Zhang, what's wrong with you? Brother Feng, if you can't do it, let Dr. Sun take a look at you." Zhang Feng rolled his eyes speechlessly. He put the two women in his arms and said, "I'm better than ever now. Let's not talk about it anymore. You two can do as you see fit. It's best if you can do it today or as soon as possible. Later I'll hold a public experiment class. I believe that once my experiment class is over, the possibility of buying another piece of land will be slim." The two women were completely stunned. However, he still hurriedly went to do as Zhang Feng said. Zhang Feng grabbed Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu and said, "By the way, go to the Qian mansion and tell them about this." Zhang Feng could be considered to have done all he could. As for what Master Qian thought, it was not something he could decide. However, this land must be bought. The land in Chang'an City. Before this, it was definitely worthless, but after today it would be worth a lot. Zhang Feng dared to bet. As long as he operated properly in the future, he would earn more than a little. If he could get real estate out, hee. As for Lao Li and the others, Zhang Feng was never worried. After all, they had known about this for a long time. How could they not buy it? That would be a strange thing. In the past, this thing was very tricky. Coupled with the fact that seeds were difficult to buy this year, many people basically exchanged their land for seeds. But after the fact that phosphate fertilizer could increase production was confirmed, Zhang Feng believed that if anyone dared to sell land, they would be a real fool. Chapter 1435. Without waiting for Old He's people to enter the room, Li Shimin and the others had already entered Zhang Feng's villa. As soon as they entered the door, Li Shimin couldn't wait to ask, "Fengzi, when are you going to do this?" For a moment, Zhang Feng suddenly forgot what Li Shimin said. But at this time, seeing him say this, he asked with a slight doubt, "What are you talking about? Is there any meaning?" What meaning could there be? Li Shimin was also stunned by Zhang Feng's words in an instant and asked, What do you mean? Didn't you say that you wanted us to come and see the experiment?" Zhang Feng patted his forehead and said with a faint smile, "So it's about this. Lao Li, this matter you have to wait a little bit. We still have another thing to do." Li Shimin didn't understand what Zhang Feng wanted to do, but at this time when he heard Zhang Feng say this, he had to be patient. But Qing Yaojin couldn't wait. He had long wanted to see the experiment that Zhang Feng talked about. After all, every day or sometimes when his son came home, he would brag in front of him about how awesome and mysterious this experiment was, but he had never seen it before. At this time, it seemed that Zhang Feng wanted to suppress this matter and didn't intend to experiment. How could this be? Thinking of this, Qing Yaojin waved his hand and said, "Is someone looking for trouble? If someone is looking for trouble, tell me, I will go and—" Without waiting for him to finish, Li Shimin's face darkened. "Old Hey, that's enough." Qing Yaojin shrunk his neck and smiled embarrassedly as he retreated to the back. Seeing this, Zhang Feng had to ask them to sit down and then said, "In fact, this matter is very simple. Think about it, if this experiment is really completed and this time I am going to give a public lecture, won't the people in the market now suspect that this thing is fake? Even if those who believe in it are still suspicious before they see the real thing, then this time I will directly hold 2 public experiments in the academy and at the foot of the mountain. If I come personally on the mountain, I will hand it over to them. In this way, I believe that the rumors made by the Tang family will naturally be dispelled." Li Shimin's eyes suddenly shook. This is a good idea. However, there are disadvantages to this as well. Think about it. If this thing is stolen by someone else, won't we lose a lot of money? However, Zhang Feng didn't mind. He smiled faintly and said, "If he has the ability, then he can steal it. Does he know the ratio of this thing? He knows how to reach the critical point. He doesn't know anything and yet he is experimenting with it. If he wants to die, he can do it. Anyway, this thing is poisonous, but it is not fatal in small amounts. If any bastard wants to die, I don't mind." Li Shimin was a little hesitant, but he still chose to believe Zhang Feng. After all, this thing was already the kind of thing that no one had ever seen before. If this thing was easy to come out, this guy would be so mysterious and throw it out like salt. Why would he spend so much effort to get it? Thinking of this, Li Shimin suddenly understood. However, Fang Xianling did have a different idea. Although Zhang Feng was right, this was still a secret. He really didn't understand Zhang Feng's operation. Fang Xianling looked at Zhang Sun Wuji and Du Ruhui, who were stroking their beards and narrowing their eyes in contemplation. He wanted to ask. However, seeing the expressions of the two, he just sighed and didn't say anything. Niu Jinda, on the other hand, was very excited at this time. After all, this thing was something he exchanged with his life. If Zhang Feng wanted to get this thing out, then his reputation would also rise. At that time, not to mention other things, at least in the imperial court, his back would be straightened a little. However, the key problem now was that this guy didn't seem to want to do it now. What was the meaning of this? Niu Jinda took advantage of Li Shimin's inattention and hurriedly asked, "Feng Zi, what do you mean? Why don't you hurry up and start the experiment? What are you waiting for? We haven't eaten anything yet. We're still waiting to see your thing so that we can have a drink together. You're so slow. How long are you going to wait before you give us a meal?" Zhang Feng laughed and said, "Old Niu Imo, don't be anxious. Let's talk about drinking later. I have a very important thing to ask you. Although you all know about this, there's one important thing that I don't know. Have you thought of it?" They looked at each other suspiciously. Then Li Shimin asked carefully, "Feng Zi, is there something else in it?" Zhang Feng shook his head. "Actually, there's nothing else. I just want to ask you, Did you buy land after knowing about this? In an instant, Zhang Sun Wuji and the others looked at Li Shimin. At that time they all wanted to buy land, but if it weren't for the emperor's obstruction, they would probably have more land in their hands. Chapter 1436. Li Shimin didn't think so much. When he heard Zhang Feng's question, he wanted to laugh. So this kid was still thinking about making money at this time? Zhang Feng had indeed been thinking about this matter. After all, they were all on the same side. If he could make a fortune, then he definitely wouldn't forget about his brotherhood. And this time, Zhang Feng's intuition told him that this would be his last chance to buy land. Moreover, it was such a cheap land. Want to buy another piece of land in the future? Ah. Li Shimin nodded with a smile. He looked around at everyone and said, "You don't have to worry about this. Although their family's land isn't much, it's at least 1,000 mu. Also, you seem to have forgotten one thing. The last time old Fang went to the field with you, he went around borrowing money to buy land. It caused quite a stir in Chang'an City." When Zhang Feng heard this, his eyes widened. He looked at the usually honest Fang Xianling and asked, "Is old Fang's matter true? Is it true or not?" Zhang Xueli was a little embarrassed, but he still nodded. This time, Zhang Feng was completely convinced by these people. He was a little speechless and said, forget it. I also said that we can't let our brothers suffer losses. It seems like you guys are just brothers on the surface. Such a good thing, and you didn't even ask me to join you? If you all bought it, then pretend that I didn't say anything. You can go to Mr. Bosher's place and wait for him, or go directly to the school district. I'll wait for the old Xiaocai and the village chief to come over. Then I'll go over. Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng in surprise. He looked at Zhang Feng with a strange expression and said, "Do you want everyone in Tonghui Fang to buy land?" Zhang Feng nodded and said, "Yes, aren't they all neighbors? Since there's a matter of making money, then of course I have to pull them in. Besides, if it wasn't for their help on the mountain, then I would be busy to death. I want to rely on you guys, but you guys are so busy that I can't even see your shadow for a few days. If I don't rely on them, who else can I rely on?" Their faces stiffened and they looked around as if they were looking for something. To put it bluntly, they didn't want to lower themselves to Zhang Feng's level. How could Zhang Feng not know what these people were thinking? He sighed and prepared to ask them to leave. However, at this moment, Du Ruhui faintly said, "Feng Zi, if you are thinking for them, I advise you to ask them to buy less." Zhang Feng asked in surprise, "Why? You can't bite off more than you can chew. Besides, think about it. If so many people suddenly buy land on a large scale, let's not talk about whether the law of the Tang dynasty allows it or not. Let's talk about how others will view it. Now the entire academy is being watched by people all over the world. Once something happens on the mountain, it will definitely spread throughout the Great Wall in less than a day. You also know that the commotion you caused in Chang'an City 2 days ago hasn't stopped. Up until now, everyone would be drawn over by the slightest bit of news about White Deer Academy. Just think about the consequences if you continue causing trouble like this." After finishing his words, Du Ruhui gave Zhang Feng a meaningful look. This stumped Zhang Feng. He really didn't think of this. After all, he wasn't very clear about some of the laws of the Tang dynasty. After looking around, he stared at Fang Xianling and asked, "Old Fang, what's going on? Are ordinary people not allowed to buy land?" Fang Xianling waited for a while. Seeing that Li Shimin didn't say anything, he sorted out his thoughts and said, "In fact, it's not that people are not allowed to buy land, but how should I put it? Indeed, there's no explicit rule in the laws of the Tang dynasty that forbids people from buying land. But there's one thing you may not know, and that is their ability. Think about it. If you suddenly give a bucket of water to a person who has been hungry for 3 days, he will be stuffed to death. In fact, the principle is the same. Besides, do you think those businessmen and those big families in Chang'an City will sit back and do nothing? As old Du said just now, everyone's eyes are fixed on the academy. At this time, if so many people suddenly rush down, think about it, it will cause everyone in Chang'an City to buy land. Think about it. Even if Chang'an expands all the places within the Guanyi Road, how much land can be bought? How much land can ordinary people buy? If you don't buy it now, when the phosphate fertilizer comes out in the future, the emperor may use this as a reward and give some land to the commoners. Basically, every household will have land to plant. Isn't this better? But if everyone is like you, then what about the rest?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng's face changed instantly. "Oh, I've already said it. At this time I can't take it back, can I?" Zhang Feng was a little embarrassed. However, Li Shimin glanced at Zhang Feng indifferently and said, "Then it's your business. We'll go there first. You can come back after you've finished your business. I believe that Nyo Weili from the Chang and local government will come up with a relatively safe way to deal with it. Hearing this, Zhang Feng could only helplessly laugh bitterly and helplessly nod his head. All right then, you guys go ahead and wait. I'll ask the old village chief. If it really doesn't work, I'll give some of my land to them. Li Shimin, who had already walked to the door, looked at Zhang Feng strangely and said, "What, just now did you?" Chapter 1437. Zhang Feng didn't think too much about it. He just wanted the people around him to live a happy and prosperous life. Li Shimin already knew about Zhang Feng's thoughts. However, he couldn't help but ask out of curiosity when he heard Zhang Feng's intentions. After all, the 4 properties that were confiscated 2 days ago were all in his hands. He was also thinking about finding a suitable opportunity to give it to Zhang Feng. However, now that he looked at it, fine. He thought too highly of himself. After all, he heard that he had earned a lot from cooperating with Nyo Weili in basketball and football. It seemed that he had earned a few 100,000 taels of silver. This wasn't a small amount. At this time, basketball, football, and morning exercises were basically common in the Tang dynasty. It was normal for him to earn this kind of income. Li Shimin narrowed his eyes and asked, "Did you go to buy land?" Hearing this, Yu Qigong and the others looked at Zhang Feng with strange expressions. Zhang Feng smiled embarrassedly. "Yes, something like that." "How much did you buy?" Zhang Feng didn't think too much about it. After all, who knew how much land these masters had? The little bit he bought probably wasn't even a fraction of what they had bought over the past few months. This was only the land that these masters owned in Chang'an City. Their properties were spread throughout the Tang dynasty. It could be said that even if they didn't have 100,000 taels of land, they weren't far from 100,000 taels of land. The little bit of land he bought was nothing. Not much. Last time, Jingshu made the decision to buy all the land from the coal mine in Lantian all the way to the riverside in Mount Shao. They were speechless. It turned out that this kid had been buying land since a long time ago. The piece of land from Lantian all the way to White Deer Institute could be said to be a rare piece of good land in the Guanyi circuit. However, because it was relatively long and narrow, and if a war were to break out, it would definitely suffer a calamity. Moreover, its location was relatively special, so very few people dared to have any ideas about that piece of land. However, they didn't expect this kid to have it in his hands long ago. Li Shimin was still thinking about whether he should use that piece of land as an experimental field for the imperial family. After all, it was something that had to be put on display. He didn't expect this kid to buy it long ago. Li Shimin didn't mind and asked, "Then where did you buy it this time? Tell me. If it doesn't work, I'll use my connections to give you a discount." After all, he knew that Zhang Feng had at least 300,000 taels of silver in his residence. If he used it all to buy land, how much land would he be able to buy land? Right now, land could be bought for between 1,000 and 2,000 strings of coins per mu. If converted to silver taels, it would be 1 tael of silver for 1 mu of land. More than 300,000 taels of silver, this. Even Li Shimin couldn't help but gasp when he thought of this. Zhang Feng was a little embarrassed. He pointed in the direction of Chang'an City and said, "Actually, it's not much. I'll buy it all from the entrance of Chang'an City to the academy. After all, after buying it, it will belong to us." When the time comes, without waiting for him to finish, Li Shimin's voice changed. He asked in a trembling voice, You bought it all?" As he spoke, Li Shimin couldn't help but look in the direction of the second floor, as if he wanted to see if Zhang Yuyao and Lin Mingyao were still there. Did they go in to buy land? At this time, Yu Qigong, Qing Yaojin, Niu Jinda, and the others were already looking at Zhang Feng in shock. And Zhang Feng's image was instantly shocking to them. This place was different from other places. From a military point of view, this piece of open land was a buffer zone for the city, which was also an offensive and defensive area. Every city had an incomparably vast open space. Basically, this piece of land was an area for the people inside and outside the city to react to the situation. If there was a war and the enemy attacked, they would go out of the city to fight in a short time. Otherwise, it would be the place where the two armies faced each other. If it was an ordinary person, no one would have the courage to buy this place. Moreover, no one would dare to sell this place. After all, this piece of land belonged to the city defense area. But they never expected that Zhang Feng, a hothead, would actually buy this piece of land. They didn't know whether they should feel that Zhang Feng was awesome, or that they should feel that Zhang Feng was stupid. At this time, Zhang Feng saw that their expressions were strange. He slowly realized that things seemed to be a bit unusual. He quickly asked, "What's with your expressions? Is there something different about this piece of land? Or is it that this piece of land can't be bought?" Li Shimin didn't want to talk anymore. He waved his hand and said, "Old Yu, tell him." Seeing this, Yu Qigong directly gave Zhang Feng a thumbs up and said, "Fengzi, Lao Tzu has never admired people, especially young people. But among the young people that Lao Tzu knows, if you dare to say that you are number 2, then you dare to say that you are number 1. If there is someone who dares to say that, then Lao Tzu will slap him down." Zhang Feng was a bit confused. How could he praise someone like that? Everyone knew that Zhang Feng was smart, but wasn't it a bit too much to say such words at this time? Zhang Feng saw that everyone's expressions were strange. He quickly pulled Yu Qigong to the side and whispered, "Old Yu, tell me something. Is there a problem with this piece of land?" Yu Qigong looked at Li Shimin's people and then looked at Zhang Feng. "Are you sure that you don't know anything?" Zhang Feng shook his head with a dumbfounded expression. Seeing this, Yu Qigong patted Zhang Feng's shoulder. Zhang Feng's face instantly turned pale. His body shrank and he almost fell to the ground. Yu Qigong didn't even look at Zhang Feng. He said with great admiration, "Actually, everyone has their eyes on this piece of land. Otherwise, do you think that those dukes and nobles would let go of this piece of land? But do you know why they don't want to buy this piece of land?" How would Zhang Feng know? He hurriedly cupped his fist and asked for advice. Yu Qigong said, "Because no one dares to sell this piece of land, including the current emperor. He doesn't dare to sell it." Zhang Feng's expression changed. He asked, "What do you mean?" "Because this piece of land belongs to the 2 armies. Who do you think would dare to sell this piece of land?" Chapter 1438. Zhang Feng really didn't expect this. There was actually such a way to open up a fertile wasteland stretching from the moat of Chang and city to the barren mountain pass? How large was the area? Zhang Feng didn't know. Anyway, it would take an hour to go from the gate of Chang and city to the sentry post of the barren mountain pass by carriage. Zhang Feng estimated that if he went in a straight line, it would be about 2 or 3 kilometers. 2 or 3 kilometers. How large was the area? Such a large piece of land was a strategic location? Then this Shao Mountain, Zhang Feng suddenly had a feeling of going to Tesco. He seemed to understand something at this time. This Shao Mountain originally belonged to the Zhongnan Mountains, and it also belonged to the Qinling Mountains. There were 2 main peaks in Shao Mountain, and the academy was built on a large area between the 2 main peaks, which was like a gold ingot. Such a terrain. It was not a strategic place, was it? Moreover, now he was here, plus the firearms and other new weapons were in the research and development. Once this thing came out, how could there be any war in Chang'an City, which belonged to the hinterland of the Tang dynasty? Wasn't this nonsense? Such a fertile land was empty. How could it be burned? But looking at the long river of history, Zhang Feng felt that it was unfair at this time, but in fact he just felt unhappy. Since it was the battlefield of the city gate, there had been many ghosts since ancient times. Although Zhang Feng didn't believe in ghosts and gods, if he didn't believe in them, how could he explain his situation? Seeing this, Li Shimin asked, "Fengzi, are you sure you have asked someone to buy it?" Zhang Feng said hesitantly, "Well, you can say that. By the way, it's okay if I can't buy this land. Niu Weili will naturally arrange it for me. Go, let's not talk about it. Let's do the experiment." When Li Shimin saw Zhang Feng's current appearance, he found it somewhat funny and said, "Although the area around the city gate is indeed not for sale, if you really want to buy it, you can walk 10,000 steps out of the city and use your connections." Zhang Feng sighed and said, Forget it. My luck is not good. The fat meat that caught my eye belongs to the emperor. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go to the teaching building and attend today's open experimental class." While speaking, Zhang Feng pulled Li Shimin towards the door. Just as he walked out of the villa, Zhang Feng ran into the old village chief and several others who had heard the news. As soon as they met, the old village head directly asked, "Fengzi, what's the matter? I just heard that you were looking for us in a hurry." When Zhang Feng saw this, he instantly felt a headache coming on. He glanced at Li Shimin and hurriedly said, "Lao Li, you guys go ahead and wait. I'll be right there, okay?" Li Shimin still did not know what Zhang Feng wanted to do. He looked at Zhang Feng with a smile that was not a smile, and then slowly left with the others. In fact, there was no need to hide this matter. The key point was that it was really a bit embarrassing. After Li Shimin left, Zhang Feng said, "Old village chief, do you have any fields in your family?" This time the few people were dumbfounded. The old village chief and the others looked at each other, and then looked at Zhang Feng with some confusion and said, "Just because of this? We do have some fields in our family, but what do you mean by this?" When Zhang Feng heard this, he nodded his head. In this era there were 2 kinds of fields, teaching fields and perpetual fields. Normally, A family like the old village chief had about 100 mu of land, and this 100 mu of land was nothing much. Only a few mu of land could be cultivated. After the person who divided the fields came over to register them, the slope, wasteland, or even a mountain in the chaotic world were basically hundreds of mu of land. These were all considered fields. In addition, the people in this era basically had a stable harvest, and the fields were barren. In addition, the land was vast and sparsely populated. Therefore, the government was considered generous and basically waved their hands. They directly had 100 mu of land. Moreover, these fields were all carefully selected. The teaching fields were never divided into rivers or lakes. Basically, when the government came, if they saw that you were happy, they would give you a good piece of land. If you were unhappy, even the Wei Shui River could be your family's. Only the thin 20 mu of perpetual fields could be considered a little bit of land that could be cultivated. However, by the time you cleared the trees and weeds in the land, it would basically be a few years later. Therefore, in this era, although the land was vast and sparsely populated, and with the equal field system, most ordinary people still did not have enough to eat. They had to go to those big families to work to make ends meet. Although the equal field system had its advantages, the disadvantages were also obvious. Slaves and women would never be given any land. Only men who were 18 years old and men who were 21 years old could be allocated land. And if the head of the family already had a fief, he would basically only be given 20 mu of perpetual fields. The system of the Tang dynasty was really too chaotic. In addition, the land was barren in the years of war. Basically, although there were many fields, ordinary people still did not have enough to eat. Most people could not even afford to buy seeds. The old village chief was better. Although he was already over 70 years old and the teaching fields had been taken back. However, he had many sons and with good luck, the fields that were allocated were basically some good ones. His family would not starve. However, old he and the others were miserable. Old he was originally a slave and he only had 2 mu of land as a token. Most of the land was basically rented from those big families. Therefore, all year round he could only muddle through with a full belly. At this time, when they heard Zhang Feng's question, everyone scratched their heads in confusion. They looked at Zhang Feng with a dumbfounded expression. After understanding the situation, Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "Old village chief, quickly go to the food factory and the paper mill and take out some money. Then go to Niu Weili, the county magistrate, and take out as much as you can." Hearing this, the old village chief's expression changed instantly. He thought that Zhang Feng was going to squander. He said, "Fengzi, you can't do this. Although you have a noble title, you can't afford this kind of torment. You are not married yet, you don't dare to." Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted the old village chief and said, "That's not what I mean. What I mean is, quickly take the money and buy as much land as you can." Chapter 1439. The old village chief and the others were stunned. Although they knew about the phosphate fertilizer, they had never seen it before. However, he hadn't seen the specific situation of phosphate fertilizers, so he didn't dare to speak carelessly. At this moment, Zhang Feng actually asked them to buy land? And buy as much as they could? Wasn't this a waste of the immortals? Even if he were to give away that lousy piece of land, no one would want it. It was said that every household had a few dozen mu of land, but how many of them could actually grow crops? At most, they could only grow 1 or 2 acres of land. Just this. Buy more? Do you have too much money to burn? But before he could say anything, Zhang Feng had already run away. The old village chief was so angry that he wanted to argue with Zhang Feng, but he hurriedly pulled the old village chief and said, "Old village chief, what did Feng ask me to do? Let's do it. If you're not going, I'll go. I have some friendship with Lord Niu." Seeing this, the old village chief stomped his walking stick and said sadly, "What a wastrel." As they spoke, the old village chief, old he, and the others hurriedly went down the mountain. Although they said that they were not going because they could not bear to part with the money, Zhang Feng naturally had his reasons for asking them to buy land. If they did not buy it and delayed Zhang Feng's important matter, then it would be bad. Besides, what did Zhang Feng do that time? Was he messing around? And this time Lao Li and the others were all here. Was something big going to happen? Along the way, the old village chief and old he were discussing this matter. Along the way, they also encountered a carriage driven by an old horse. When they saw this, they hurriedly stopped Old Ma and said, "Old Ma, why aren't you following Feng? Why are you running away?" Old Ma signaled to the carriage and said, "Well, the dean asked me to go to Chang'an City to do something. I'll go first. We'll talk later." As he spoke, the old horse urged the carriage to run away like a wisp of smoke. Only the old village chief was left, who was even angrier. What kind of person did Feng find? Doesn't he respect the old at all? Why is there such a boor in the academy? Old he and Juzi's father looked at each other, then they also found a slide pole at the foot of the mountain and dragged it along. The old village chief then ran into the city. With the old village chief's small feet, it was estimated that he would not be able to reach the city even if he walked until tomorrow. When the three of them arrived at the Chang and local government, old Ma Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu saw them off respectfully under Niu Weili's smiling face. This time, the old village head instantly understood. Why was this kid so busy? It turned out that Feng Zi's two wives were sitting in the carriage. At this moment, the smile on the village chief's face blossomed like a chrysanthemum. Yuyao. While speaking, the old village head changed his sickly appearance and didn't let anyone help him. Leaning on his crutch, he walked towards the carriage. Niu Weili naturally knew the relationship between these people. Seeing this, he couldn't stop him and stepped aside. Seeing it was the old village chief, Zhang Yuyao hurriedly got off the carriage and said, "Old village chief, what are you doing here?" Seeing this, the old village chief sighed sadly and said, "It's your man. You have to take care of him. Otherwise, you won't know when he will squander all your money." Zhang Yuyao blushed, but Niu Weili pricked up his ears to eavesdrop. However, he was embarrassed by the stares of old Ma and old he, so he pretended not to see and walked aside. At this time, Zhang Yuyao smiled and said, "Old village chief, what do you mean?" "You don't know. I don't know what's wrong with Feng Zi just now. He asked me to bring money to buy land. Tell me, isn't it squandering money to buy land at this time?" Hearing this, Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu looked at each other and smiled. She pulled the old scholar aside and comforted him. After the old scholar calmed down, she whispered, "To be honest, I'm also here to buy land. And to tell you the truth, Lao Li and the others have already bought thousands of acres of good land." Hearing this, the old village chief and old he looked at Zhang Yuyao in shock and then at old Ma. After old Ma nodded and confirmed this matter, even old he couldn't help but ask, "Miss Zhang, how much land did Feng Zi ask you to buy?" Zhang Yuyao pursed her lips and said, "Well, you should wait and ask Lord Niu about this. I still have something to do, so I have to go back to my father's place. Let's talk about it when we go up the mountain." As she spoke, Zhang Yuyao hurriedly left with Jingshu and old Ma. The old village chief looked at the carriage in the distance and sighed painfully. "They're all a bunch of prodigals. What's so good about buying this lousy land? If someone wants to buy it, I'll sell my lousy land." Ahem. At this time, Niu Weili coughed and the three of them immediately reacted. After all, old he had met Niu Weili a few times and it was about the rubber factory, so they could be considered acquaintances. At this time, the two of them cupped their fists and greeted each other. "Lord Niu. Old he, what are you doing here?" Niu Weili asked as he invited the three of them into the magistrate's office. As soon as they entered, old he saw that there was no one around and said, "Feng Zi asked us to buy a lot of land. I don't know what this is about. Lord Niu, after all, you have a lot of connections. Can you take a look and tell us what's going on?" When Niu Weili heard this, he looked at the three of them strangely and asked, "Are you sure you don't know?" Old he smiled bitterly and spread out his hands. "If we knew, why would we bother Lord Niu?" The old village chief was still heartbroken. "Like I said, this Feng Zi is a prodigal. What's the use of this thing?" When Niu Weili heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. "It's not just you guys. I'm also puzzled now. Do you know how much land Prince Zhang's two wives just bought?" The old village chief hurriedly asked, "How much?" Niu Weili raised 3 fingers and said slowly, 300 hectares. Chapter 1440. When the old village chief heard this, he was almost sent away. He hurriedly rubbed his eyes and asked again in shock, "How much did you say?" "You didn't hear wrong, 300 hectares. These things were classified, but he had some friendship with these people. In addition, these people were the people Zhang Feng cared about the most, so he couldn't offend them. After all, he had to rely on Zhang Feng for everything he ate and drank. If it weren't for Zhang Feng, he would still be living on that meager amount of food. Because of Zhang Feng's rubber factory and the security fees from the Shaoshan market, Niu Weili had bought 3 properties in the most prosperous area of Chang'an City. This didn't include the land he bought and the 3 big boxes in his house that emitted the smell of copper coins. These were all genuine goods at a fair price, and they were all legitimate income. But just now he didn't know what was wrong with Zhang Feng. He actually asked his wife to tell him to buy land. What kind of logic was this? Although he knew about what happened on the mountain and the phosphate fertilizer, no one had ever used it or seen it before. Even if it had miraculous effects, they should have at least produced it. If you didn't produce it and no one had seen or used it, although Niu Weili believed in it, but he didn't dare to be rash. At this time, Niu Weili's words completely stunned the old village chief and the others. 300 hectares. Not 300 hectares. Was this Feng Zi crazy? He actually bought so much land that no one wanted? The old village chief hurriedly said, Old Master Niu, you have some friendship with Feng Zi. You must know more about the things in the palace than us. Tell me, what is Feng Zi playing at this time? Niu Weili smiled bitterly and said, I don't know about this either. There hasn't been any major events recently, so I don't know. Just now, I heard from Mrs. Zhang that Feng Zi actually asked everyone he knew, including the old soldiers of the peace house, to buy land. I don't know what Feng Zi is thinking, and he even asked me to buy land. Hearing this, the old village chief hurriedly asked, Then, did you buy it? Niu Weili didn't want to buy it, but since Zhang Feng said it, he couldn't refuse. Moreover, when did this kid do anything stupid? He naturally had his reasons for getting so many people to buy the land. He nodded and said, Naturally, I bought a dozen or so mu of land. After all, this official only has this much, and it was accumulated over the years. As for what Niu Weili said after that, only a fool would believe it. The old village chief and the others didn't mind, but they were even more confused. He had no idea what Zhang Feng was up to. So many people came to buy land. What was the meaning of this? Although the old village head didn't know what this meant, he couldn't sit still with so many people buying. He increasingly felt that Zhang Feng was going to do something big. As for what it was, although he wasn't sure, his intuition told him that he still had to buy this land. At this time, Niu Weili no longer had the desire to chat with them. He asked, What are you doing here? With this question, the old village chief and the other two were pulled back. They hurriedly said, We are also here to buy land. Niu Weili was stunned. He asked, Then how much are you planning to buy? Although he knew that Zhang Feng treated these people very well, how much money could they take out to buy land? How much could they buy? After the old village chief pulled old he and the others aside and muttered for a while, they unanimously decided that it was better to buy less. After all, everyone was buying now. Zhang Feng wouldn't be so bored as to play around with money like this. Therefore, in the end, the old village chief made the decision. He reluctantly took out a dozen silver notes and placed them in front of Niu Weili. Lord Niu, these are 1,700 taels of silver notes. We'll buy. The instant the banknotes were handed over to Niu Weili, the old village head took back a few more banknotes. After counting exactly 10 banknotes, he painfully handed them over to Niu Weili and said, Lord Niu, this is what Feng Zi told me to do. Moreover, Feng Zi treats you so well, you have to properly choose some good land for us. The corner of Niu Weili's mouth twitched. There was no need to count the silver notes. He directly took them and stuffed them into his clothes. The silver notes had almost been worn out by the old village chief. There was no need to count them. He took out the account book and flipped through it. There is a tunnel, but it's a little far. It's outside Tonghua Gate, next to Longzhou Mountain. It's about 1,000 mu. You don't want it? If you want it, I can get it for you. Yes. When the old village chief heard this, the bitterness on his face instantly turned into joy. That place was a rare piece of fertile land. Although it was a little far, it was next to Longzhou Canal. It was a rare and good place. After the money was settled, the old village chief, Old He, and Zhu Zi's father counted with their fingers and basically bought all the land for everyone in Tonghua Square. Although the money they brought today was far more than this. According to the old village chief's previous thoughts, he wouldn't buy a single word of land. The reason he was willing to pay for these useless things was all because of Zhang Feng. After busying himself for more than 2 hours, Niu Weili finally sent the old village chief and the others away. Looking at the backs of the three people, Niu Weili squinted his eyes and looked at the account book. He gritted his teeth and shouted, Advisor! After a moment, an old man with a mustache slowly entered the room. Niu Weili didn't even raise his head as he said, Quickly bring all the money I have. The advisor was stunned and hurriedly asked, Master, I want to buy land. Chapter 1441. In fact, Niu Weili didn't have much money. After cooperating with Zhang Feng, he didn't have much money. Although it wasn't much, it was still an astronomical figure for other county magistrates. At this time he could take out all his money to buy land, which showed that he trusted Zhang Feng. This time he could really make a lot of money. But he didn't know that this was just the beginning. As he made his move, all the people in the county government who could afford to buy land, who could afford it, and who had the money to buy land basically bought land like crazy. In less than a moment, Zhang Shan also hurried to buy land with more than a dozen carriages of copper coins. Such a flashy scene startled the people in Chang'an City. This was not a big deal. Before Zhang Shan's matter was dealt with, people from Chen Tong's mansion also came. This time, Qian Tong's butler was not so old-fashioned. He directly took out a banknote worth 100,000 taels of silver and threw it in front of Niu Jinda. This time, the people in Chang and city couldn't understand. At first, they thought this matter seemed to be related to the business cooperation between Niu Weili and Zhang Feng, but they didn't expect that it was not the case at all. Are these people buying land like crazy? Before the crowd could react and understand why these people were buying land so crazily, some of the officials in Changchang and city also came to buy land. It could be said that since Qian Tong's butler left, people had never stopped coming to buy land at the gate of the Chang and local government. At this time, Niu Weili also panicked. He hurriedly sent a booklet to the Ministry of Personnel. This time it was better. This booklet appeared in Li Xiaogong's hand. Li Xiaogong was a little confused. Within 2 hours, the whole city of Chang and was in chaos. Originally, this was a good thing for the imperial court, which was vast and sparsely populated. Moreover, he knew that Fang Xianling had bought a piece of land. Judging from the current situation, Li Xiaogong couldn't help but be a little confused. Could it be that there's something I don't know? Staring at the document in front of him, Li Xiaogong frowned and pondered for about the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Then he waved his sleeve and said, "Butler." A middle-aged man standing outside the door hurried into Li Xiaogong's study. "Master." Li Xiaogong wrote 2 documents and said, "Send this document to White Deer College immediately and hand it over to His Majesty. There must be no mistakes. Also, how much spare money do we have in our residence?" With this question, the housekeeper was a little confused and hurriedly said, "This month's salary hasn't been paid yet. At this time, there are only a little more than 10,000 taels of silver left in the house. In addition to the banknotes and gold leaves in the house, there are about 100,000 taels of silver." Hearing this, Li Xiaogong frowned slightly. Why are there still so many? In his memory there seemed to be more money in the family than this. Seeing this, the butler hurriedly said, "Master, most of the money has been sent to Luozhou Resort, so..." Hearing this, Li Xiaogong suddenly understood. He waved his hand and said, "Let's not worry about this for now. Go and use all the money in the house to buy land. Buy as much as you can. Also, immediately inform Luozhou to do the same. There must be no mistakes." Li Xiaogong had a hunch that this matter seemed to be related to the phosphate fertilizer. And this time, people from the mountain came down to buy land, especially Zhang Feng's 2 womenfolk. There must be a big movement. "Master, how should we reply to the Chang and local government?" Hearing this, Li Xiaogong frowned and pondered for a moment. Then he said, "Give an order first. This matter is temporarily suspended. If anyone asks, just say that there is no land to sell at the moment." At the same time. At this time the mountain was not peaceful. This was especially true for the people of Tong Huifang. After hearing about this matter from the old village chief, everyone started scheming. On the mountain, more than 3,000 students were sitting in the square excitedly, waiting for Zhang Feng's arrival. On the field, Li Qingqian and the others were already prepared, but Zhang Feng still hadn't arrived. Looking at the long and strange table covered in white cloth, and then looking at the bottles and jars on the table that were transparent like ice, all the students were stupefied. Li Shimin and the others were also surprised at this time. But seeing that Zhang Feng was not coming, they were also a little anxious. Li Shimin looked at the students below the stage and Li Qingqian, who was wearing a mask, and whispered to Wei Zheng, who was next to him, "Old Wei, do you think something will happen at the foot of the mountain?" Wei Zheng was stunned and hurriedly said, "Nothing will happen, right? After all this matter." Without waiting for him to finish, Xiao Gizi hurriedly bent over and jumped on the stage. He squatted behind Li Shimin and said with a strange face, "Second Master, just now the news from the foot of the mountain said that after Miss Zhang and the others went down the mountain, the whole Chang and city was in an uproar, and many people ran to buy land." Li Shimin heard this and was instantly stunned. He had noticed that something was wrong and had been uneasy. Before, he did not know what was going on. Now that Xiao Gizi said this, Li Shimin could not sit still. He suddenly jumped up from the chair and asked, "Did Fengzi really buy the land at the gate of the city?" This. Chapter 1442. Li Shimin seriously doubted whether this Niu Weili would dare to sell that piece of land without using his brain. If he really did sell that piece of land, then there would be a lot of trouble. Just as Li Shimin was letting his imagination run wild, Zhang Feng changed into his iconic white robe and slowly walked over with his hands clasped behind his back. What awaited him was the sound of a tsunami. Seeing this, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Quickly send a message to Li Xiaogong and tell him to stop selling the land. As for other matters, wait until I return to the palace to discuss them." As Li Shimin's voice fell, Zhang Feng also slowly walked up to the high platform. At this moment, on the high platform, Ouyang Sun, old elementary scholar Sun Ximiao, Li Gang, and the others sat at the front with the best view. Behind them were Li Shimin, Wei Zhang, and the others. Although this kind of arrangement usually didn't happen, it was because of Li Shimin's identity that this was the case. Zhang Feng first greeted everyone and glanced at little Gizi. A trace of surprise flashed through his eyes, but in the end he didn't take it seriously. After waving his hand to silence the students, he said, "A few days ago, because of some matters, you all know about your classmate Qian Wanli's matter, right? It was because of this phosphate fertilizer that Qian Wanli fell into the hands of evil people. Because of this, I have decided today to use practical actions to uphold justice for Qian Wanli. Didn't some people spread rumors that our phosphate fertilizer was poisonous? Didn't some people say that there was a problem with our phosphate fertilizer? Then today I won't wear this mask and will do an experiment for everyone. You will be able to learn these things in the future. But there is one point that you must remember clearly, and that is that everything you learn is the foundation of the country. You must be like those birds and know how to reciprocate. Do you all remember?" When the 3,000 plus students heard this, they all bowed and said, "We obey the dean's orders." Hearing this, Zhang Feng gestured with his hands to silence the crowd. He turned to Yu Shernan and the others and said, "Respected teachers, is that kid going to start now?" Yu Shernan nodded and glanced at Li Shimin. Seeing Li Shimin nod without a trace, he said, "Then let's start. But are you sure that this thing is no longer poisonous?" Apart from the more than 3,000 students from Chang and University and White Deer Academy, there were also craftsmen from the various academies present. Most importantly, the emperor was also present. If something went wrong, it would be no laughing matter. Zhang Feng smiled indifferently and said, "The phosphate stone will not poison people in an open and ventilated place. Moreover, with such a small amount, it won't poison people." As for old Nyo and the others, it was because they stayed on the phosphate mine mountain for a night and pulled dozens of wagons over along the way. It would be strange if they were not poisoned. And the poisoning of Li Gan and the others was an accident. Because of the improper experiment, the high-pressure phosphate fertilizer leaked out. Hearing this, everyone was enlightened. Li Shimin pulled off the mask on his mouth and said with a smile, "If that's the case, why should I wear this? Although it's exquisite, it's still a little suffocating." As he spoke, Li Shimin was about to light a cigarette. But, before he could light the cigarette, Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped him. Although the cigarette would not cause any harm, but what if it did? Laoli, at this time we're still fine. This thing is not a joke. I don't know if this fire will cause any other problems. So, after the experiment is over, I'll treat you to a cigarette. How about that? Okay, let's not talk about it. Just watch. As he spoke, Zhang Feng personally walked down from the podium. When Li Qingqian and the others saw this, they hurriedly took out some phosphate ores that they had prepared in advance and put them on the grinder to grind them slowly. When Zhang Feng arrived on the stage, the entire academy was silent. Everyone stared at Zhang Feng's every move with their eyes wide open. They saw Zhang Feng use a small shovel to grind some powder on the grinder and put it in a strange bottle with a big belly. Then he lit an oil lamp under the bottle. Then he put a glass jar over the mouth of the bottle. Not long after, a milky white smoke flowed along the canister and slowly flowed into another large bottle. The large bottle was about half filled with water, and the smoke miraculously flowed along the canister into the bottom of the bottle. Logically speaking, the smoke should be able to float. But the amazing thing was, the smoke not only did not float, but also sank to the bottom of the water. It swirled at the bottom of the water, and some white powder slowly appeared at the bottom of the bottle. Although the test bench was not big, but the people who were not far from the test bench saw it clearly. Only the students who were far away stretched their necks and waited for the test bench. And Li Shimin and the others had never seen such a magical thing. It could actually make the smoke settle in the water. This was amazing enough. After a round of operation, Zhang Feng pointed to the powder at the bottom of the water and said, "Everyone, this is the phosphorus element, which is the material used to make phosphorus fertilizer." Chapter 1443. Zhang Feng's words. Instantly all the students were in an uproar. Even Yu Shernan and the others on the stage, along with Sun Ximiao, hurried to Zhang Feng's side with their masks. Li Shimin wanted to come, but he was helplessly pressed down on the chair by Niu Jinda. He couldn't get up even if he wanted to. He was so suffocated that his whole face turned red. Li Shimin was cornered. He glared at Niu Jinda and said, "What do you mean by this? Second master, you better bear with it first. I know the power of this thing. It's something that people don't even dare to smell. Fengzi is young. He can withstand it? Then you mean that my body is very weak? In an instant, Li Shimin's words made Niu Jinda's body tremble. He hurriedly explained, No, I mean, it's... After hemming and hawing for a long time, Li Shimin was also impatient. He said, I came here today for this thing. If even I shrink back, won't I become a laughingstock? Wei Zheng and the others were also frightened by the matter between Niu Jinda and the emperor. However, when he saw that it was because of this matter, Wei Zheng hurriedly went forward to persuade Li Shimin. Second master, just watch. Don't go forward. Yes, second master. If you go forward, how big of a sin will we be committing? Li Shimin finally understood. These people had already discussed it. They were afraid that he would do something. They were afraid that something would happen to him. However, if he didn't go today and witness it with his own eyes, he would really be letting his conscience down. Shut up. Li Shimin's slightly angry roar instantly made several people shut up. Yu Shernan and the others heard it, but they couldn't say anything. After all, this was a matter of the court. What could they say? Moreover, it was the first time they saw this thing. It was also very rare. After all, there were some things that could not be helped. Under Li Shimin's scolding, although Fang Xianling and the others were still somewhat unwilling, they didn't dare to say anything since they were on the mountain after all. They could only make way for Li Shimin. Li Shimin thought about it and put on the mask. In fact, he really didn't want to wear this thing. He always wondered if this thing was a bit inauspicious. However, if he didn't wear it, it would make everyone nag, so Li Shimin still chose to wear it. When the few of them walked onto the stage, the first round of refining had already ended. Zhang Feng was currently sorting out the residue in the equipment and the small amount of phosphate fertilizer that had been refined. The extraction of phosphate fertilizer was actually very simple. It was to add some sodium nitrate, which was also known as lime powder, into the water. Then, the phosphorus element gas, which had been distilled at high temperatures, was introduced into the water. After a chemical reaction, the precipitated phosphate fertilizer, which was also known as phosphorus nitrate. This was also the simplest thing that Zhang Feng could make based on the things of the current era. It was also the most acceptable thing for everyone. Zhang Feng was actually very troubled. These things actually didn't need to be done. However, on one hand he couldn't stand it anymore. On the other hand, he really didn't know about the problem of next year's locust plague. After all, only through this year's planting and irrigation, and by entangling the powder in the water, could a series of obstructions be achieved. Next year's things could possibly eliminate the locusts. But Zhang Feng didn't have the ability to completely eliminate the locusts. At the very least, he had to wait until the hot air balloon was accepted by everyone. Then he could use the hot air balloon to spray pesticides in a large area to possibly stop the locusts. This was only within the territory of the Tang dynasty. As for the matters outside, Zhang Feng couldn't care so much. But even so, whether the locusts could be stopped by then was another matter. Therefore, on the premise that at least the people in his academy, Lao Li and the others wouldn't starve next year, and on the premise that old Niu accidentally found this thing, Zhang Feng came up with this idea. Otherwise, Zhang Feng really didn't want to do such a troublesome thing. Moreover, it had been leaked out by someone. If he waited until after next year's spring harvest, it didn't matter whether this matter was leaked out or not. However, damn it, he let that old man surnamed Kong come to the mountain and secretly spread the news about the phosphate fertilizer. That was what led to the subsequent matters. Therefore, Zhang Feng was indeed in a bad mood today. The feeling of being made a fool of made him feel very depressed. Therefore, since they were guessing blindly, Lao Tzu would directly lay his cards on the table. Even if their schemes could be deceiving, Lao Tzu wouldn't be afraid. This was where Zhang Feng's confidence came from. Those who believed in him could fill their bellies. Those who didn't believe in him, good luck to them. Li Shimin and the others wandered around the experiment table, and Li Qingqian assumed the role of a guide, loudly introducing the idea of the experiment. And some of the things on the experiment table. Professional terms. For example, the composition of sodium nitrate and so on. Not to mention Yu Shernan and the others who had been studying Zhang Feng's physics teaching book all day long. Even the more than 3,000 students couldn't stay calm when they heard this at this moment. Is this really what we've been learning all this while? Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't speak, a student hurriedly came forward and asked loudly, Mr. Dean, is this thing called experiment really so magical? Is it that the snow-like thing is the phosphate fertilizer that can greatly increase the yield of grain? Chapter 1444. Dean, please enlighten us. Everyone heard this. More than 3,000 students started shouting noisily. What a joke. Although this experiment was a piece of cake for Zhang Feng, To the people of this feudal era, this was undoubtedly the first time they had done something like this since the beginning of time. At this time, if they could really come up with something or if they could learn this thing, they would be able to use this skill to secure a position in the Ministry of Works. What was this? This was a benefit that could be seen with one's eyes. Moreover, what they were learning now was the theoretical knowledge of these things. Basically, the entire White Deer College learned a variety of things. For example, ancient Chinese and so on were categorized by Zhang Feng into the Chinese series. The students were very puzzled by this title. However, since the dean said so, what could they do? As for mathematics, it was treated as a serious course. These 2 classes were taught every day. However, these 2 classes were more complicated, especially the Chinese series, which included ancient Chinese such as the Book of Songs, Tao Te Ching, and so on. There was also a meditation class on the current situation. There was also a dictation class on the future of the Tang dynasty and so on. In this dictation class, there were also medical lectures and military sand table lessons. As for the medical course, it was basically Sun Simiao who taught some common medical hygiene, physiological hygiene, and so on. There were also some common medical books on the understanding of blood vessels, common treatments for colds and coughs, and some life tips. Although these things seemed extremely simple, after learning them, one would realize that these things were actually too complicated. Not to mention things like aerodynamics, atmospheric pressure, water pressure, and so on. Why could humans float on water? Why was there wind? How was wind formed? And so on. These things undoubtedly revealed the wonders of nature. After seeing the dean and a few senior brothers' personal experiments today, it seemed to have opened a window for these people. Previously, when they saw Zhang Feng's medical lectures and Zhang Feng's treatment of Niu Jianhu's leg, it caused a commotion among the students on the mountain. Many people were completely immersed in medicine. Sun Simiao could not help but be overjoyed. However, this time, the door opened by Zhang Feng made Sun Simiao and the others feel that the world was extremely mysterious. They even unanimously believed that what Zhang Feng said was not true. However, it was not until the last time when the yellow ginger he planted transformed after using phosphate fertilizer that Sun Simiao finally saw Zhang Feng's terrifying talent and the wonders of the technology that Zhang Feng mentioned. Today was also the first time he witnessed such an experiment with his own eyes. Under his eyes, Zhang Feng personally crushed the stone dregs into powder and turned them into wisps of gas through high temperature. Then, through the water at the other end, he turned them into something whiter than snow. That was the phosphate fertilizer last time. Sun Simiao was it? However, after careful observation and testing, Sun Simiao was shocked to discover that this thing was exactly the same as the phosphate fertilizer that Zhang Feng had given him before. That was to say, this thing was undoubtedly phosphate fertilizer? Sun Simiao saw so many people asking at this time and couldn't help but ask, "Fengzi, tell us. Otherwise, old man can be sure that these students will break your door." Zhang Feng sighed and said, "Since Dr. Sun asked me to tell you, I dare not neglect. Since everyone wants to know, then I will tell you my idea today. Do you know why I made the matter of phosphate fertilizer public today? Someone told me that after I got this thing out, I should let the facts speak for themselves. Someone even told me not to spread this thing and keep it as a family heirloom. There are many such things, but..." Zhang Feng looked around and said, "I also thought so." In an instant, everyone burst into laughter. In fact, this idea was the truest. If it were them, they would choose to treat this thing as a family heirloom and pass it down. Zhang Feng shook his head and said, "Wrong. I know that you all want to fight. In fact, I am also a layman. I don't have such high moral integrity, and I have never thought of saving the world. The world has nothing to do with me, Zhang Feng." Yu Shernan couldn't help but frown slightly. The old scholar laughed and said no more. At this time, everyone's expression was different. Some agreed with Zhang Feng's approach and some thought that Zhang Feng might have been provoked. Some even wanted to stop Zhang Feng from continuing. However, Zhang Feng said loudly, "But these are all my previous thoughts. Indeed, we're not saints. To put it bluntly, we're all born and raised by our parents. We're all humans with flesh and blood. As long as we're humans, we're bound to have selfish motives. I, Zhang Feng, am not a saint either. I also have my own selfish motives. My selfish motives are to allow the people I like, the people I care about, the people who care about me, the people who like me, my brothers and family members to live a safe and stable life. That's all. But there is a limit. That is, I can't bear to see others suffer. You are all my students, Zhang Feng. Then we are family. If I, Zhang Feng, can't even fill your stomachs, then I will feel ashamed if you call me a teacher. I will feel ashamed. And you also have family, and your family may be starving at this time. So, I was thinking, since you are all my students, all my family, then why should I be so secretive? In fact, if you have the slightest interest in this thing, you will definitely recognize many things from Li Gan and the others' introduction. That's right. Many of the things in this experiment are things that you have seen in books before. You should be familiar with this thing, right? At this moment all the students were in an uproar. Immediately there was a tsunami of cheers. Chapter 1445. Zhang Feng was not wrong. The reason why Zhang Feng chose to make it public was not only to win over the hearts of the people, but also to popularize the phosphate fertilizer as soon as possible. More importantly, it was because of the incident with Chen Wanli. Although many people did not say it out loud, a seed had already been planted in their hearts. What Zhang Feng wanted to do was to take advantage of this opportunity to completely wipe out this seed in the cradle. After all, this thing was a disaster. There was no way to give the students a sense of security in the academy. How could the students completely open their hearts? This operation was effective in an instant. Although Zhang Feng did not know for the time being whether these people really understood and opened their hearts or not, at least at this moment, he could feel that the series of factors caused by Chen Wanli's incident had all disappeared. At this moment, Yu Shernan and the others were also a little shocked. The things that Zhang Feng said were actually recorded in the book. But today, even he could not understand Zhang Feng's words at this time. What on earth did Zhang Feng do, let alone Li Shimin? But at this time, seeing that the students of the academy were so excited, they could not say anything and could only let Zhang Feng fool around. After all, overall, the haze caused by Chen Wanli had disappeared at this time. At this time, Zhang Feng continued, in fact, what I want to say is that none of us are saints. We just want to use our own strength to make everyone live a better life. We all have families, neighbors, brothers, and friends. When we are full, do we have to watch them starve too? This is not something that we should do. I'll make it clear here first. If anyone dares to do this, no matter what official rank you are, Lao Tzu will find a way to get you down. A person who does not even have the basic filial piety and conscience does not deserve to be an official at all. Although these are two different things, they are actually the same thing. How can a person who does not even have the basic principles of being an official? An official is also a muddle-headed official. Today this phosphate fertilizer, you all saw it. This is a gift that I, Zhang Feng, want to protect the people I want to protect. I don't care if the world doubts this thing at this time or what, but since I have made it today, I will provide it to you for free at the first time. When it is time for autumn planting, I will give you a holiday. During autumn planting, no matter the official rank, there would be a few days of holiday. This was a law set by the current emperor to encourage agriculture. But as for the academy, although there were no clear rules, basically, no one had set a precedent. Today, Zhang Feng's words. It was not because of anything else. They were all commoners from the bottom rung of society. At this time they came to the academy to learn the most advanced and awesome things that everyone else had to look up to. Their dean was the youngest Confucian scholar and the person who was most likely to surpass Wei Zheng's existence. Everyone in the world thought that he was a person who was more accomplished than the godly Dr. Sun Simiao. This was why the 6 Confucian scholars were willing to come to the academy. What was the reason for this? It was not because of a few jars of wine, nor was it because Zhang Feng was thick-skinned, nor was it because they were after Zhang Feng's little bit of salary. It was mainly because of the teaching philosophy on the academy, as well as the feeling of awe that everyone felt when they saw the white deer college uniform. It was the simple and unadorned kind that Zhang Feng said. That's right. Zhang Feng said so much. He said so much in every speech. It was just to explain one thing. Don't forget your roots. Forgetting one's roots was an extremely terrifying thing. At this time, among the 3,000 students, some seemed to have thought of this point. However, most of them were immersed in Zhang Feng's impassioned speech and were unable to extricate themselves. At this time, Ma Zhou and the others were so emotional that they bowed deeply. When Li Qingqian and the others saw this, although they did not want to, they still bowed with them. With this bow, all the students began to follow suit. When Zhang Feng saw this, he waved his hand slightly and said, "All of you get up. There's no need to do this. I'm giving you a break, but there's a condition. The condition is that you have to work in the fields personally. When the time comes, I'll give you an assignment. It can be considered an assessment for this semester." Li Shimin could not help but look at Zhang Feng with some surprise. He asked, "What kind of assessment are you planning? Don't tell me you want them to work in the fields?" Zhang Feng nodded and said, "That's right. I've come up with a poem. Today I'll give it to all of you. Hoeing crops at noon, sweat dripping down to the soil. Who knows that every grain of rice on the plate is laborious? Only when you truly realize how difficult it is to obtain these grains, will you know how to walk your own path in the future. Even the current emperor, from what I know, will personally work in the fields in the imperial manor on Longsho Mountain, let alone all of you? Don't tell me you feel that your status is more noble than the emperor? Today I'm giving you an assignment. From tomorrow onwards, every one of you will have to choose a piece of land on the mountain. The size of the land will depend on you. But this piece of land must be personally planted by you. Do not count on others. And from today onwards, whether you want to eat meat or soil on the mountain, that will depend on you. The things that you plant, the livestock that you breed, will all need to be reported to the kitchen. Then, every year, according to your income from that year, the standard of your meals will be determined. Of course, these things that are produced will all be returned to the kitchen. This matter I'll leave it to Du Dabing. Chapter 1446. In an instant, all the students were in an uproar. In their cognition, studying was the most noble thing. But why did studying become so cheap here? Moreover, they had to plant food by themselves? Although these things were not a big deal for most of the students, for some of them who had been spoiled since childhood, it was uncomfortable. For example, Dugo. For example, Li Qingqian and the others. At this moment they were all frowning. For example, Ouyang Sun, on the other hand, laughed loudly and said, "All of you must remember clearly what the dean has said today. Of course, the academy will pay for all the seeds and fertilizers. As for those of you who don't know how to grow crops, I have 2 suggestions here. First, voluntarily withdraw from the academy. My academy will write a document, and on this document, it will state that you all don't know how to grow crops and won't write anything else. As for the second, that is to ask the students around you and humbly ask for advice. If you don't know how hard it is to get the food on the plate, how will you know how hard it is to get the Tang dynasty in the future? In the future, no matter what you do, it will be closely related to the academy. Although the academy has given you glory and let you be arrogant in Chang'an City, don't forget that it is the academy that has given you this. The academy has the right to withdraw it. It can do so at any time. And everything the dean said today is to remind you of one thing, that is, don't forget your original intention. This is a guiding stone that will determine how far you can go in the future. Only with it in your hands, you will not lose yourself in sensual pleasures." Zhang Feng's words were a little harsh today. However, Zhang Feng had thought about it before he came. In fact, he had wanted to do this for a long time. The reason why he bought so much land this time was also for a purpose. Want him to plant food? Are you kidding me? Would he plant food? This time he spent so much money to buy the land because of the phosphate fertilizer and the students on the mountain. After all, they were only the first batch of students and there would be many more in the future. These things were actually for the world to see. One had to know that at this time, everyone was waiting for Zhang Feng's answer. They were also feeling ashamed of the pair of hands behind his back. This was Zhang Feng's explanation to the people of the world, which was also his attitude. Those who follow me will always have meat to eat. Those who don't follow me, you can just drool. The lecture time was more than the experiment time. After Zhang Feng finished talking about these things, only Li Qingqian and the others were left to perform. They performed the experiment while explaining the theory of the experiment to the students. As for Zhang Feng, after his speech, he slipped away under the eager gazes of the students. Li Xin's, one of the 2 compassionate peasants, was the only one left. After that, Li Shimin personally wrote the poem. After that, he laughed and left with Yu Shernan and the others. The matter had already ended. If they stayed here, it would only increase the pressure in the hearts of the students. They went directly to Zhang Feng's villa together. Zhang Feng's door was wide open. He seemed to have expected that they would follow. At this time, even the tea had been poured and he was waiting for them. As soon as they entered the room, Zhang Feng said, "Let's make it clear first. This matter is my personal decision. It is also my decision as the dean. There is no room for negotiation." Zhang Feng had to give them a heads up first. Although he didn't know what they would ask, Zhang Feng's intuition told him that these people would definitely ask all kinds of reasons for doing so. It was not that Zhang Feng didn't want to say. They asked because they were too lazy to say. As for why the academy for the first time let the students participate in the matter of eating in the future, in fact, Zhang Feng himself didn't know. Although it was said that it was there, Zhang Feng just wanted to slow down. There were too many things in the past 2 days. In addition, Zhang Feng had to think about the promotion and production of this phosphate fertilizer. Therefore, Zhang Feng's head really hurt at this time. If it wasn't because Lao Li wanted to see Zhang Feng do the experiment, Zhang Feng would really be too lazy to do it. At this time he just wanted to cover his head and have a good sleep. But obviously, Li Shimin and the others didn't take his words seriously. Hearing Zhang Feng's words, Li Shimin laughed. He took out Zhang Feng's poem and said, "Did you just compose this again? Or did you already think about it?" Zhang Feng's expression froze and said, "It's just a casual remark. How can I be so awesome to think about it in advance?" Yu Shernan and the others had always felt that Zhang Feng seemed to have been prepared for this. At this time, when they heard him say this, they were a little annoyed and said, "So you mean that everyone in the world is inferior to you?" Zhang Feng was sweating profusely in an instant. This was copying someone else's poem. Why did he need to think for so long? Wasn't it something that could be done easily? Moreover, this poem was in the future. Which one of them, from 70 to 80 years old to 5 or 6 years old children, did not know how to memorize a few poems? This was the simplest of them. No, Mr. Bosher, you think too much. This poem was actually written by my feelings. It's not a good poem. It can only be considered a limerick. When he said this, Yu Shernan's expression became even worse. He slammed the table and said, "So you mean that we don't even have the right to write in the future?" Chapter 1447. Zhang Feng instantly felt that this might be a conspiracy. This was definitely a conspiracy. Otherwise, why would nothing happen to him when he had created so many poems? Why would such a big thing happen now? There was definitely a conspiracy. Otherwise, why would he make such a big fuss over this matter? Moreover, it was with so many people as if they had discussed it beforehand. When Zhang Feng thought of this, he was furious. He glanced at the old scholar. At this time, the old scholar was actually not speaking up for him. Zhang Feng was a little speechless. He said, "Actually, there is still some truth to this matter. What is going on? Actually, I am just expressing my feelings. I'm not targeting anyone. You have also seen how big of a mess this phosphate fertilizer matter has caused. I just want to do something meaningful. At the very least, before the locusts arrive next year, every household will be able to save up some food. Otherwise, if they say it's someone else, even I won't be able to fight back. You have also seen it. For the past few years, I have almost exhausted all my savings to get this little bit of food. If you are talking about the future, then how can I? Where will I get food from in the future and next year? This year, the great Tang has practically emptied itself out in order to barely keep the mouths of the people shut. What about next year? The most important thing is that if I don't do something next year, not to mention the common people, even those in the imperial court who don't know their place and don't like the academy will hit us when we are down. The common people are the scariest when they are hungry. Therefore, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, I said the ugly words. I can't command others, but there are more than 3,000 students in the academy, which means more than 3,000 families. These people are walking signboards. Once their families accept the phosphate fertilizer, what do you think the people, their neighbors, their relatives will think? Before this, our academy's reputation has always been very good. That's why I thought of this. This is also the last trump card I can use now. Once this trump card is used, the phosphor fertilizer matter is basically settled. Zhang Feng chose to surrender directly. At this time, no matter how much he said to these people, it would be nonsense. The only way was to tell the main reason for this matter. Otherwise, these old foxes would definitely find out every little detail of his background clearly. Instead of this, Zhang Feng might as well tell them all his plans. At least, Li Shimin, Wei Jing, Zhang Sun Wuji, and the others listened and nodded repeatedly. Yu Shernan, Xiucai, and the others were also bursting with joy. On the contrary, Ouyang Sun pointed out of the window and said, "Fengzi, what you said is right. But have you thought about it, this mountain is only so big. Apart from the residential areas and some important places, where else can people grow crops? Besides, even if there is, have you thought about it? There are more than 3,000 students, plus the handymen on the mountain and so on. There are about 4,000 people altogether. Even if each person has 1 mu of land, where do you plan to let these people go and grow crops?" Ahem. Yu Qigong coughed and looked at Zhang Feng strangely. This kid just spent hundreds of thousands of taels of silver to buy a large piece of land. Before, I did not know that although this kid is greedy for money, he is not a person who likes to grow crops. Now I understand that this kid is playing this game. This time. Yu Shernan and the others finally understood. This bastard, so he was prepared long ago. But even so, Ouyang Sun still asked with a gloomy face, "Even so, I want to ask, what is this academy of yours for? The academy is supposed to focus on the student studies, but what about you? You spend all your time learning this and that, but in the end you want the students to go to the fields to grow crops? If you really want to do this, then do we have to go to the fields to work?" However, Zhang Feng said uncertainly, No, that's not what I meant. In fact, to put it bluntly, I'm doing this to show the potential of the agricultural course. Although there was an agricultural course at the beginning, there has never been any practical development. So I want to use this matter to show the potential of the agricultural course. Ouyang Sun was shocked when he heard this. But he also thought of this point. When they first vacated the farm and turned it into an incubation garden, they realized this point. However, Zhang Feng never said anything. In the incubation garden, after some things were planted on the day of the autumn planting ceremony, there was no movement at all. So they did not have any other thoughts. But at this time they did not expect that Zhang Feng was still thinking about this. Not only that, he had just bought so much land. How could this make Ouyang Sun and the others feel better? The academy. It was a place that taught people to be kind. But what about Zhang Feng? He actually treated it as a place where he only cared about himself and did whatever he wanted. How could this be? Then Ouyang Sun pulled Li Gang and the old village chief and the other two fiercely criticized Zhang Feng. This made Zhang Feng even more depressed. Damn it, what was wrong with today? Did they eat gunpowder? Chapter 1448. Zhang Feng did not understand. As a big agricultural country, this matter should be the most important thing. But why was it that when it came to this place, it made these lords so angry? Moreover, this thing, to put it bluntly, there was a work-study system in the later generations, not to mention the later generations. In the later generations, didn't people from all walks of life have to go back to their villages to work during the autumn planting every year? What was wrong with this? Besides, there were almost 5,000 people on the mountain, which meant that there were more than 5,000 mouths. This did not include the people in the market at the foot of the mountain. If the people in the paper mill, food factory, rubber factory, and so on were counted, there would be a total of 6,000 people. These 6,000 people were equivalent to more than 6,000 mouths. The current situation was that even if the academy was not short of money, it was impossible to buy food with money. Looking at the whole Tang dynasty, which family had more food now? It was not common to rely only on buying food. They had to come up with a long-term plan, which was to grow their own food. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng looked at them carefully. Seeing that they seemed to have a lot of questions, he smiled and said, "Dear masters, look at the current situation on Mount Shao. Including the students of the academy, the handymen, the craftsmen, and the recruited refugees, there are at least 6,000 or 7,000 people on Mount Shao. There are so many mouths waiting for me to eat. Even though I have many wonderful ideas and can find money, there is a saying that goes, 'Help the needy, not the poor.' Right now, I can still count on my own business to buy more food, but you can see the current situation. How much food is left for us to buy? It's okay for a few years, but what about next year? What about after the famine year next year? This is not a long-term plan. Besides, even if I can do business now and the business on the mountain is still okay, but these things are just small businesses. Do you think that ordinary people really know how to do business? The business skills that I have written, let alone the students, even those who are doing it, I told you, may not know some of the twists and turns in it, let alone the refugees who rely on the academy. Still the same question, can ordinary people really make money? I don't think so. Relying on one's strength to earn money and relying on the heavens to eat will never lead to success. Moreover, these methods will never be as effective as using one's brain to earn money. For example, my esteemed self, just how many of the people of the Great Tang know how to observe when the Zhuang family needs fertilizer? When is the right time to irrigate? Just by looking at the appearance of the farmers, can you tell if the farmers lack any fertilizer? No. Zhang Feng said with some grief and indignation. They only know how to follow the natural laws of heaven and earth. When they plant crops, they have to wait until it rains. Then they have to fertilize the farmers in the field and then remove the weeds. How ridiculous is this? Can the seeds really germinate? Do the Zhuang family's grain really need some fertilizer? Don't these farmers to say they lack of fertilizer? Do they know all these? I believe, not to mention others, I think most of us here don't know these things. The old Xiaocai looked at Zhang Feng with shock and said, "Then you said so much, is it because you want everyone on Shao Mountain to learn to read, not just the children in the academy?" "I want to try." Zhang Feng nodded heavily and said, "When I opened the academy I told you, old Xiaocai, and I also told you, Lao Li, that I don't care how many people I can make literate. I don't have the ability to make all the people in the world learn to read, and I don't have the power to do so. I just feel that I have to give the people I want a better life, that's all." The old Xiaocai was shocked by Zhang Feng's words and shook his head. "Fengzi, your idea is really good, but have you thought about it? These people are refugees and farmers who have no knowledge at all. How can they understand this knowledge? Even if you really want to teach them now, have you thought about it? The first thing these people want when they wake up every morning is to go somewhere to earn some money for breakfast. Every day when they go to sleep, they think about how they can bear the burden of a grudge between a penny and a penny today. Moreover, as the saying goes, a gentleman works his mind while a villain works his body. If you only pick a dozen or 100 people, it may be possible. But if you want to teach everyone on Shao Mountain, not to mention you, even Confucius couldn't do it if I wanted to see it. Teacher Wen nodded and said, young friend Zhang Feng, I can understand your thoughts, but brother Zihuai is right. Every day these people think about how to make the farmers in the fields take more and less spoil, and pray that God will pity them. How can they have the time to think so much? I know you want to do the best for the world, but there has to be a limit. It has to be done step by step. Immediately Yu Shernan and the others, including Wei Zheng and the others, nodded and agreed with Li Gang's words. Looking at everyone's shocking appearance, Zhang Feng suddenly realized that he seemed to be talking to a chicken and a duck. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng waved his hand and stopped the crowd. Stop, I have something to say. Chapter 1449. In fact, Zhang Feng could understand these things after thinking about it. After all, Zhang Feng, who came from the future, had a deep-rooted understanding that anyone could study. According to his understanding, anyone could study. Even the lowliest commoner had the right to study. Moreover, they also had the possibility to become the pillars of the country. If Zhang Feng were to talk about these historical figures, he might not be able to explain them clearly even if he spent 3 days and 3 nights talking about them. However, Yu Shernan and the others had a completely different understanding. Zhang Feng could see in their eyes that a scholar was a scholar and a commoner should be a commoner. This was the understanding engraved in the bones of the people of this era. In the beginning, when Zhang Feng opened the academy, they had opposed it. However, at that time, Zhang Feng opened the academy and it was considered orthodox. Therefore, although Yu Shernan and the others were not happy, they could accept it. But now, Zhang Feng actually wanted to teach the commoners on the mountain. This difficulty, in their eyes, was tantamount to reaching the sky. Only those who were born with a prominent family, some good bloodline, and those who had the inheritance of a powerful family could become talents. However, these were not a problem for Zhang Feng. Even at this moment, in front of the teaching building, Ma Zhou and a few other commoners were talking about the magical knowledge of physics to the students of the academy. However, Yu Shernan and the others seemed to have some resistance in their hearts. This might have a lot to do with this era. In this era, commoners usually referred to people like Prince Consort Zhou and Chujun Laiji. However, in the future, commoners included the poor. In the beginning of the Tang dynasty, commoners were only compared to those who were not from the noble families, such as the families of merchants and so on. Only those who had some basic conditions could be called commoners. In fact, this was very easy to understand. If you could not eat, how would you have the time to read and learn? For these people, there was only one evaluation for them. Reading? Were they worthy? There was no good or evil in people who had such an idea. It was a deep-rooted way of thinking, just like Zhang Feng's idea that everyone was equal and everyone could read. No one would think that people who had such an idea were evil or good. Zhang Feng also knew that there was no need to argue about these things. Even if they argued for 3 days and 3 nights, there would be no conclusion. In the face of inherent thinking, there was really nothing to say. Therefore, Zhang Feng sighed and said, "Teachers, this must be a road that you can't walk on, right?" When Yu Shernan and the others heard this, they could not help but choose to remain silent. Even Li Shimin sighed and didn't say anything. At this moment, Zhang Feng looked at the crowd and said, "But if you don't even have the courage to try, how can you succeed? If I am to truly succeed this time around, then, esteemed teachers, think about it. What sort of sensational effect will these 1,000+ people bring? First of all, these people can read and know what should be planted first in their crops, when there is a shortage of water, when there is a lack of fertilizer, when the roots of the crops are eaten by insects, and this is not the most important thing. When they can really read and write, won't it be better for them to do business in their leisure time? For example, they only know how to collect a little scattered copper coins. In their knowledge, they only know how to install things. What if someone gives them an ingot of silver, what will they do? This is a kind of knowledge. It has nothing to do with the skills of merchants. It is to teach them how to calculate. You have seen that now that the waterway trade route has been opened, coupled with the trade with Zhenla, as long as we take down the trade center of Chiotsi City this time, more merchants from the western regions will flock to Chang'an City. What kind of place is Chang'an? This is the center of the entire Tang dynasty and the center of power of the entire Tang dynasty. It is a place that will be worshipped by all countries in the future. If outsiders know that the people in Chang'an City are illiterate and don't know how to do business, what will it be? It will be a disgrace to the Tang dynasty. It will be a disgrace to those of us who promote the culture of the Tang dynasty and let the people in the world learn and use it. Not to mention other places, even in Chang'an City, he can't make some people literate. What will the merchants and the people who come to pay tribute to the Tang dynasty think? What will His Majesty think? Is this what he thinks? Are we doing something useless that will smear the name of the great Tang? And even if His Majesty doesn't say this, as scholars, don't we feel ashamed to face the world and the sages? Chapter 1450. After Zhang Feng said this, he still maintained his smile. This was the first time he felt humiliated. The people present were basically the top figures of this era, but at this moment, they were looking at him as if he was a monster, deep in thought. Because of this, Zhang Feng felt that he had to maintain his smile and create an image of himself being very awesome and mysterious. The weather was still gradually turning cold. The birds in the sky, accompanied by the falling leaves, swirled and fell from the sky. At this moment, the entire Guangzhou area had already fallen into a beautiful picture of autumn planting. Although at this time the government and White Deer College came out to distribute the few selected seeds, there were still very few people who could afford to buy them. Except for the people of the Tang dynasty in the area of Shao Mountain, at this time, basically all the people in ragged clothes were wandering on the mountain path from time to time, wanting to see if there would be any good news from the mountain, or if someone would suddenly say that the mountain would give them free seeds and food and other wonderful things. It seemed that in their memory, White Deer College still had the impression of opening the granary to provide relief to the victims of the famine a few years ago. Although the imperial court had already announced that this year's autumn planting grain would be distributed one by one according to the usual grain price, the grain was precious. If they could get some grain from Shao Mountain now, wouldn't they be able to get more grain this year and have more harvest next year? There were quite a few people who had such a beautiful dream. At this time, at the foot of the ruined mountain, countless people were watching. They were squatting on the ridges beside the fields, or looking at the black satin road that they had never seen before. On the mountain, in the farm hatchery, Ma Zhou was excitedly pulled over by Li Qingqian and the others. Although he was ordered to farm by his father when he was on Longzhou Mountain and when he worshipped heaven, those were just to fool the eyes of the officials. How could he have the chance to work in the field personally? At this moment, Li Qingqian had demonstrated his prowess in front of everyone in the academy. He had experimented more than 10 times in a row. If not for the lack of phosphor stones, he might have continued his experiments. As soon as the class ended, Li Qingqian, Qing Chumo, and the others dragged Ma Zhou, Lai Ji, and the others over. As soon as he entered the door, he saw old Gao squinting his eyes. There was a teapot beside his hand. He was lying on a recliner made of bamboo and waving a Buddha whisk made of long and thin bamboo poles and palm leaves from time to time. It was as if they were trying to scare away the wild animals that dared to come to the fields for food. However, under the seemingly mighty Buddha whisk, a few Luhua chickens were clucking, leading a group of their offsprings to dig for food in the field. Even the group of chicks chirped and ran to old Gao's shoes, lying down and taking a nap. It seemed that old Gao's shoes were very comfortable and warm, far warmer than the cold ground. A pair of yellow citrons with tender lips would jump out of old Gao's exposed ankles from time to time. In the distance, a black pig with black skin was humming as it plowed out beautiful scrolls in the field, and then elegantly nested in them and fell asleep comfortably. From time to time, it would hum twice as if it was sleeping very comfortably. The arrival of Li Qingqian was undoubtedly the chief culprit who broke this temporary tranquility. As soon as they arrived, first of all, the pig groaned and woke up in an instant. It rolled a few times before it struggled to get up from the gully. Then, the chicken flapped its wings and clucked to call its offspring. And old Gao was also awakened by this harmonious sound. Old Gao was first startled by the sound of chickens and pigs in the field, and then he fiercely waved the bamboo pole in his hand and angrily chased away these culprits. They were driven out of the field. Damn animals, sooner or later Lao Tzu will kill you and eat you. Old Gao scolded as he held the frightened chick at his feet in his hand, touched it, and then put it on his shoulder. Then he hurriedly came to Li Qingqian, bowed and said, "So it's young Master Li? May I know why young Master Li is here?" Li Qingqian looked at the terrible experimental field, and then looked at old Gao with a strange expression and said, "Old Gao, we're here for nothing else. We just want to farm. If you have nothing to do, you can go and do your thing. We'll also take a look at the field that Feng Zi planted before." Old Gao felt a little incredulous. The crown prince was going to farm in person? He hurriedly asked, "Young Master Li, does President Jiang know that you're here? If he didn't ask us to come, do you think we would come? And in the future, if it's not us, all the students in the academy will have to farm." "What? This time old Gao was instantly dumbfounded. But he didn't dare to ask the crown prince. He hurriedly pulled Ma Zhou and asked, "Tell me, are you sure this is Feng Zi's idea?" Ma Zhou nodded and said seriously, "This is indeed what the dean said in front of Mr. Bosher and all the students just now." Old Gao's face instantly changed when he heard this and he exclaimed, "Ah, things are not good." Chapter 1451. After old Gao exclaimed, he hurriedly ran out of the door. Perhaps he was going to find Zhang Feng to ask about this matter. After all, the people standing in front of him were the crown prince of the imperial court and the heirs of the various dukes. These people were here to farm? Wasn't this a joke? Once this matter was heard by the people in the imperial court, it would cause turmoil in the imperial court. He had to be careful. At this moment even the few of them did not dare to greet him and hurriedly ran away. Li Qingqian and the others were stunned. What's going on? Ma Zhou also did not understand the situation. He scratched his head and said, "Why don't we go inside and take a look at the things that the dean personally planted, and then we'll get a bunch of them next to his field?" Li Qingqian heard this and nodded. After all, this was the first time he was so excited and could not wait to do something. Cheng Chumo clenched his fists and looked left and right. He went into the first floor of the gray building. In an instant, a series of angry roars of pigs and shrill screams rang out. After a moment, Cheng Chumo came out with a pile of farm tools. However, at this moment, his white and blue robe was stained with a lot of pig dung. In an instant, Zhang Sun and the others pinched their noses in disdain. Cheng Chumo was so angry that he threw away the hoe in his hand and angrily sat down where old Gao had just sat. Seeing this, Ma Zhou rolled his eyes and said, "Young Master Li, my teacher has said that this experimental field is an extremely important place for our academy. Moreover, my teacher has also said that everything here is confidential. If it were not for the fact that you are old acquaintances of the headmaster, I would not dare to bring you here without my teacher's permission. Young Master Li, shall we begin?" Li Qingqian glanced at Cheng Chumo and then nodded with a smile, "Then I'll have to trouble Brother Ma." Immediately, Ma Zhou and the others picked up the farm tools from the ground and then led Li Qingqian into the hatchery. At this time, although there were pigs, chickens, ducks, birds, mice and so on in the hatchery, generally speaking it was okay. At this time, the wheat field that Zhang Feng, Li Qingqian and Cheng Chumo were farming had already been sprinkled with a thin layer of pot-bottom ash. Cheng Chumo and the others didn't care about other things, but this was something that they had personally farmed. Moreover, it was a product that was mixed with phosphate fertilizer, so they were naturally very attentive. When they saw the appearance of the field, they couldn't help but feel a little confused. Li Qingqian pointed at the ashes at the bottom of the pot in the field and asked, "Brother Ma, what is the meaning of this?" Ma Zhou didn't know what this meant, nor did he know what was going on. He said in surprise, "I don't know either, but this piece of land was taken care of by my teacher personally, so there are some things that I really don't know. However, I feel that since the dean wants to do this, he naturally has his reasons. Otherwise, why would the dean bring this thing here? And as far as I know, these things are only used when planting." Cheng Chumo put his hands on his waist and squeezed through the crowd. He looked at the ashes in the field and said, "Previously Feng Zi wrapped the seeds with a layer of this stuff, saying that it can repel insects. This seems to be repellent to insects too, right?" As he spoke, Cheng Chumo carefully threw away a little bit of the soil at the edge of the field. However, when he threw away the soil in his hands, he instantly saw a few tender yellow sprouts fluttering in the wind. Li Qingqian also asked in surprise, "These are the sprouts of wheat? The wheat sprouted so quickly?" Cheng Chumo was a little confused. Didn't they just plant it for a little more than 10 days? Logically speaking, the wheat shouldn't have sprouted at this time. And now, as you can see, some of the fields haven't been planted yet, and some of them are still uncultivated. Could it be the effect of the phosphate fertilizer? Yes. When Du Go and the others heard this, they instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. Immediately after, Li Qingqian hurriedly dug up a pile of soil and held the sprouted wheat seed in his hands, carefully examining it. The sprouts of the wheat seed were less than the height of a finger joint, but compared to the wheat seeds they saw before, they were much more robust. At this time, the wheat seed was still wrapped in a layer of black ash. Cheng Chumo didn't believe in heresy. He turned around and dug a few times in the field that the students planted before. Not to mention that the things in the field were still the same, some of the seeds had actually started to rot after being soaked in the water. Some of the seeds were even badly damaged by the insects in the ground. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that some of the more plump seeds had some tender yellow marks at the tip of the seeds. However, in comparison, it wasn't difficult to tell which seeds were better and which were worse. Li Qingqian looked at the seeds in his hands and in Qing Chimo's hands. His heart was already in turmoil. This thing's terrifying side could be seen at this time. What about in the future? All of this was phosphate fertilizer. Previously they were still wondering if this phosphate fertilizer would be effective. However, when Qing Chimo carelessly tossed it down, they instantly discovered the difference. This gave Li Qingqian hope. Li Qingqian carefully shook the seeds in Qing Chimo's hands into his own, then said in a trembling voice, "You guys do it first, I'll go find Feng Zi and my father." Chapter 1452. At the same time, in Zhang Feng's villa, the debate was still going on. Yu Shernan and the others' point of view was that it was fine for ordinary people. Those who were below the age of 20 still had spiritual energy. If they were to learn at this age they could still make up for it. However, how were they going to teach people above the age of 20? Moreover, who was going to teach these people? It was all a matter of time and money. Who had the time? It was better to teach the students in the academy. It was better than anything else. Li Shimin also felt that this made sense. After all, how could those fools teach them how to read and read? If they all went to study, what would happen to the farmers in the fields? If everyone in the world yearned for it, wouldn't all the farmers in the world be left barren? When Zhang Feng saw this, he couldn't take it anymore. He said, "Lao Li, what do you mean by this? Although these people are a little stupid, their thinking is deeply ingrained. We're just teaching them some basic knowledge. Words will do. We're not asking them to take the imperial examinations. What are you afraid of?" Li Shimin waved his hand and said with a serious expression, "You're wrong about that. We know what you mean. This is a good thing. You're really thinking about the people. However, have you thought about it? At this time, everyone is thinking about how to fill their stomachs. Where would they have the time to do such trivial things? Fengzi, we all know what you're planning. However, you're being a little rash. You're planning to teach these people on the mountain because they're your neighbors and you can't bring yourself to do it." When Zhang Feng heard this, he thought about it and didn't refute. After all, Lao Li was right. However, at this moment, Zhang Feng thought about it and suddenly said, "I say, we're talking about the students of the academy going to work in the fields. Why are we talking so far away? Later I'll list out my plan. When the time comes, you'll understand when you see it. Do you have to talk about it for so long?" "No." Xue Ji, who had not spoken much, said faintly, "I have been thinking about this for a long time, but I still think it is impossible. Even if it is what you said, it is easy to let the students of the academy go to the foot of the mountain to teach the people. It is actually very difficult to do it. I think this matter should be delayed. At the very least, I have to wait until you take out." Zhang Feng had long been annoyed. He seriously suspected that the reason why so many people were saying so much today was to make him back off. To put it bluntly, they just didn't want the students to farm. This kind of thing had never happened before. Moreover, the current situation was that they did not even have enough food to plant the seeds. How could they have the ability to get the academy to take out so much food in an instant? Do the students of the academy still need to eat? Zhang Feng was very clear about this. At this moment, he smiled slightly and said, "Actually, I understand your thoughts and intentions. You're just worried that the food in our academy is not enough, right?" Yu Shernan revealed an expression that said, "At least you know what's good for you. Now, you don't have any reason to persist, right? What you want to do can be done, but you have to wait until after this year. That is to say, you have to wait until this season's harvest. If it is really as you said that the world can have enough food and clothing, then you can go and do it. The people, when there is no livelihood crisis at this time, no matter what you do, they will approve of you. As for now," Xue Ji lit a cigarette as he spoke and said, "Now let's think about the phosphate fertilizer. Also, I just heard from Lao Li that you have already asked people to buy land. Now listen to me and sell all the land. We are the academy. The academy is a place to teach and educate people. Moreover, the identity of a student is also there. If you do so, then the people in Shandong, the people in the imperial court who don't like you, and the person hiding behind you, will definitely not let go of such an opportunity." Ding. At this moment, Old Gao's voice sounded at Zhang Feng's door. Zhang Feng also took the opportunity to hurriedly open the door and stop this topic. As soon as he opened the door, Old Gao was also shocked. He habitually bowed down and was about to bow down, but he was caught by Zhang Feng and said in horror, "Old Gao, what's wrong with you? Why did you bow to me as soon as you came in?" Old Gao looked at Zhang Feng and then looked at Li Shimin behind him. Seeing Li Shimin's eyes, he suddenly understood. He stood up and said, "I want to ask you something. You have to tell me honestly." Seeing Old Gao like this, Zhang Feng hurriedly said, "Go ahead." Are you going to let young Master Li and the other students of the academy go to farm? Zhang Feng nodded and said, I do have such a plan. This is also the reason why I set up the agricultural product incubation garden. Is there a problem? Seeing this, old Gao was relieved and said, then it's okay. Just now, young Master Li and Ma Zhou went to the incubation garden and said that they were going to farm. I still didn't dare to believe it. You said before that no one is allowed to enter that place, but young Master Li's status is different, so I came to ask. Fengzi. At this moment, Li Qingqian waved his hands and came from afar. Looking at Zhang Feng at the door, he couldn't help shouting, Fengzi, you're out. You're out. Zhang Feng's expression froze. Li Shimin and the others were also slightly stunned when they heard this. They looked at each other and then hurried to the door. Looking at Li Qingqian, Li Shimin scolded, What happened? How can you be so improper? Seeing this, Li Qingqian waved his hands and said, The wheat that Fengzi personally planted has sprouted. Chapter 1453. This time, Li Shimin and the rest could no longer sit still. The wheat sprouted? How could it be so fast? How long had it been? Now, from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain, so much land was empty. There were even many people waiting for the seeds. And Zhang Feng's wheat sprouted? Did it have to be so fast? And most importantly, the wheat had only been planted for 10 days. It sprouted so quickly? One had to know that if the wheat was planted in the ground, it would take at most half a month for it to sprout, okay? Could it be that this was the effect of the phosphate fertilizer? Just as everyone was anticipating, Li Qingqian had already rushed over. Li Shimin couldn't wait to step forward and open Li Qingqian's hand. In Li Qingqian's hand, the wheat on his left hand already had a fingernail-high sprout. And on his right hand, it was the normal wheat, shriveled. Some had already withered. There were even some wheat that had been bitten by insects and rats until it was incomplete. Only an extremely small number of wheat had traces of tender white sprouts at the top. Looking at the seeds on Li Qingqian's left hand, which were full of tender yellow sprouts, they were still growing healthily. And most importantly, besides being slightly moist, the layer of ash on the seeds was still there. Li Shimin gently peeled off the ashes from the bottom of the pot. Not only were the seeds still plump, they were even more robust. In an instant, Li Shimin couldn't help but peel off the seeds in Li Qingqian's hand, revealing the plump seeds within. Wei Zheng, Yu Shernan and the rest also gathered around, staring at the seeds in Li Qingqian's hand with eyes full of shock. In an instant, the difference between those that had been filtered and those that hadn't. Needless to say, everyone could see it clearly. Li Shimin turned to look at Zhang Feng. Seeing that he seemed to be fine, he asked, Fengzi, this thing of yours? Did you use something else? Zhang Feng shrugged and said, This is the power of knowledge. Actually, Mr. Bosher and the rest saw it at that time. I just filtered the seeds and then wrapped them with a layer of ash. The rest, I just used some phosphate fertilizer. That's all. This time, Li Shimin was really shocked. Wei Zheng and the rest also looked at Zhang Feng with eyes full of surprise. In their knowledge, the seeds in Li Qingqian's right hand were the most normal. The seeds that had sprouted in his left hand, they had never seen them before. Most importantly, it was hard to say whether Zhang Feng had really used something else. At this time, everyone looked at Yu Shernan and the rest with a questioning look. Seeing this, Yu Shernan was also a little surprised and said, This thing? Old man did see everything with his own eyes. The water was indeed taken from the stream. There was nothing different about it. What? Li Shimin exclaimed in shock. Just a little bit of ash from the bottom of the pot could have such a magical effect? Then, in the past, in all the fields there were people who burned a lot of ash. How could there be so many insects? But Yimiao had never seen such a strong one before? Could it be, was this the problem of the seeds? Fengzi, tell me honestly. Did you really select these seeds and then they will become like this? Zhang Feng shook his head and said somewhat speechlessly, I have said that this is the power of knowledge. You don't believe me. Fine, I am too lazy to waste my saliva. If you believe me, then do as I say. I promise that all your food this year will be doubled. After saying that, Zhang Feng put his hands behind his back and walked into the villa slowly. Lying on the stool in the villa's living room, he closed his eyes and rested. Seeing this, Li Shimin gritted his teeth. This guy was definitely taking revenge on them for making things difficult for him just now. Otherwise, why would he be like this? At this time, the few of them had no choice but to call Cheng Chumo and the others over. Together with Yu Shernan, they carefully asked about everything that had happened in the field back then. The only thing left was to drag them to the fields to work on it personally. Li Shimin couldn't be blamed. After all, this seemingly simple but miraculous operation was really refreshing. not to mention other things. However, it was such a simple move. It had only been 10 days. Comparing the two, there were already such significant results. What would happen in the future? Or the whole land of the Tang dynasty, what would happen if this method was used? Would it really be like what Zhang Feng said? Would there really be a bright and fruitful year? Li Shimin had to be cautious. After all, this was something that concerned the safety of all the people in the world. Once something went wrong, there would be consequences beyond redemption. This consequence, Li Shimin couldn't afford it. Not to mention whether there would be a plague of locusts next year. Even if there was no plague of locusts, the people had to be fed. This year's plague of locusts had wiped out the foundation of the whole Tang dynasty. What could Li Shimin do? What could he do? Chapter 1454. In fact, to put it bluntly, this thing was good. Li Shimin also wanted to do it, but this thing consumed too much food. Originally, 1 mu of land required 1 gene of seeds. Now, Li Shimin calculated that it was at least 3 times the amount. This was not including the other things. Then what was the use of picking the rest? Eating? That was to say, on average, a family with more than 10 mu of land would need at least 30 gene of wheat to be able to filter out the seeds. How many people were there in the Tang dynasty? How many people were there in the Tang dynasty? How much food was there? If this was a normal day, it would be fine. They could save it all. But at this time, how could they save it? Not to mention the seeds, even now there was not enough to eat. The food they had now was basically all of Li Shimin's savings. If something were to happen, he would have to starve. At this time, Li Shimin did not dare to imagine what would happen if something were to happen in the future. After all, although there was no news from Chiotzi for the time being, a war with Chiotzi would happen sooner or later. Once it broke out, it would be the most terrifying thing. At that time, there would be no food at all. Then, at this time, Li Shimin's worried face stunned Li Qingqian. He looked at the expressions of Yu Shernan, Yu Qigong, and the others. Although their eyes were full of surprise and love when they looked at the seeds, there seemed to be some worry. Li Qingqian could not help but ask in surprise, "Father, you are?" Li Shimin sighed and glanced at Zhang Feng in the villa, then said, "This matter, let's not talk about it for now. This matter can be discussed later." Hearing this, Li Qingqian hurriedly said, "Father, you have seen this seed. If it is really popularized, then as Fengzi said, the Tang dynasty will really not lack food anymore. This is a good thing. How about? Do you know that the Tang dynasty really can't afford to waste this thing at this time? Do you know how much food we have now? Gone. They were all gone. Even the grain stored in the prefecture has been released. But this is still not enough to satisfy the people of the entire Tang dynasty. What do you think will happen if Fengzi's set of things are brought out at this time?" Li Qingqian hurriedly said, "Father, that's where you're wrong. Actually, Fengzi has already said that although this method wastes food, the filtered food can still be eaten. This doesn't mean that all of it can be wasted. Furthermore, look at the quality of the seeds. Think about the pigs that Fengzi mentioned before." Instantly. Only then did everyone remember the 300,000 pigs that had rushed up the mountain. At this time, hearing Li Qingqian mention it, Qing Yaojin asked in surprise, "Didn't the pig's gizzard already finish?" "That's right. Speaking of those pigs, didn't Fengzi slaughter all of them in the food factory at the foot of the mountain last time? Why are you bringing this up now?" Yu Shernan and the others didn't care about these things. It could be said that after Zhang Feng brought those pigs up the mountain, they didn't pay attention to this matter anymore. In addition, last time Zhang Feng went to slaughter those pigs down the mountain with great fanfare. After that, they didn't pay attention to this matter anymore. They only knew that Zhang Feng, Li Qingqian, and the others made a lot of achievements in Chang'an City, and then the same thing happened in the whole Tang dynasty. For a while, because of the locust disaster, more than half of the pigs that were brought over from Tubo disappeared in an instant. At this time, when they heard Li Qingqian mention it, they couldn't help but be shocked. Ouyang Sun hurriedly asked, "Tell us in detail. Did Fengzi start to do this thing again? Then what's the matter with the pigs?" Li Shimin was also a little surprised. Li Qingqian glanced at them and said with a stiff face, "Do you still remember why Fengzi asked Old Gao and the others to go up the mountain?" After asking this question, in an instant, Li Shimin and the others thought of the purpose of Old Gao and the others to go up the mountain. It was all for the sake of baiting pigs. Could it be, for a while? They couldn't help but look strange. They looked at Zhang Feng, who was lying on the chair in the villa behind them, and asked, "Aren't the pigs all gone? At this time, what do you mean by this?" Li Qingqian said speechlessly, "Although the pigs on the mountain are gone, do you still remember the butcher? Zheng Tufu? The one who used to live in the gray building with Old Gao." That butcher instantly reminded Li Shimin and the others. They seemed to have also found that they hadn't seen him for a long time, so they asked in surprise, tell me this matter in detail." Then Li Qingxian told him everything about how the pigs were selected for breeding, and how Jing Tufu went down the mountain to promote this new breed of pig that did not have a bad smell, and how they could grow 200 catties of fat pigs in 3 months as well as the pig feed. He told him everything in detail. This time. Not to mention Li Shimin. Even Yu Shernan and the others looked at each other with a dumbfounded expression. This matter seemed to be a small matter. But what did this mean? In the short span of 2 months, Zhang Feng had already changed the breed of pig that everyone despised. And now, although they hadn't seen that kind of pig but thinking about it carefully, it seemed that the pork they ate now didn't have a bad smell. Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng's villa in surprise and said, "I finally understand why this guy asked me for a carpenter so mysteriously. I see. Chapter 1455. Before. They really didn't understand why Zhang Feng would spend so much effort to optimize and screen the seeds. In their opinion, as long as they used this phosphate fertilizer, even if it was a little thin, it would still be able to make the majority of the Zhuang family survive. Moreover, although some of the seeds were shriveled, they would still be able to survive with the help of the phosphate fertilizer. But now, it was Zhang Feng who single-handedly handled the matter of the pigs. At the beginning he bought a lot of pigs, chickens and ducks from Tubo Turks and other places to help kill the locusts. Then after the locusts were killed, these things became a burden. Then he opened a food factory on the mountain. Zhang Feng tweaked all the stinky pork into something edible. Even the people in the court were basically using this kind of fresh thing. This was all because the Tangs at this time were basically tired of eating horse meat, donkey meat and mutton meat. And this kind of thing, which they usually despised, suddenly became a popular food. This made people want to have a lively and fresh time. There was also a kind of magical trading method. They didn't want money but only food. This kind of strange method was simply unprecedented. At this time, it appeared in Chang, and then instantly attracted a large number of fans. This was all because of the amazing effect of the pork in the daily Chinese medicine. Even in Li Shimin's imperial kitchen, this dish was a must-have dish every day. This pork was fat but not greasy, unlike beef and mutton, which was hot and dry after eating. Moreover, after eating it, one's entire body would be smelled of something fishy. In their cognition, the pork, which had always been more stinky than beef and mutton, had become so delicious. And the most important thing was, this thing was actually so cheap that it was half dead. Even ordinary people could afford to eat it. Unconsciously, this thing had already made people think that this pork originally tasted like that. There were also rumors that this pork trotter had the effect of beautifying and nourishing one's skin. As long as one bought the prescription of Dr. Sun in the Chang and hotel and boiled it, it would work. In an instant, the whole pork directly became popular in the Tang dynasty. Of course, everyone understood. Who was divine Dr. Sun? Would he lower himself to develop a beauty soup for such a trivial matter? This was definitely Zhang Feng's method without a doubt. At this moment, when Li Qingxian mentioned it, everyone suddenly realized that there was indeed such a thing. Now, most of the butchers in the food factory had changed professions. Furthermore, the river water was no longer blood red like it used to be. At this moment, everyone instantly understood that all of this had been planned by this kid for a long time. It was just that they had been paying attention to other things. Regarding this food thing, it seemed they had long stopped caring about it. Come to think of it, Zhang Feng hadn't personally cooked for them during this period of time except for the grilled fish last time. At the thought of this, everyone looked at Zhang Feng in the room at the same time. Moreover, the most important thing was, at this time no matter how much he said, it would be a wild guess. Rather than that, he might as well ask Zhang Feng about it. At this moment, following the sound of horse hooves, everyone couldn't help but stop in their tracks. They suddenly looked over and saw Ma Xinliang rushing over with a bulging cloth bag on his back. Everyone's eyes instantly lit up. When Ma Xinliang arrived, Li Qingqian hurriedly stopped Ma Xinliang and asked, "What's the matter? Did you go to buy land?" Before Li Qingqian finished asking, Yu Qigong asked directly. Ma Xinliang naturally recognized these people, especially the Yu Qigongqing who bit the golden bull and entered the Tower of Dusk. How could the people who were with them be ordinary people? Moreover, several great scholars were here, so he didn't dare to act rashly. He hurriedly said, "Yes, I did go to buy land under the order of the dean." They secretly said, "As expected." Fang Xuanling's eyes flashed and he asked, "Did you buy the land at the city gate?" In an instant, everyone's eyes were fixed on Ma Xinliang. This guy was a veteran who retired from the battlefield and the instructor of the Liangzhou garrison. If he didn't know the purpose of this land, Li Shimin would really kill him. Seeing this, Ma Xinliang naturally knew the importance of this place. At this time, when he heard Fang Xuanling's question, he hurriedly said, "Although the dean asked for that land, I know how extraordinary it is. No matter how bold I am, I don't dare to buy that land. Moreover, Master Niu directly skipped that land and gave us the land from the Shirley Slope to the Shao Mountain." Hearing this, Li Shimin and the others breathed a sigh of relief, and their hanging hearts slowly relaxed. Seeing this, Yu Qigong said, "You don't have to go in for such a small matter. I'll go in and tell Fengzi. Just give me the land deed. Here." Although Ma Xinliang was hesitant, he still carefully handed the bag on his back to Yu Qigong. Although the bag wasn't big, it was quite heavy. He asked in surprise, "What's in it? It's so heavy." "It's all land deeds." Hearing this, everyone's expression froze. Yu Qigong waited in surprise and asked, "Tell me honestly, how much land did you buy?" "Well, not much, just 300 hectares. In an instant, Li Shimin's vision went black. He staggered and fell to the ground. Chapter 1456. In an instant, everyone's face changed dramatically. Niu Jinda quickly grabbed Li Shimin and asked in horror, "You said 300 mu? Master Niu, it's 300 mu. Buzz." In an instant, there was a buzzing sound in everyone's head. Damn it. This guy is dishonest. For a moment, the few of them were even more jealous. What was the emperor's attitude when they bought the land? He was afraid that they would buy too much land. Now this guy bought all the land he could buy. Now they felt comfortable. If the emperor didn't give them an explanation, when they went back they would secretly buy the land. Otherwise they would feel uneasy. At this time, Li Shimin was also frightened by the thick stack of land deeds. Before, he had made it clear in the court that no one was allowed to buy land privately. Now the more land he bought, the less land he could get. In addition, he also knew the benefits of phosphate fertilizer. At this time, when he saw the wheat sprouts promoted by phosphate fertilizer, he knew what this land meant. Once this thing could be implemented, it would definitely have an unprecedented effect. Only by controlling more land would he have more food in his hands. When the time came, no matter if there was a disaster or a war, he could still use it with a wave of his hand. Rather than collecting food, it would be safer to have the goods in his hands. Therefore, Li Shimin's purpose of coming to Shao Mountain this time was to directly issue an imperial edict after confirming this matter that no one was allowed to buy and sell land privately. But this guy, Li Shimin felt a little stuffy in his chest. Who was Zhang Feng? No matter how much land he wanted, he would give it to him with a wave of his hand. But it was different now. At this time, most of the people in the court were watching, and there was a pair of invisible big hands manipulating everything. At this time, if the news that Zhang Feng bought land was spread out and there were so many of them, then even if he issued an imperial edict, what was the use of it? At the very least, the people in the imperial court and those present here might not listen to them. Li Shimin took a deep breath. Today he suddenly felt that it was an absolutely wrong decision to come to the mountain. At least he should issue an imperial edict before going up the mountain. Alas. Li Shimin rubbed his forehead and waved his hand to let Ma Xinliang leave. Then with Niu Jinda's help he slowly walked to Zhang Feng's villa. As soon as he entered the door, Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin, who was supported on his back, in astonishment. Looking at his pale face, he asked, "What's wrong with you? Why are you like this after a while?" "Let's not talk about me first." Li Shimin rubbed his head and said, "Let me ask you first, what good thing did you do? Here's the 300 hectares of land you bought. Tell me why you bought these lands. Are you trying to rebel?" Zhang Feng heard this and immediately covered Li Shimin's mouth. He said, "Lao Li, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say this. If this matter is spread out, you'll be harming us. You know how to be afraid, kid?" Yu Shernan was a little speechless. He said, "Tell me first, what do you want to do with these 300 hectares of land? This matter will definitely alarm the emperor and all the civil and military officials. You should think clearly about this matter. When the time comes, let Lao Li go to Lord Zhang's son tonight, and also Li Shaogong, Prince Li. Maybe there's still a chance to turn things around." As he spoke, Yu Shernan kicked Du Ruhui, who was next to him. Under his gaze, Du Ruhui said unsteadily, "As far as I know, the emperor said that he was going to draft a decree forbidding private purchases of land. Although I don't know why he hasn't issued a decree yet, many people know about this. If you do this, you'll undoubtedly give those people a reason to criticize you. What if during the morning court tomorrow someone mentions this to you then? Moreover, you're now a viscount and the chancellor of White Deer College. Although you don't hold a position in the court, you're still a fifth-rank official and receive a salary from the court. In the laws of the Tang dynasty, it's already mentioned that an official in the court, unless it's a reward from the emperor, under normal circumstances they can't No, no, no. Zhang Feng also instantly understood that the matter this time was serious. No wonder Lao Li was so scared. So it was because of this matter? He absolutely didn't dare to admit this at this moment. Li Shimin couldn't help but twitch his mouth and say, "You still want to quibble at this time?" Zhang Feng shook his head and said with righteous indignation, "What are you all thinking? Don't you know what I said at the meeting just now? I said that I want all the students of White Deer College to farm. How much land can be farmed on the mountain? That's why I used my own money to buy everything that can be bought. Now it seems like 300 hectares is a lot, but have you thought about how our land will be given to all the students? They will all be distributed to the students. If each student gets 1 mu of land, then there will be more than 3,000 students. In addition to the many people on the mountain, there will be at least 5,000 people, right? These people do a good calculation. How much land can these people get?" Chapter 1457. Zhang Feng's words. Instantly everyone was frightened. At this moment no one knew what to say. If what Zhang Feng said was true, then there really weren't many. But at this moment, Zhang Feng's words made everyone feel more and more uncomfortable. For a moment they didn't know what to say. Li Shimin also knew that if it was purely with words, even he couldn't win against Zhang Feng. He could only smile bitterly and say, "Come on, you've been setting a trap from the beginning, haven't you?" Zhang Feng raised his hands aggrievedly and said, "I'm innocent, I'm really innocent. How could I have so many thoughts? I'm very innocent, okay?" Pfft. The old Xiaocai and Li Gang, who were drinking tea, couldn't help but spit out the tea in their mouths when they heard this. Originally the old Xiaocai already knew Zhang Feng's nature. Now that he heard Zhang Feng say this, he must know that the emperor couldn't gain any advantage, so he didn't say anything. But now that they heard Zhang Feng say this, the two of them couldn't sit still anymore. The old Xiaocai sighed and said, "Alas! I'm old, this matter has nothing to do with the academy. I'll go back and sleep for a while, I still have classes in the afternoon." Seeing this, Li Gang hurriedly got up and followed the old Xiaocai to leave. The next moment, Yu Shernan and the others also found excuses to leave, leaving only Li Shimin and the others. Seeing this, Li Qingqian also took the opportunity to slip away. Seeing this, Li Shimin waved his hand speechlessly and said, "That's enough, you brat. I'm hungry, go and get me something to eat first. Later we'll talk about the business." Zhang Feng was also a little hungry at this moment. He ate a meal full of salt at noon, how could he be full? As soon as they went upstairs they were all spat out by their throats. At this time when Li Shimin said that, they instantly felt hungry. They hurriedly said, "Okay, you guys wait first. I'll be back soon. I'll show you my skills today." Li Shimin watched as Zhang Feng went into the kitchen. With a serious expression he said, "Don't even think about the farmland. Let's talk about the phosphate fertilizer first. What do you think about phosphate fertilizer?" At this moment, only then did everyone regain their senses. Wei Jing pondered for a while with a dignified expression and said, "Second master, I think this is possible. Moreover, I just talked with Dr. Sun and confirmed that the yellow ginger is indeed so fast because of the use of phosphate fertilizer. Moreover, the wheat sprouts that young Master Li brought just now already explained many problems. Therefore I think this will work." Yu Qigong and the others nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Li Shimin said, "If that's the case, then the most difficult part of this matter is this thing. Others can't see it, so how do we make the people accept this thing?" This matter was the most difficult thing to do. Although they approved of this thing, the promotion of this thing didn't mean that it could be done with an imperial edict. It needed the people to accept it themselves. This was the most difficult part. At this time all the people had deep-rooted traditional thinking. Every time a new thing appeared, it would cause a big uproar. The people's ability to accept it was not good enough. However, this thing couldn't be done. Even with the imperial edict there was no way. For this matter, even Empress Zhang Sun discussed with him for 3 nights, but they couldn't come up with a solution. At this time Zhang Sun Wuji and the others were also silent. This thing was very good, and this matter had been spread out early in the morning. However, after the matter of the Tang family was over, this matter was still spreading. However, there were both people who believed and people who didn't believe in it. Therefore at this time, everyone was also very worried. If they still relied on public opinion it would be unrealistic. The people were people who wouldn't act until they saw a rabbit. Without solid evidence, no one would make a decision easily. Moreover, it was such an important matter. This was a big matter that would determine whether they could survive the next year and whether they would starve next year. At this time, Niu Jinda floated around. Seeing that no one spoke, he said in a muffled voice, "Second master, I think this matter should be handled by Feng Zi himself. After all, this series of things was done by him. At this time he should have a solution. Instead of blindly pondering here, why don't we ask him? At this thought, everyone nodded and pushed this matter to Zhang Feng. After all, this was the only way to take responsibility. Even if things went wrong, they wouldn't take any risks. How could they let go of such a good thing that satisfied both sides? The most important thing was, what they didn't like the most was to burn their brains. How could Li Shimin not know what these people were up to? He just didn't expose them. In fact, he had this idea long ago, but he didn't want to rely on Zhang Feng for everything. Therefore, he thought that if he could do it himself, he would do it himself. After all, at that time, even if he bragged in front of Zhang Feng, he wouldn't be so passive. At this time, a tempting smell of meat came from the kitchen door. With a crunching sound, Zhang Feng rushed out with a large amount of steaming hot dishes. Red braised pork is here. Chapter 1458. Red braised pork? In an instant, Li Shimin and the others' eyes were attracted by the bright red thing on Zhang Feng's plate. It even had a sparkling luster. As the plate fell, everyone's eyes were fixed on the fist-sized piece of meat in the dustpan-sized plate in a daze. Well, Feng, is this the red braised pork you mentioned? Qing Yaojin's eyes widened. As he spoke, he couldn't help but pick up a piece from the plate with his chopsticks and was about to stuff it into his mouth. When Wei Jing saw this, he was stunned and coughed. Qing Yaojin suddenly came to his senses and hurriedly handed the fist-sized piece of meat to Li Shimin. Li Shimin twitched the corner of his mouth. He looked at Wei Jing with a strange look and said with a smile, "Old Wei, try it first." Seeing this, Zhang Feng instantly made a strange sound from between his teeth. "Well, I feel that you all dislike it?" Qing Yaojin smiled and said, "What are you talking about?" How could Zhang Feng not know what these people were thinking? They were obviously looking at the strange color of the red braised meat. Moreover, it was so big and fat. They definitely did not want to eat it. He couldn't help but sigh. Damn it. When did they become so crafty? In the past, these people would even eat the big pieces of white meat without salt after they were cooked in water. How did they become like this? Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and didn't bother to care. "It's up to you. If you don't want to eat, I'll eat more." While speaking, Zhang Feng turned and went into the kitchen. He took out a few bowls of millet rice again and started to eat and drink. The meat was very fat. Zhang Feng chose the best pork belly from the pig. There was no white sugar in this era, so Zhang Feng could only use that kind of native honey to color it. Then he added soy sauce to color it. So at this time, although it looked bright red, there was also some caramel color and a black color. The rich, oily feeling of the honey and the fat of the pork instantly made the meat look full of fat. At this time, at the dining table. In addition, everyone had doubts before. At this time, seeing Zhang Feng eating so happily and the tempting smell of the red braised pork itself, how could they resist? Li Shimin saw that no one was eating. He looked at the meat in the bowl and then at Wei Jing. Wei Jing couldn't even pretend not to see it. He had to obey. From Li Shimin's bowl, he respectfully picked up a piece of meat the size of a fist and put it into his bowl. After looking at it for a long time, he carefully took a bite. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Zhang Feng's cooking skills. Every time, the food that Zhang Feng made was unparalleled in the world. However, only this time, the meat looked greasy and unbearable. Qing Yaojin couldn't wait. He was very hungry. At this time, when he saw Zhang Feng eating happily and the temptation of the meat's fragrance, before Wei Jing ate, Qing Yaojin picked up a piece and ate it in big mouthfuls. For a moment, everyone's eyes couldn't help but fall on Qing Yaojin's beard, and the oil that dripped down from his beard onto his chest. They were stunned. At first, everyone saw that Qing Yaojin was eating seriously with a frown on his face. They thought that this thing was unpalatable. But slowly they found a problem. This guy didn't even finish one piece. There were already 7 or 8 pieces piled up in his bowl. Niu Jinda and Yu Qigong, who were sitting on both sides of Qing Yaojin, were the first to find the problem. Seeing Qing Yaojin eating so happily, they couldn't help but start eating as well. In an instant, the 3 of them ate quickly. Li Shimin couldn't help but twitch his eyelids. Whether it was Dr. Sun or the imperial physician, they had told him to avoid meat and fish. But at this time, seeing the 3 of them eating without a trace of table manners, he was eager to eat. Seeing this, Qing Yaojin hurriedly said, "Second master, I've eaten. This thing is delicious." Li Shimin, who was about to eat, heard this. How could he eat? With a sigh, he picked up the ordinary food on the table and ate. Zhang Feng couldn't help but look at Li Shimin with some surprise and asked, "Lao Li, are you really not going to try it?" While speaking, Zhang Feng took a bite of the red braised meat. The grease in Li Shimin's eyes and under Zhang Feng's bite splashed everywhere. Li Shimin's scalp tingled. He twitched the corner of his mouth and said, "I'm not feeling well recently. You shouldn't eat too greasy things. More." Zhang Feng glanced at Li Shimin suspiciously, and then looked at Wei Zheng and others who lowered their heads to eat the red braised meat. He didn't bother to ask. He lowered his head and competed with them. Li Shimin was so angry that he couldn't bear it. However, at this point, everyone could only eat while persuading Li Shimin not to eat meat. Li Shimin was very angry. During the meal, Li Shimin was very unhappy. Fortunately, in the end, Zhang Feng still had a conscience. He picked his teeth and took out a plate of red braised meat from the kitchen again. He glanced at Li Shimin and said, "Don't worry and eat. Although this thing looks a little greasy, you can try it. It's definitely not as greasy as you think." Seeing this, Li Shimin was still a little suspicious, but he still picked up a piece with suspicion. In an instant, the rich fragrance in his mouth made Li Shimin sink in an instant. For a moment, Li Shimin was very angry. It turned out that these people's persuasion was not true. They just wanted to eat more. Anger. Sometimes it could really turn into a ruthless fighting force. Li Shimin didn't eat now. He directly moved the plate of red braised meat in front of him. He tasted it slowly and tasted the wine carefully. Qing Yaojin and others were about to go crazy. They didn't stand on ceremony and went directly to Zhang Feng's kitchen to search. Zhang Feng was so scared that he hurriedly blocked the kitchen door and said, "Just eat enough. Aren't you tired of it?" Qing Yaojin wiped the grease at the corner of his mouth and was about to push Zhang Feng aside. He laughed and said, "How can we have enough of this thing? I say if you have more, quickly take it out. I'm going to faint from hunger." Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. "No. If you want to eat, wait until next time." Chapter 1459. After the meal, everyone was still longing for more. They didn't feel anything when they were eating, but when they stopped, the taste of oil coming out of their throats was really uncomfortable. After drinking a pot of tea, only then did they pick their teeth and rub their bellies. They lay in Zhang Feng's living room and smoked as they looked at Zhang Feng, sizing him up from head to toe. Zhang Feng felt a little scared and asked quickly, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Li Shimin smiled and said, "Nothing. I just want to ask, how do you plan to deal with the phosphate fertilizer incident?" The alarm in Zhang Feng's heart instantly went off. He didn't know what was going on. Now when he saw Lao Li smile, he felt scared. He didn't know why. Maybe he was really cheated badly? He looked at the others and saw that they all had the same expression. Zhang Feng instantly felt that this matter was far from being that simple. But it had already happened. What could he say? He could only say subconsciously, "Actually, I've said this before. The people of the Tang family can apply what they have learned. How can we forget this old profession?" This. Li Shimin's expression froze. Fang Shenling hurriedly said, "It's not like that. Although everything can be tested now, the people are not fools. Besides, this phosphate fertilizer is related to whether the people will have enough to eat next year or not. So we went to check. At this time, not to mention other places, even in Chang, and although most people believe it, the people who intend to use this are very few. They just don't believe in this thing. They only believe in what has been passed down from generation to generation." Zhang Feng was also a little surprised. This thing, even an imperial edict, would not work. It was the same reason that people in Guangzhou were not allowed to eat noodles. Could you prevent them from eating noodles all day long? What a joke. Since the Emperor of Hanwu, no one dared to do so for many years. Now that the Emperor had opened up a way to spread the word, how could they do such a thing? Just like the noodle food, the phosphate fertilizer could be popularized. He had to come up with a perfect plan. Otherwise, what was the point of doing this? With this in mind, Zhang Feng asked, "Why don't we do it ourselves first? After the spring harvest, won't the people all believe us?" Speaking of which, Li Shimin instantly lost his composure. Not to mention that he was not a businessman. Even if he was destined not to do such a thing. At that time, the people would be starving. Who would buy things? Even if they did, they would only buy food to fill their stomachs. Once a person went crazy, they would not care about anything else. Another thing was that Zhang Feng kept saying that there would be a locust plague next year. Although he did not believe it, he had to believe it. At the very least, there was no conclusive evidence to prove that there would be no locust plague next year. Because the locust eggs in the fields, the ones dug out from the imperial garden and thrown into the lake to feed the fish, and the fried locust eggs that he was eating now, all indicated that next year's locust plague would be even more terrifying than this year's. He had asked Yuan Tiangang for advice on this matter more than once. Yuan Tiangang also spent 30 days to calculate that there would be a catastrophe next year. Therefore, at this time, after hearing Zhang Feng's words, Li Shimin shook his head and said, "No, no. You also said that there will be a locust plague next year. This autumn planting is related to the people in the world. If we are the only ones planting, won't we become the target of public criticism?" Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin with some surprise and said, "Yo, I didn't know that Lao Li could think so much." Li Shimin's eyelids twitched. He knew that this kid was insulting him, but for the people in the world, what could he do? He had to say, "In fact, this matter is very easy to understand. Don't insult me. I am a businessman. My purpose is to make money. Think about it. If the people can live and work in peace and contentment, doesn't it mean that their lives will be more prosperous? Once they are rich, won't we earn more? If everyone revolves around 3 meals a day, who will have the mood to buy and sell things? Who are we going to sell our stuff to then? Who will have the strength to work for us?" Zhang Feng heard this and nodded, but then he asked with a smile, "Was the braised pork just now delicious?" Zhang Feng's brain circuit made several people's heads unable to wrap around it in an instant. They looked at Zhang Feng with a confused face. Zhang Feng saw this and said, "What I mean is, was the braised pork just now delicious?" Li Shimin couldn't figure out what Zhang Feng meant, but to be honest, the braised pork was indeed delicious. He nodded and said, "The taste is good, but does it have anything to do with what we are discussing at this time?" "Yes." Zhang Feng nodded and pointed to several people and said, "Just now before you ate, did you shift the blame to each other? Only Old Chin didn't say anything and chose to believe me. Why is that?" "That's because Old Chin was hungry and really believed that I wouldn't harm him. Also, this is pork. You have eaten it before. In addition, I am your brother, so you believe me. However, you, Lao Li, Old Fong, both of you hesitated for a long time before starting to eat. Also, when you were eating, you kept persuading Lao Li to eat less. What do you mean by that? Actually, you are right. This thing looks really greasy, and for Lao Li, it's really not good to eat too much of it. You have been living a luxurious life all year round, so naturally, you will more or less have some taboos. In addition, a few days ago, I happened to hear Old Sun mention that your body should avoid greasy food. But in the end, you still couldn't resist the desire for good food, so..." Zhang Feng sighed helplessly and said, "This is equivalent to the current situation. Even if you believe in it, there are still many people who have a doubtful attitude towards this thing. How do you think this thing should be promoted?" Chapter 1460. Zhang Feng used the meal to explain the current situation based on everyone's actions. In an instant, Li Shimin and the others were shocked. The current situation was indeed as Zhang Feng said. Although many people chose to believe it, it was all based on Zhang Feng's accumulated reputation, Zhang Feng's good reputation, and Sun Simiao's incident on the street of Chang'an. Even so, the inherent thinking that had been inherited for thousands of years was still not easily surpassed. This meant that it would take a long time for this phosphate fertilizer to be popularized. But at this time, did Li Shimin still have time? No. So at this time, when he heard Zhang Feng say so, Li Shimin became more anxious. To put it bluntly, this was actually a contest between the common people, a confrontation with the traditional thinking and habits of hundreds and thousands of years. What Zhang Feng said before was actually right. As long as the food they planted was taken out, it would be enough. This matter could be easily solved. But now, did Li Shimin have a choice? Did he still have time to make a choice? There was nothing else. So at this time, Li Shimin was more anxious. He couldn't wait. At that time when the people of the entire Tang dynasty were not there, Li Shimin's eyebrows were so deep that they were like fried dough twists. He walked around in the living room and thought. After a long time, Li Shimin said, "Fengzi, we really don't have a little idea. If you have a way, you can tell us. And just now we have discussed for a long time. If we use the previous method to do it, words alone are useless. Even if we ask for an imperial edict, it will be useless. Think about it, every citizen has their own way of thinking. This phosphate fertilizer is a little unimaginable. How can these people change their way of thinking in such a short period of time?" Alas, everyone was silent. At this time, Zhang Sun Wuji said with some hesitation, "Didn't young Master Li bring the malt just now? If we get some malt and take it to Chang'an City and let the people have a look, will it?" After that, Zhang Sun Wuji stared at Li Shimin and Zhang Feng. Seeing that they seemed to be thinking, he hurriedly said, "This is just my guess. You can take it as a joke." "No." Zhang Feng hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Your method is really good, but it will waste my 1 mu of grain." Li Shimin's eyes lit up when he heard that. "Yes. Why didn't I think of such a simple thing? Look, Fengzi. If we waste the wheat in the field, although it seems to be a waste now, as long as we take the sprouts to the emperor or go to the political announcing palace, there will be a turn for the better. At that time we can put the wheat in the field in a frame and take it to Chang and city to let the people have a look at it. Won't that work? And the most important thing is that these things will not be lost. When the time comes, wheat seedlings will grow. It's just that they will grow in the frame of Chang and city instead of in the field. This will stimulate the sales of phosphate fertilizer. What do you think? Fang Xianling glanced at the emperor and Zhang Feng with some hesitation, and then quietly glanced at Du Ruhui, who was calm and collected, and said, "Old Du, do you think this will work?" Du Ruhui glanced at them and smiled faintly. "Feng Zi has already planned it. Why are you and I worrying about it?" Fang Xianling was stunned. "What do you mean?" "It's very simple. That is, today during the meal, Zhang Feng has already thought of a countermeasure. This red braised meat, do you think Feng Zi will give it to us for free? Although this meat looks ordinary, we will only know its taste after eating it. Just like the food Feng Zi made before, at the beginning, it was so ordinary because we were used to it. Even if Feng Zi made something, it would feel ordinary. But what does it mean to outsiders? This is a factor that can completely change the food culture of the entire Chang'an. So, this red braised meat is actually Feng Zi's way of telling us that he has a plan?" Fang Xianling asked in surprise. Du Ruhui narrowed his eyes and nodded. He looked at Zhang Feng with mixed feelings and said, "That's right. Actually, Zhang Feng had already thought of this seed long ago. He wanted to spread it out. After all, he bought so much land. Naturally, he wanted to let the people of Tonghui Lane plant it. However, he was hesitant about whether he should do so. He didn't have a fixed number. That's why he wanted to use the red braised pork to talk about Second Master's thoughts." "Yes." In an instant, Fang Xianling suddenly understood and whispered with Du Ruhui. The next moment, Qing Yaojin and others also joined in the whisper. Li Shimin and Zhang Feng had noticed, but the problem now was that Zhang Feng was still hesitating whether to destroy the wheat in that mu of land. After all, that was where his hope lay. Once there was a problem, all the plans would be ruined. That was why Zhang Feng was so hesitant. At this time, seeing Fang Xianling and others, although they could faintly hear some, they still couldn't hear clearly. After looking at Li Shimin, Zhang Feng nodded and said, "Actually, I have another plan, but I'm a little worried. What if it fails?" Chapter 1461. Li Shimin was also anxious. The longer the matter was delayed, the shorter the autumn planting time would be. Seeing that Zhang Feng was still hesitating, he hurriedly asked, "Tell us about it. There are so many of us here, surely we can think of a way, right?" Seeing that Li Shimin was a little anxious at this time, Fang Xianling and the others also hurriedly shut up and tried to persuade Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng then said hesitantly, "Then I'll say it?" "Say it. There are no outsiders here." Seeing that, Zhang Feng said, "Actually, this matter is very easy to deal with. I plan to put all the wheat in transparent glass jars. I don't need a lot, just a few seeds. The main thing is to expose them so that others can see them. Secondly, I want to settle the matter of the seeds first. As for the phosphorus fertilizer, it's actually possible to do it later. As you all know, there are as many locust eggs as there are hairs on a cow. This is also the reason why I want to cover the wheat seeds with a layer of grass ash. As long as the people know the function of screening the seeds and the benefits, the next step is to make the pesticide. When the time comes, I plan to add water and dilute the phosphate fertilizer in the water. The effect is actually the same. This way, even if the autumn planting season is over, the wheat seeds will not be affected at all." Zhang Feng actually had this idea for a long time. Regarding the pesticide, after Dr. Sun went up the mountain last time, he had been working on it with Dr. Sunday. However, he really did not know how to promote this pesticide matter. After all, this thing was only to prevent the locust eggs in the field. No one knew what would happen. Therefore, until now, Zhang Feng had been thinking. He originally wanted to wait for Li Gan and the others to finish the water wheel installation before seeing the situation. At this time, Old Sun said this idea. This made Zhang Feng even more hesitant. After all, the pesticide matter was very important. If it was not handled well, anyone who drank a mouthful would die. In addition, the hidden danger of the phosphate fertilizer poisoning incident had not been completely eliminated. If this thing appeared again, it would definitely be used against them. However, Zhang Feng didn't notice that when he was talking about the pesticide, Li Shimin and the others' eyes almost popped out. After Zhang Feng finished speaking, Li Shimin hurriedly interrupted Zhang Feng and asked, "Feng Zi, what is this pesticide that you are talking about?" "It's a medicine that can kill locusts. It's a medicine that can solve the disease of wheat from the roots. It's the same as the medicine we take when we're sick. However, this thing is poisonous. I'm afraid it will cause big trouble when the time comes. That's why I'm hesitating. Should I get this thing out?" Zhang Feng thought for a while and rubbed his forehead in distress. F***ck, let's not talk about this for now. Let's deal with the seeds and phosphate fertilizer first. Then I'll ask Elder Son about the pesticide. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Li Shimin made Zhang Feng dumbfounded. At this time, seeing that Zhang Feng didn't want to talk about it, everyone didn't ask anything. They could only wait for Zhang Feng to talk about it himself. Moreover, the phosphate fertilizer matter had not been dealt with yet. Even if the pesticide was hyped up to the sky, it would be useless. Feng Zi, then tell me. The most important thing is to deal with the seeds first, or the phosphate fertilizer. Yes, you should come up with a plan first. There are so many of us. We will definitely think of something. You can't just wait like this. We have to come up with a plan, right? Whether it works or not, we'll only know after we try it first. Zhang Feng thought for a while and finally rubbed his head. Stop arguing. Can we analyze it first? Zhang Feng was really annoyed. The people of this era regarding these things were simply, this was just the beginning. What if his science and technology department wanted to do something else in the future? Wouldn't that pierce through the sky? It was no longer a matter of promoting phosphate fertilizers. The problem now was, how to make the people believe in this thing. The potato matter would start after the Chinese New Year next year. At this time, the Tang dynasty only had corn, which was millet, and wheat. These things were too simple. It was not difficult to increase the production. They just had to improve the quality of the seeds and then screen out the good ones. Then they would cultivate them. It was the same principle as cultivating good breeding pigs. These things would eventually be spread out and made available to the people. Otherwise, why would he make these things? Plant them himself? Wouldn't that be tiring? In fact, according to Zhang Feng's temper, he really didn't want to make these things available. In this pedantic era, making these things was simply courting death. Why should he waste so much effort? In the end, it was nothing. Since the Han Dynasty, there were so many good things such as the plow, the water wheel, and so on. So many good things. These things were slowly worn out in the long river of time. The root cause was that people in this era were too pedantic. Otherwise, how could it be like this? The era was developing, but because of the monopoly of the aristocratic families, the pedantic of the people, and the lack of attention of the people in the current dynasty, such a sad thing happened. This was the case at this time. If he came up with a plan to produce more than 2,000 caddies of potatoes per moo and the super rice, wouldn't the world be turned upside down? Therefore, Zhang Feng was certain that if he wanted to change all of this, he had to change their thinking first. Otherwise, everything would be in vain. It wasn't the fault of the common people, nor was it Zhang Feng's fault, nor was it the fault of the great Tang's nobles. It was this era that was sick. If he wanted to change all of this, he had to cure it first. However, what could Zhang Feng do to cure this era? Chapter 1462. The era was sick. This was something that no one could quickly cure. This could only be changed gradually from the most fundamental point. For example, if Zhang Feng really produced potatoes now, not to mention others, even Lao Li and the others would subconsciously think that Zhang Feng was crazy. Not to mention others. In this era, in an era where one could only produce 100 caddies per moo, who would believe that there was something that could produce 2,000 to 3,000 caddies per moo? Even ghosts wouldn't believe it, right? This was the drawback of this era. Only when this thing was really accepted by people slowly, such as this phosphate fertilizer, could the people really see its practical use and the matter of the seeds. Only when it was accepted by them, then everything would happen. Otherwise, Zhang Feng was very clear about the principle of spoiling things through excessive enthusiasm. As for whether other people in this era knew about it, he wasn't sure. In short, everything could only be done with practical actions. That would be the best medicine. The best medicine to cure this era. At this moment, Li Shimin and the others were also silent, but in everyone's mind they were also thinking. They weren't real businessmen. For this matter they would think more deeply. Zhang Feng had always been indifferent to this matter. He didn't care about it, but when it was really important he would show seriousness. However, they really hadn't seen a situation like today. For example, the gunpowder, the firearms and so on. Zhang Feng was always so calm. When did he become so serious today? At this moment, Zhang Feng was silent for a long time. The cigarette almost burned the skin off his mouth. Then he said, "For this matter, I think that the seeds and the phosphate fertilizer can be used at the same time. First, we can use public opinion to create public opinion. It's best to send people to bring the method of screening the seeds and the phosphate fertilizer to the various prefectures to publicize. Then I will ask people to make some glass bottles and get some of the sprouted wheat." Hearing Zhang Feng's words, Li Shimin hurriedly sat beside Zhang Feng and asked, "Feng Zi, Are you going to use the two-step method? In fact, the phosphate fertilizer incident has already caused a sensation in Chang and the surrounding prefectures. However, there is no physical evidence, so Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder and said, yes. But with the previous public opinion, even the person who spread the rumors didn't believe it himself. How could he make others believe it? Weren't you guys asking why I bought so much land? Actually, there is some selfishness in this aspect, but most of it is because at this time, many people's eyes are focused on the mountain. If we don't do something, what will the people think? Now that we're buying land, it's only natural that people will notice. When Li Shimin heard this, he was instantly surprised. Could it be that all of this was your plan? You mean, buying land? How could there be so many excuses? Li Shimin also wanted to know the real purpose of Zhang Feng's purchase of these lands. At this time, when Zhang Feng mentioned it, Li Shimin instantly felt that something big was going to happen. After all, this matter, if he didn't handle it well today and didn't understand the details, there would definitely be people who would use this matter to impeach Zhang Feng in the morning assembly tomorrow. Seeing this, Zhang Feng glanced at Li Shimin and said, yes, it's what you think. I'm buying land. Do you really think I want to farm? Do you think I, Zhang Feng, am someone who likes to farm? If Zhang Feng was a farmer, then he wouldn't be so lazy. This guy, to put it bluntly, was a lazy guy. He was so lazy that he didn't even eat well. If he put his heart into teaching others, would he farm? Go and beg. If anyone really believed it, then they must be bewitched. Li Shimin pointed to the sky outside with a headache and said, hurry up, it's going to be dark soon. How am I going to enter the city? When Zhang Feng heard this, he said, actually, this matter is also very troublesome for me. After all, now we're facing all the people and the pair of people behind the scenes. No one knows what's waiting for us. At this time, the best way is to take 3 steps. The first step is to let people take the seeds and spread rumors in the city. After all, at this time, the city has naturally been abuzz with the news that I'm buying land, but no one knows why I'm buying land. It's best to spread the news about the seeds now. Then, when these people spread the rumors, they will definitely secretly buy land. Do you believe it? As long as they take action, what does that mean? It means that the matter is confirmed. After all, these people are all from Chang'an City. They see each other often and naturally know many people. Previously, they were only shouting slogans, but people realized that they didn't do anything behind the scenes. How many people do you think will believe it? Li Shimin frowned slightly, but his eyes lit up in an instant. Zhang Feng is right. Why didn't I think of it? If I had thought of this in the first place, then, at this time, Li Shimin said enthusiastically, hurry up and say it. Zhang Feng leaned back on the recliner and stretched comfortably. Then he said, this thing is a psychological effect. This time, we don't need them to say anything, we need them to do something. What is this called? This is called the door god making a fortune. Only these people will use practical actions. It's more practical than 100,000 people shouting slogans on the street. This is psychological warfare. Chapter 1463. This time Li Shimin was aghast. Psychological warfare. This was the second time Zhang Feng mentioned this matter. Previously, no one had thought that psychological warfare could be used to this extent. In their memory, psychological warfare, except for the enemy and the means used on businessmen, seemed to be useless at other times. Sometimes it was the emperor's privilege. But now, Zhang Feng actually said that it could be used in this aspect? This, in an instant, everyone couldn't stay calm. What did this mean? This was simply, how terrifying. Li Shimin couldn't help but ask, Fengzi, what do you mean? Tell me, what do you want to do? This psychological warfare can be used in this way? Zhang Feng nodded, that's right. To put it bluntly, anyone can use psychological tactics at any time. For example, when you are buying or selling things, or when you are trying to get something useful from others. These are all useful. And this time, the psychological warfare is actually to spread the news about the phosphate fertilizer to her. For example, think about the current situation. Those who heard it are sick of it, and those who talked about it are sick of it. Instead of that, why don't we use this as a method? Li Shimin stared and said, how do you want to do it? Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously and then grinned. In fact, it's very simple. We just use what we are doing now to let it spread naturally. We don't need to publicize anything, we just need to let those who are preparing to spread this matter do it in their own way, such as asking for the phosphate fertilizer and the method of screening seeds. In this way, those who are observing them will instantly know what they are doing. What we need is actually a sense of mystery. This. Li Shimin could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Sense of mystery. Wasn't this just about spreading the phosphate fertilizer? How did it become a sense of mystery? What did this mean? Involuntarily, Li Shimin looked at Wei Zheng and asked, Old Wei, what do you think Fengzi means? Is this the legendary saying that gossip is fearful? Instantly, Li Shimin thought of everything. To put it bluntly, they wanted to use a method to let the people discover the mystery instead of telling them about it one by one. Seeing this, Li Shimin's expression changed. He suddenly thought of some things that he was familiar with. If that was the case, then why not just let this matter be settled this way? It seemed that it really did have some uses. Li Shimin took a deep breath and said, Fengzi, tell me about your arrangements. I'll get someone to do it immediately. When Zhang Feng heard this, he gently pressed Li Shimin's shoulder and said, Don't be anxious. It doesn't matter if it's a day later or a day earlier. It's just that we have to wait for the right opportunity. When Qing Yaojin heard this, he slapped his thigh and said, Oh, Fengzi, just tell me about it. Why are you beating around the bush? Just tell me what you're going to do. Isn't that enough? If you want people, I'll find a few hundred brothers for you now. Isn't it just buying land? I'll go and do something big for him now. What do you think? When Zhang Feng saw this, he speechlessly stared at Qing Yaojin and said, I say, can you not be so silly? We're not going to the battlefield to kill the enemy, nor are we going to dry up. If you do so much, you'll only make things worse. Just wait and see. Let this matter brew for a while. We don't need too many people. Just a small number of people will stir up this matter. And what we need to do is, wait. Wait? Li Shimin and the others were even more confused. They hurriedly asked, Fengzi, what do you mean? Just waiting. When they can't hold it in anymore, when Yo Weili takes the initiative to drive out the people who bought the land, it's time for us to act. Qing Yaojin was so anxious that he scratched his ears and cheeks. If he was asked to charge into the battlefield, he could do it. But if it was a conspiracy, he really couldn't do it. He could only sit down and smoke a cigarette sullenly. Li Shimin frowned and said, Old Qin, don't be so impatient. Fengzi naturally has his reasons for this arrangement. Let's hear him out first. In fact, this matter was very easy to understand. After all, this matter was just like this. It was just to let these people see for themselves whether this was the case or not. When Li Shimin saw that they had all quieted down, he said, You see, if there's anything else you need. If you need manpower or any preparations, just tell me. I'll go and prepare now. How about it? There's no need. You just need to reap the benefits. As for the rest, we'll talk about it when the time comes. That's it? Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng with some surprise. Zhang Feng nodded and said, In fact, isn't it just like this? Let the matter ferment on its own. What else can we do? Chapter 1464. After waiting for a long time, Li Shimin suddenly realized that Zhang Feng had been talking for a long time, but it was the same as not talking at all. If this matter was left to ferment naturally, then why did they have to spend so much effort here? What was the point? At the thought of this, Li Shimin felt like he was in Tesco. With a headache, he patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and said, Fengzi, why don't I go back first? You think about it and see how to deal with this matter. I'll go back first. Zhang Feng was stunned. Didn't we talk about it clearly? Just go back and wait for the news. Alright, ask someone to bring some malt seeds back. When the time comes, these things will have an unexpected effect. Li Shimin did not want to stay for a moment longer. This matter was too tiring. After staying for so long, no one expected that Zhang Feng would give such an answer. How could Li Shimin not be speechless? There were a lot of things to do in the court now. If not for the fact that this matter was the most important thing to solve these problems, they would not have come. Autumn planting was too important. In fact, to put it bluntly, they came here this time to completely solve the problem of autumn planting. Once these problems were solved, they would know how to deal with everything in the future. After all, food was the king's path. Once he had food, Li Shimin would be able to attack the Turks if he wanted to. If he wanted to exterminate the 5 clans and 7 clans, he would be able to do so in the blink of an eye, and he wouldn't cause the slightest disturbance in the imperial court. Only by controlling food could one control the lifeline of a country and the direction of a country's national destiny. At this time, Li Shimin felt that Zhang Feng's words were too incredible. What kind of problem could be solved in such a simple situation? Previously, many spies were sent out, but there was no way to make the people accept this thing. Now, they only needed to do nothing and it would work? In any case, regardless of whether others believed it or not, Li Shimin really did not believe that this thing could be so simple. Li Shimin left. Along the way, they took away 3 large carts of wheat seeds that had sprouted. These seeds were basically removed from the soil on the wheat seeds. Together with the soil, they were placed on the carts and then carefully carried down the mountain by 4 imperial guards. Let's not talk about the reactions of the people from White Deer College. Just the merchants in Shao Mountain Market were scared out of their wits by this scene. No one knew what was going on. They also didn't know what had happened on the mountain for them to bring so much land down the mountain. Is there no more soil at the foot of the mountain? Or was there something different about this soil? All of a sudden, all the people in the marketplace of Mount Ji exploded. Like a frying pan, they swarmed around the imperial guards who were disguised as guards. They wanted to see what was on the handcart. However, before they could even get close, under the sharpness of the MO sabers, everyone became timid. The next moment, all kinds of rumors and slanders began to circulate in the marketplace. Yesterday, I heard from the workers in Tonghui Square that the dean came up with something new on the mountain. Today, those noble young masters are tinkering with something in the villa area on the mountain and by the big lake. In a short while, this news spread and brewed in the marketplace. Not long after, the incident of Zhang Feng frying fish in the lake last time was also exposed. Last time, 5 days ago, there were waves of thunder on the mountain. Do you still remember? At this moment, in front of the fermented rice wine stall, a strong man was eating fermented rice wine as he looked at the long line and said. In an instant, everyone looked over and asked anxiously, "When did this happen? Why didn't we know about it?" The strong man rolled his eyes and pointed at the gate of the academy. "Go talk to the guards there and you'll know everything. 5 days ago, didn't the dean invite all the students of the academy to a banquet? You all know about it, right?" Hearing this, everyone nodded. The incident last time was too big, so many people knew about it. After all, the fact that the dean invited the entire academy to eat fish caused a great sensation at that time. The most important thing was that the fish was blown out of the lake by the dean in a magical way. He let the fish jump to the shore by themselves. Isn't it magical? This time. In an instant, everyone gasped. At this moment, when they looked at those people carrying the handcart, there was a touch of horror in their eyes. Then someone asked, "Then do you think this soil is the same thing used to get fish last time?" The strong man shook his head, pointed down the mountain and said, "Are you stupid? How could this be that thing? I think this should be related to the land that the dean went to buy today." In an instant, someone couldn't help but exclaim, "Are you talking about phosphate fertilizer? The dean is going to get the phosphate fertilizer down the mountain? F***CK. Seems, it's very likely." For a moment, the people in the marketplace were no longer in the mood to do business. They all wanted to go up and see if there was phosphate fertilizer in it. After all, when they were at the foot of the mountain today, the students on the mountain had shown how to extract phosphate fertilizer. That was to say, this thing, it was either related to phosphate fertilizer or it was real phosphate fertilizer. There was no doubt about it. Chapter 1465. The handcart was not big. It only had the appearance of a normal handcart. However, at this moment, the handcart was moving slowly on the flat cement ground, as if it was afraid that the dirt on the handcart would cause the slightest bump. It was moving extremely slowly. There were countless guards standing guard around the handcart. However, the more it was like this, the more the rumors spread. All the people who were doing business in the market came over one after another. They even forgot about the shiny MO swords in their hands. The blade was very cold. However, for all the people who had hope in their hearts at this moment, this was nothing. At the very least, today they could get what they dreamed of in their hearts. Phosphor fertilizer. Although they did not know if this thing could really increase the food supply, and if it was really as miraculous as the dean said, this thing could only be known when it was in their hands. Moreover, the most important thing was, at this moment, on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain, the news that the dean had gone to buy land was spreading like wildfire. What was this? This was the biggest doubt. Why would the dean buy so much land at this time? The curiosity of people was really like what Zhang Feng said, endless. Under the strong curiosity, everyone wanted to know whether these things were real or fake. This made Qing Yaojin, who was leading the team, could not help but sigh with emotion. Then the footsteps slowed down again. At this moment, the people in the market looked at the handcarts and discussed animatedly. However, for some unknown reason, the speed of the entire convoy suddenly slowed down completely. It was also at this moment that a trace of chaos appeared in the originally calm convoy. The horse in one of the carriages seemed to be frightened, and backed up a little, instantly neighing. The next moment, the entire carriage trembled. This trembling did not matter, but the whole thing in the carriage also trembled instantly. Rustling. Under the shocked gazes of all the people, the thing behind the carriage fell to a corner. In the next moment, the carriage seemed to have not noticed and continued to move forward. After waiting for the entire convoy to leave, the commoners hurriedly followed behind. At a glance, However, no one dared to touch the fallen soil as if there was something terrifying in the soil. One had to know that there were people who had died from phosphate fertilizer poisoning. In addition, when they were experimenting with phosphate fertilizer, they used a white thing to cover their mouths and noses. The rumor that it was poisonous was not groundless. How could this not make everyone curious and anxious? At this moment, a burly man squeezed through the crowd and stuck his head out to take a look. Then he waved his hand and said, "Everyone disperse. Let me take a look at what this thing is." As he spoke, not only did the crowd not retreat, they even surrounded him even more tightly. Although the burly man spoke casually, he was already lying like a dog in his heart. However, he could only brace himself and use a stick to gently dig at the pile of dirt. However, this soil seemed to be no different from normal soil. It was simply the most common soil in the field. Why were these people so careful when carrying this soil? Everyone was dumbfounded. "Oh my God! Look, what is that?" At this moment, an exclamation was heard. In an instant, the burly man was so frightened that his whole body trembled. He shouted angrily behind him, "What are you shouting about? Can't you see that I'm fiddling with it? No, look right in front of your stick. What's that green thing?" Huh? For a moment, although the burly man was a little angry, he still subconsciously looked at the wooden stick in his hand and then at the crowd behind him. He saw that the eyes of the people surrounding him were fixed on it, as if there was something extraordinary in front of his stick. He couldn't help but be even more dumbfounded. He scratched his head and forced down the panic in his heart. "Isn't this just the soil in the ground? Look at how scared you are," I thought. In an instant, the moment he finished speaking, his eyes also saw something in the soil in front of his stick. There really seemed to be something. That thing was very small, very thin. If one did not look carefully, no one would be able to see it. However, in this yellow soil, that tender green thing that was much thicker than a strand of hair was extremely eye-catching. It was a malt. This thing. No one would be mistaken. But, such a thick malt was really rare. In addition, what time was it now? Even if it started on the day of the autumn planting sacrifice, it had only been 10 days until now. Who could make the malt sprout at this time? At this moment, the burly man's hands trembled as he carefully peeled off the soil under the malt, and then revealed the root wrapped in black and gray grass ash the size of a soybean. This time, everyone was even more confused. Everyone recognized this thing. It was the grass ash that they were most familiar with. But why did it appear here? And how could it? They could not help it. The burly man, with trembling hands, held the ball of grass ash in his hand as if holding a treasure, and then gently peeled off the grass ash outside. The next moment, a golden yellow seed was revealed. This. Everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. They exclaimed, "Oh my God! How is this possible? How can wheat be planted in such a way? Could it be that these handcarts carry such things?" Chapter 1466. For a moment, everyone's eyes were wide open. Those who were closer and bolder also went forward and rummaged through the mud on the ground. A moment later, someone dug out countless germinated wheat seeds from the ground. At this moment, everyone was shocked. They held the wheat in their hands excitedly and cheered as if they had found a treasure. "It's true. It's true. Phosphate fertilizer, is this the function of phosphate fertilizer? Ha ha ha." After people in the market of Shao Mountain discovered the secret of the soil, the news spread out like a storm in the market. The people. They were all pedantic and extremely stubborn. In their minds, this seemed to be the most normal thing. It was as if the heavens were looking out for them. That was why they discovered the big secret of White Deer College. In an instant, people in the entire G Mountain market became restless one after another. Some people didn't even care about their stalls. They hurriedly packed up and ran to Chang'an City. Some people even wrapped their stalls in straw mats, clamped them under their armpits and ran up the mountain in a hurry. Going up the mountain now was undoubtedly the best chance to see Zhang Feng. It was also the best chance to know the secret of making wheat germinate in 10 days. This was the most important thing for the people. At least, this thing. It was a hard currency that could fill their stomachs next year and prevent them from starving to death. Report. Out of Shao Mountain Market. Qing Yaojin's spies didn't stop. They reported everything that happened in Shao Mountain Market to Qing Yaojin in detail. "General, someone is going up the mountain to beg the dean." Report. "General, someone is going to buy land from the Chang and local government like the dean." Report. Someone sent the news to Chang'an City. As the news came in one by one, Qing Yaojin took a deep puff of his cigarette and waved his hand lightly. The next moment, the entire fleet slowly stopped moving forward. Seeing this, Qing Yaojin said, "Stop moving." All the soldiers who were disguised as guards were dumbfounded. Didn't His Majesty say that at this time, they should send the things to Chang'an City as soon as possible? How could this be? Qing Yaojin's personal guard could not help but remind him in a low voice, "General, His Majesty just ordered that this thing must be sent to Chang, and as soon as possible." Qing Yaojin glanced at the guard. The guard was so frightened that his body trembled and he didn't say anything else. "Pass down my orders, cook rice." The guard was dumbfounded. This time he was completely dumbfounded. The distance from Shao Mountain to Chang was less than 20 li. Moreover, they had just eaten on the mountain. It had only been 2 hours and they were eating again? However, he didn't know what Qing Yaojin wanted to do, so he could only follow his orders. There weren't many people in the team, only a little more than 100, and there were more than 30 carriages. At this time, under Qing Yaojin's command, everyone was carrying out their respective tasks in an orderly manner. As for the guard, after passing the order, he returned to Qing Yaojin's side and followed closely. Qing Yaojin took off the pouch on his body and took out a handful of wheat from his arms. He sighed and said, "This is really good stuff. Do you want to ask why we disobeyed the imperial decree?" The guard heard this and hurriedly said, "I don't dare." Qing Yaojin glanced at the guard and waved his hand saying, "Tell me. Anyway, there's still a long way to Chang'an Road." The guard couldn't help but look back. He could faintly see the outline of Chang'an City. He didn't know how to answer, so he just bit his lip and said nothing. Seeing this, Qing Yaojin slapped the guard's head hard and scolded, "Idiot, do you know why I'm doing this?" The guard was shocked and hurriedly knelt down on one knee saying, "I don't know. This thing. Although it's the emperor's decree, he didn't say when the malt should be sent to Chang'an City. Besides, that guy said that we need to let things brew for a while. Didn't we just send a message that the people in Shao Mountain have found the malt? Now you know, right? What's more, what we need now is to let things brew. Pass down the order that no one should mention this matter again. If anyone wants to go home, I'll allow him to go home today." Qing Yaojin had his own plan. Didn't Feng Zi say that he should let him brew this matter on his own? That's fine. Let's start a fire for him. As for whether the fire would burn or not, it depended on the group of people in Shao Mountain Market and how big a sensation it would cause in Chang'an City. The reason why Qing Yaojin brought these people here this time was that they were all people around Chang'an City. Early in the morning, he had received the emperor's secret order to delay as much as possible. Otherwise, how could Qing Yaojin delay like this? Wasn't he courting death? Chapter 1467. The afterglow of the setting sun was slowly sprinkling on Chang'an City. In the past, at this time, the people who were farming in the fields were returning to the city one after another. It was also the time when the businessmen were preparing to pack up and go home. However, today was different. Although the businessmen on the street had already packed up their stalls, countless people could be seen everywhere. They were whispering, and many people were even looking at the city gate as if they were waiting for something. And the most reliable source of information for the people was the storytellers in the tea houses in Chang'an. Today was the busiest day for their business. Usually at this time the storytellers would have already run away. But today was different. Everyone was spending money like water, and what they wanted to hear was what happened on the mountain. They wanted to hear about the phosphate fertilizer and the purchase of the land today. The most anticipated event was undoubtedly the Hungtong Tea House, where Blind Sun, who was famous in Chang'an City, was staying. The owner of the tea house was a woman, and she was rumored to be as beautiful as Jianghu, the most beautiful woman in Chang'an. However, no one had seen what this woman looked like. They only knew that she was from the palace. Since this tea house was opened, few people dared to make trouble. No one dared to make trouble. Even the 4 great devils who were famous in Chang'an City had to take a detour if they came here. Today the business of the Hungtong Tea House was unusually good. The entire second floor of the tea house was full of people. Even the corridor on the second floor was full of high-ranking officials and dignitaries, let alone the first floor. The people on the first floor were so crowded that they almost burst the door. There was no tea to drink and they couldn't even squeeze through. It was difficult to go to the outhouse. Who the hell cared about drinking tea? At the entrance of the tea house, the people who used to cherish money as much as their lives held up their copper plates and stood on tiptoe, looking at the door eagerly. They wanted to go in and see Blind Sunday. In the end, Hungtong Tea House had no choice but to ask Blind Sun to leave the tea house for the first time. At this time the people in the tea house all opened the windows. Some even broke the window paper for fear of missing something. Blind Sun's storytelling stall was also set up on the street in front of the Hungtong Tea House. All of a sudden the entire intersection between West and East City was filled with people. It was an airtight sea of people moving about. Blind Sun had also changed his outfit today. Beside him, there was a little girl around 12 or 13 years old. Her hair was tied up in 2 braids, her hair was tied with a red string, and a red ribbon was wrapped around her waist. She was wearing an apricot robe and her cheeks were rosy. She was holding a pipa in her hands. Although she was small, she did not have any stage fright in the face of such a scene. Sitting upright on the platform, he gently played a piece of music. The storyteller's music was very particular. It was not an ordinary song. He was mainly playing along with the storytelling atmosphere, and the stories were long and passionate while the stories were low and hoarse. At this moment, the sound of the music echoed. Blind Sun clasped his hands behind his back and slowly tidied up his gray robe that was covered in puddings. Then he slowly ascended the stage. Pa! The gavel clanged. In an instant, everyone's voices quieted down. Blind Sun looked around with a solemn expression, and then said, "Today it's rare that everyone is in such a good mood. Today I believe that everyone doesn't want to listen to other things. You just want to hear what the Emperor Star on Shao Mountain has done, right? Wasn't this nonsense? Otherwise, who would come here to join in the fun when it was almost dark?" Amidst the complaints, Blind Sun said leisurely, "It's a coincidence. Just now I just found out some news. Just today 4 hours ago Mr. He Xian, the Dean of White Deer College and the youngest great scholar of the Tang dynasty, Prince Zhang Feng, did something extraordinary on the mountain." "What did he do?" "Blind Sun, don't keep us in suspense. Just say it." "That's right. We don't have time to listen to your nonsense today. In a bit you won't be short of a single copper coin. Why don't you tell us what exactly Principal Zhang wants to do with today's matters? Is that phosphate fertilizer real or not? This matter has been going on for a long time, but no one has come out to say what the phosphate fertilizer is. If you want to say that it is useful, then we have to come up with something trustworthy, right?" In the face of everyone's questions, Blind Sun took a sip of tea and unfolded his fan. He slowly said, "What this old man wants to talk about today is actually this matter. But before that I would like to ask everyone to calm down and let me finish speaking. Is that all right?" Seeing this, everyone had to be patient and wait. This matter was too big. At this time, everyone's hearts were in a mess. Everyone was thinking about the phosphate fertilizer. After all, the people in Tonghui Fong were crazy about buying land. At this time, in Chang'an City, whether it was the rich or the ordinary people, they were all in a mess. No one was sure what Zhang Feng wanted to do by buying so much land at this time. But the only thing they knew was that after today, Chang'an would definitely be in chaos. At this time, Blind Sun stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Today on the mountain, President Zhang and Mr. Xian publicized the extraction process of the phosphate fertilizer. More than 4,000 people in White Deer College witnessed the whole process. They even explained the various things to pay attention to and how to extract it clearly. That's not all. Go to the market on Shao Mountain and ask around. Today, in the market, the students on the mountain also spent 2 hours to publicly show this matter to the people at the market at the foot of the mountain." Buzz. Chapter 1468. All the people were in an uproar. Including those high-ranking officials and dignitaries on the second floor, they were all frowning. They had also heard about it. After all, Shao Mountain Market was a big fat piece of meat. Although there were only the students on the mountain with the fame of the academy in Jianghu, it was constantly expanding. In addition, Zhang Feng's several big industries and the cigarette industry directly attracted the businessmen from the western regions. They didn't even want to enter Chang'an City. Not only was it troublesome to enter the city, but it was also troublesome to continue. But this market was different. Although there were also Chang'an garrisons at the Shao Mountain Pass, the garrisons were not as tricky as those at the city gate. As long as you were a serious businessman, as long as you checked the route you took, and the permits from the state government were correct, you could enter. You could enter for free. It was free. And the stalls in the market were all free. No fees were charged. If you wanted to find a place to keep your stall, you only needed to go to the local government of Chang'an and to apply for an approval, and then show it to the people of the academy in the market. Then you could build a house in the planned place. That was all. Even if you built a shed, no one would care. Unlike in Chang'an City, here everyone was equal. This was the most attractive place for businessmen. Even if you were a big shot, you would still have to follow the rules when you came here. After all, this was the fief of White Deer College. No matter how arrogant you were, you had to behave here. Otherwise, you motherf asterisk cur, don't even think about entering this city square again. This was Zhang Feng's rule. Everyone had to follow it. Even if Grand Prince Li came, he would have to hand over his invitation card obediently. Therefore, basically, most of the businessmen in Chang'an City, the aristocratic families with industries and sidelines, and those high-ranking officials and dignitaries had their own businesses in this market. There was no other way. This was the way to survive. These people had already known about what had happened in the Ji Mountain market today. However, no one knew if it was the same on the mountain. Now that Blind Sun said this, although there were some things they couldn't figure out, at least when Blind Sun was talking, the officials and nobles on the second floor didn't interrupt. On the other hand, it was the commoners. At this moment he was even crazier. After all, the phosphor fertilizer matter had already caused a lot of noise. Because of this matter, many people were killed. Even Zhang Feng, who had always been known as a nice guy, killed people in Chang'an City when he was angry. Moreover, this matter was tacitly approved by the emperor. Did this mean that the emperor had tacitly approved the phosphate fertilizer? Moreover, I heard that Zhang Feng bought 300 hectares of land today. What kind of concept was that? Even in Chang'an City, it was only a few hundred hectares. But 300 hectares, how could the emperor not know about this? That would be strange. At this time, most of the people on the second floor had already sent the people who bought the land to the Chang'an local government, although no one had come back to reply. However, there was still a glimmer of hope. As for how big this hope was, it depended on the emperor's imperial edict tomorrow morning. Once today's matter was confirmed, all the people on the second floor had made up their minds. Even if they had to put down their faces and beg Niu Weili, whose official rank was much lower than theirs, they wouldn't refuse. And the most important part was the phosphate fertilizer. At this time, the discussions of the commoners rose and fell. That Blind Sun couldn't even speak properly. The officials and nobles on the second floor were a little angry. However, they couldn't get angry for no reason because they were putting on airs. At this time, Blind Sun was the first to get angry. With a bang, he threw the gavel and said, "Since you all know more than old man, why don't we listen to you today?" Hearing that, the people immediately became obedient. As for the attentive people on the second floor, they discovered that the window on the third floor was slowly closing. That woman was angry. At this time, the people on the second floor became more obedient. Unless it was absolutely necessary, no one dared to say anything. At this moment, Blind Sun slowly cupped his fists towards the third floor and said, "You guessed right. Young Master Zhang is a kind person. He originally planned to keep this thing for himself. Just now, I met with the old village chief of Tonghui Lane. He said that young Master Zhang Feng once said that he did so much just to let the people of Tang Empire have food to eat. Moreover, he said that young Master Zhang Feng once said that he did so much just to let the people of Tang Empire have food to eat. Moreover, they can eat their fill, wear warm clothes and not be bullied. As for this phosphate fertilizer, your guess is correct. The current emperor knows about this matter. Furthermore, during the autumn planting ceremony, the emperor had used this phosphate fertilizer on the imperial manor on Mount Longsho. Before that, someone made a scene in Mount Shao and forced Chen Wanli's former young master to death. You all know that, right? Prince Zhang didn't come forward to explain it, not because he didn't have evidence, but because he was busy. Do you know what he was busy with? In the past 10 days, President Zhang has been guarding the wheat field that he personally planted every day. Just now, I heard the old village head say that the director's wheat has sprouted. In 10 days, the wheat has sprouted. Chapter 1469. Seedlings sprouted? 10 days, wheat, seedlings sprouted from wheat? How could this be possible? Everyone was going crazy. They were all farmers who had been in contact with the Zhuang family for generations. They knew very well when the Zhuang family seeds would sprout and when they would produce seedlings. However, how could this be possible? 10 days, wheat could sprout. For a moment, whispers were incessant. Even the high officials and dignitaries on the second floor, who had been quiet all the time, could not sit still at this time. They started to talk about it. This matter was not simple. It was possible to make the wheat in the field sprout within 10 days, and it was also a common thing. But to make the wheat sprout within 10 days, this did not make sense. At this time, although many people didn't know what was going on, at the very least, this thing was definitely related to the matter of the phosphate fertilizer. At this time, on the second floor, a short, dark-skinned, middle-aged man cupped his fist and said, "Mr. Sun, we all know about the things you said. Are they related to the phosphate fertilizer? And the matter of buying land today, does it have anything to do with Master Fang and the others buying land in large quantities a few days ago?" The words of the man on the second floor instantly attracted everyone's attention. Someone looked at the middle-aged man and could not help exclaiming, Isn't this the butler of the minister of the agriculture temple, Lord Liu? In an instant, everyone looked at that man in a different way. The agriculture temple was the best hub to manage the farmland of the entire Tang dynasty. Above it was the Ministry of Works, which was a special department that could be directly subordinate to the emperor. At this time the people of this department came. What did this mean? This indicated that the people of the Western Agricultural Temple were also paying attention to this matter. Furthermore, the Western Agricultural Temple didn't even have the most basic information about this matter. When Blind Sun heard this, he cupped his fists towards the second floor and said, "Originally, Lord Housekeeper, you are right. In fact, if this matter is not connected, then it really can't be justified. However, as for why even the thrifty Fang Gong would spend so much money and go through so much trouble to do such a thing, I don't know the specifics of this matter. However, I have heard that on that day the emperor and the marquises had a discussion at Fang Gong's manor. Thus, I feel that this matter should be connected." He really didn't know where these people got the news from. It seemed that this matter had been forcibly hidden by someone. No one knew what was going on. Most importantly, even if the people behind him were to investigate, they would not be able to find out anything. After all, the person behind him was the current crown prince. What did that mean? If even the crown prince didn't have the authority to investigate, or rather, he wasn't going to investigate and was just trying to cover it up, then, at this moment, Blind Sun continued, "In fact, everyone don't panic. According to my observation, there is a missing middleman. That middleman is Lao Li. I have inquired about this matter before. The most active one among them is a mysterious businessman. I have heard that this businessman is extremely powerful and has a complicated network of relationships. He also calls Lord Zhang Feng, the dean of White Deer College, as well as has a close relationship with Lord Zhang Sun Wuji of the censorate. Thus, I feel that this matter of Prince Zhang Feng buying the land is definitely not a coincidence. And when he bought the land, the people on the mountain were doing the extraction of phosphate fertilizer. I don't need to say more about what this means, right?" After Blind Sun finished speaking, the whole place was in an uproar. What? Oh my God. Could it be that the phosphate fertilizer is real? But this damn phosphate fertilizer, where on earth can we get it? At this time there is less than a month before the autumn planting ends. This phosphate fertilizer. At this moment, there was a slight disturbance at the back of the crowd. A fat woman was stumbling into the crowd, shouting a person's name at the top of her lungs. "Sun Ergu, where the F***ck are you? Sun Ergu. Come home with me. Sun Ergu." A moment later, a dark-skinned and skinny middle-aged man came running out of Hung Tong's carriage tower as if he was startled. He immediately interrupted everyone's conversation. The two of them, one thin and weak and the other fat, instantly caused waves of laughter in the hall. Although Blind Sun was slightly displeased, he could do nothing but wait for this farce to end. But some people could not wait. The housekeeper on the second floor scolded with a gloomy face. Men quickly dragged these two people away. Hearing this, the fat woman's face instantly turned pale with fright. She stopped shouting to find her husband and said hurriedly, "Sir, please spare my life. I really did not mean to disturb you, but this matter concerns our income next year, so I was so presumptuous." At this moment, the crowd scolded the woman for her recklessness. The woman was also anxious. Suddenly she shouted angrily, "Look at what this is. I just picked it up on the official road. Someone pulled it down from the soil of Shao Mountain." While speaking, the woman opened her hand, and there were a few bluish-yellow wheat seedlings that were lying quietly in the wind. They were slightly green in color and they were fluttering in the wind. In an instant, the whole street, everything fell into a deathly silence. Chapter 1470. My meow. They really saw my meow. And it was real. What did that mean? What the F***k does that mean, this thing? This meant that the matter of the phosphate fertilizer was real. Everything was real. The mysterious matter of buying land was also real. For a moment, everyone no longer paid attention to Blind Sun as they all surrounded the woman. "Madam, where did you get this thing? I'll give you 10 copper coins. How about you sell it to me? I'll give you 1,000 strings of cash." The woman was dumbfounded. She looked at the money in front of her in surprise and did not know what to do. But in the face of such a huge temptation, she still chose money. After all, money was the right thing to do. What was the use of a sprout? After choosing the highest bidder, the woman pulled her man and rushed out of the crowd happily. Of course, she was not going home. She was going straight to the Chang and local government. When she was at the city gate earlier, there were already countless people waiting there. She had only managed to snatch that handful of soil after breaking her head. He didn't know who was in charge of this, but in general, if this thing could be brought into the city and transported to the palace, it meant that this thing was incomparably precious. Soon after, the plump woman found out that these things were obtained from the White Deer Institute, and they were related to phosphate fertilizers. In an instant, the plump woman saw hope. Phosphate fertilizer. He had only heard of this thing but had never seen it before. How could he have known that this thing would actually have such a great use? He regretted that he did not get more just now. 1,000 strings of cash. He could sell another moo of land with that. After the fat woman and the thin man left in a hurry, the person who bought the seed also disappeared into the crowd. Then he appeared in the homes of the high-ranking officials in Chang'an City. In the next moment, the entire Chang'an City was in turmoil. Everyone rushed to the Chang'an local government. At the same time, in the imperial study of the palace, spies came in an endless stream. They came in a hurry and left in a hurry. In front of him there was a large pile of memorials. Wei Jing, Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui were hurriedly organizing these things. Li Shimin would not ask about these things. But this matter was so serious that he did not dare to take it lightly. Although Zhang Feng made it sound easy and this matter could be solved easily, Li Shimin was worried when he saw the mountain of spies and the risks involved in this matter. This was the first time something like this had happened since ancient times. If this matter continued to develop, it would only bring him endless trouble. Let's not talk about these things for now. If things were to continue like this, then the land, at the thought of this, Li Shimin rubbed his forehead. Go, send the message quickly. From now on, whoever dares to buy or sell land will be fined double. Hearing this, Zhang Sun Wuji's hand trembled and pulled out a big lump of his beard. He hurriedly asked, Your Majesty, perhaps it's a little too late now? If we go now then. Yu Qigong also hurriedly tried to persuade him. They had no choice. Their men had all gone to buy land. They had not returned until now. They did not know what was going on. If they went now they would definitely be seen. By then, they would be in trouble. Therefore at this time, they could only pray that the emperor would not give the order so soon. At least, before the morning court tomorrow. During this period they were very confident that they could do something. When Li Shimin heard this, he looked at the few of them playfully. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? When they heard this, they were a little embarrassed and buried their heads in their chests. Seeing this, Li Shimin shook his head speechlessly and said, This order has to be given. Just now, the spy reported that the people from the Ministry of Works have gone there, but they still can't suppress it. The local government of Chang'an can't hold it anymore. Moreover, according to the news, there is no fertile land within a radius of 20 miles of Chang'an. Basically all of it has been sold. At this time, someone is actually preparing to reach near Mount Longsho. Who do you think it is? Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Someone had actually stretched their hand to where? That was the royal garden, where the imperial manor was, and where the iron ore and phosphate mines were. At this time, even they did not dare to think about where to reach at this time. This was simply courting death. Who was it? Li Shimin waved his hand and said, Let's not talk about this for now. I know what you're thinking. If you want land, I'll give you some at my discretion. Why do you have to add to the trouble now? Wei Jing, Zhang Sun Wuji, Yu Qigong, I'll leave this matter to the three of you. Quickly go to the local government of Chang'an and then thoroughly investigate this matter. Also, find out who wants to buy Mount Longsho. Chapter 1471. Night fell just like that. The entire city of Chang'an had fallen into darkness. The lanterns were like glowing gems that filled the night sky. They were hidden in a thin layer of fog and flickered. In Chang'an City, squads of City Defense Army were shuttling back and forth in every corner of Chang'an City. Apart from that, the whole Chang'an City was eerily quiet. Not even a dog barking could be heard in Chang'an City tonight. The extreme silence only lasted for a short while. After the people from the city defense team left, Chang'an City slowly became lively. People in all kinds of clothes shuttled back and forth in the shadows before entering the buildings one by one. It seemed that there was something waiting for them. In the west of Chang'an City, there was an ordinary house near the residence of the 16th prince. At this time it was already brightly lit. But strangely, all the places where light could pass through were covered with quilts. If a dark shadow hadn't knocked open a window by chance, no one outside would have noticed the abnormality. Inside the room, there were already dozens of people wearing clothes of various colors. Their faces were covered and they were whispering to each other. When the black figure arrived, everyone in the room instantly fell silent. The man took off the bamboo hat on his head, revealing a head of gray hair. His face was covered with a black mask just like everyone else. Seeing this, everyone hurriedly got up and bowed. The man waved his hand and motioned for everyone to sit down. He looked around with his hawk-like triangular eyes and said, "Everyone, my master said that after today the meeting with so many people will be cancelled." When he finished speaking, everyone exclaimed in an instant. Then they asked in a low voice. The man waved his hand and said helplessly, "This is a choice that must be made for the sake of the great cause. Today, on the mountain and in Chang'an City, you all know about it, right? I don't want to talk too much about this matter. Zhang Feng has already noticed us. The reason why he took out this phosphate fertilizer today and didn't hesitate to pull out all the wheat seedlings in the field is undoubtedly to lure us out of the snake's hole." What? He is just a young boy who is still wet behind the ears. How can he think so much? Since he wants to lure us out, isn't it better to give him a thunderous blow? Why should we be so afraid? He's just a nameless brat with no background. Could it be that Master is so afraid of him? Yes, Master. Today many people in Chang'an City are also in an uproar because of the land purchase. During the morning assembly tomorrow someone will definitely mention it. As long as we do a little work, we will definitely frame Zhang Feng with the crime of disrupting the order of the court and deliberately instigating people to rob the land purchase. As long as we are convicted of the crime, we can easily get the phosphate fertilizer and Zhang's secret. The old man pondered for a moment and then shook his head. The crowd was in an uproar. What? The old man put his hands behind his back and looked at the empty wall in the room. Our master said that this matter is actually a big net woven by Zhang Feng and the emperor. And the so-called Lao Li, who is rumored in the market, is actually the emperor's man. Buzz. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but gasp. The emperor's man? What did this mean? Could it be that the emperor knew all this from the beginning and acquiesced to Zhang Feng's nonsense on the mountain? This didn't make sense. If so, didn't it mean that their plan had been exposed from the beginning? Now, our master asked us to stop the discussion and chose to remain silent. Was it because he was afraid of being exposed? But what kind of person was Master? He was someone who could reach the heavens. If we knew this person, if we could get rid of him, it would be like breaking one of the emperor's arms. Wouldn't it be easier for our master's plan to succeed? Why did he choose to remain silent? Facing the doubts of the crowd, the old man shook his head and said, "Don't argue about this matter. Our master said that although we did a good job in the beginning, we did it too hastily. That guy found out something. Last time, that guy went to the mountain to meet Zhang Feng, and then the phosphate fertilizer was exposed to the world. That is to say, that guy has found out about our existence, or maybe he has been vigilant. The reason why he did this was to lure us out. Could it be that you didn't notice anything from the Tang family? Why did Zhang Feng go crazy and kill people in Chang'an City? Didn't you find anything? Why did he send a student to the funeral in a high-profile way and then kill the 4 old forces? Didn't you think about why?" Hiss. The crowd couldn't help but gasp. In an instant they figured out all the things that they couldn't figure out before. This guy had thought about all this a long time ago. Right at this moment, the sound of hurried footsteps resounded from the streets once more. In an instant, everyone fell completely silent. Only after the sound of the patrolling soldiers' footsteps had left did the old man say, "In short, from now onward, all of you must settle down. You must not allow Zhang Feng and His Majesty to get hold of any information that can be used against you." Chapter 1472. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. The old man didn't have much to say at this time. After all, with his high status and authority, he knew a lot of secrets. Furthermore, he knew that the so-called Old Li was actually the current His Majesty. Since the incident at the border, or before that, the Emperor and Zhang Feng had thought about these things, but it wasn't very obvious at that time. Only this time, the damn Tang family chose such a sinister trick. Not only did they fail to force out the secret of the phosphate fertilizer and the things in Zhang Feng's head, but they also angered Zhang Feng. They didn't expect that Zhang Feng would be so terrible when he was angry. He could kill people in Chang'an City in front of so many people. He even made the people of the Wang clan choose to withdraw and not help either side. Even the people of the Wang clan are starting to be afraid. What does that mean? It meant that they had already found the clues of the problem. Zhang Feng killed people in the street to force out some information. The people of the Wang clan had already appeared on Zhang Feng's list. That was why the Wang clan gave in at the first time. At this time, if the Wang clan dared to do anything, perhaps the Wang clan, or at least the things of the Wang clan around Chang'an, would have changed their surname to Li. The old man took a deep breath and waved his hand. In short, send the message. From today onwards, everyone will go into hiding and do whatever they need to do. Act as if no one knows about this. Also, tell those who know about this to shut their mouths. Your Excellency, why don't we try harder? The rumors in Chang, and today originated from the things leaked out of the dozens of carriages. As long as we can make use of this opportunity to let our people spread rumors, I believe that we can force out the secret of the phosphate fertilizer. Shut up. The old man glared at that person fiercely and then resumed his gentle tone. However, at that moment, the old man broke out a murderous aura that made everyone's heart tremble. This was a murderous look. The old man said faintly, "Let's leave this matter at that. All of you back off. We'll burn down the house and make it look like the kitchen caught fire." At this time, everyone was already terrified. How could they still dare to say anything? He could only accept the order and leave in a hurry. After everyone disappeared, the entire room was plunged into complete darkness. After a while, the old man slowly stood up from his chair. After confirming that there was no one else in the house, he carefully moved away the bookcase behind him and squeezed into a cave that was only half a person's height and faintly illuminated by light. The entrance of the cave was not big. However, when he entered the cave and entered the underground tunnel, he was instantly greeted by brilliant lights and an underground palace that was even more majestic than the political announcement palace. The entire underground palace was directly renovated according to the appearance of the political announcement palace. The four walls were piled with pieces of glittering gold bricks. The gold bricks were carved with 5-clawed golden dragons. The 16 huge pillars in the main hall were entwined with ferocious divine dragons. As for the pillar itself, it was piled up with jade stones. After the old man came in, he carefully sealed the hole behind the old man with wall soil. Then he used the large rocks at the side to block it up. Finally, he poured a few baskets of soil on top of it and carefully made it into the original shape of the wall. Only then did the old man hurriedly walk up the stairs on the forearm of a 5-clawed golden dragon to the top of the hall. On the dragon throne directly above the main hall. At this time, a man wearing a luxurious dragon robe was sitting on it. However, he was admiring the map of the entire Tang dynasty on the wall behind him. On both sides of this man, a group of women in revealing clothes stood carefully on both sides. They did not dare to move as if they were dead. If it were not for the slight rise and fall of their breasts, they would undoubtedly be dead. "Your humble servant greets you, master." The old man respectfully knelt on the ground and saluted. The man waved his hand slightly and asked in a hoarse voice, "How is the matter being handled?" The voice seemed to come from under a mask, but it also seemed to be really hoarse. However, this was not important to the old man. He just said respectfully, "The order has been given." The man still did not turn his head. However, the jade beads on the crown on his head did not move at all. After a while, the man in the dragon robe asked indifferently, "What do you think of today's matter?" When the old man heard this, he hurriedly said, "Master, I think that this matter should be a trick played by Li Er and Zhang Feng. As long as we hide well enough, they will not be able to get hold of our weakness." The man's crown swayed slightly. When the old man heard this, his expression changed abruptly and he said, "I should not have recklessly guessed Master's judgment. This is a capital offense. You really deserve to die. How can a filthy person like you call the emperor by his name? Don't say that before the great cause is accomplished." "Yes, master." The old man heaved a sigh of relief. Then the man said slowly, "Don't let anyone know about what happened today. Don't even think about the phosphate fertilizer. That kid has been wary of the old man since the first time he met the old man. That damn kid. Even now, the old man does not know if that kid has been suspecting the old man since then. Put this matter on hold for now. Inform Chiotzi to speed up the progress. I want to see what the kid and the emperor will do next." "Yes, master."